With a single, deafening shot, he dropped a giant rabbit. Everyone who witnessed the kill was absolutely certain they were looking at a legendary top-tier player, someone who had to be at least level 100. But the brutal truth was, he was only level 6. For a warrior class to one-shot a monster of that size, they'd need to be level 90. If it were an assassin, maybe level 70, provided they landed a critical hit stacked with broken buffs. But a level 6 noob wiping it out in the blink of an eye. That wasn't just skill anymore, that was a blatant insult to the game's system. The female players watching the spectacle instantly wanted to recruit him into their guilds at any cost. One of these onlookers was the rank 4 player in the world, the guild master of a top 9 global guild. Having watched the entire scene unfold, she was left utterly speechless. But what no one knew was that, up until this very moment, the gun in his hands had been a complete piece of garbage. It took nearly a full minute just to reload. Hell, he hadn't even been shooting it. He had been using the musket like a baseball bat to bludgeon low-level rabbits to death, inadvertently unlocking a bizarre achievement: close quarters marksman. So, why was his actual shooting so god tier? Because in the real world, he used to be the deadliest sniper in the special forces. He was a hunter who could land a perfect bullseye even while playing a game with sky-high lag. It had been years since he last missed a shot. But his life crumbled when an explosive decided to play Russian roulette with his legs, permanently robbing him of his ability to walk. However, his mother and his best friend gifted him a state-of-the-art Virginia capsule. For the first time in years, he could walk again. Logging into the farm of Middle-earth with his real-life physical parameters, he was greeted by an NC manager. After enduring a joke about his modest package, he was prompted to customize his avatar. He chose to keep his real name, Lee, and his actual appearance. Though the NTC found it odd that a human wouldn't want to change their looks, for Lee, just having functioning legs was pure, unadulterated euphoria. A flash of light enveloped him, and his boots hit solid ground. It was time for test drive. He threw a high kick, then took off sprinting like a madman. Suddenly, an entity approached, introducing himself as a guide for new adventurers in the Midlands. The guy was basically a walking tutorial, and looked sketchy as hell. The NCC began explaining the stamina system, pointed to a woman nearby, and told Lee had to go grope her. Fantastic tutorial. The second lesson was how to go to jail. Naturally, Lee had beat the living daylights out of the NTC, shouting that it was a crime. As the NTC scrambled off the ground, he laughed, explaining that if Lee had actually done it, he would have been exiled from the city. The lesson: drama-based learning. The NTC praised his fast learning and pointed him toward the training grounds before booking it. Lee continued testing his legs, running around the city until he actually unlocked the Pro Runner passive skill, which reduced his stamina drain. Arriving at the training grounds, he picked up a sword. An instructor was screaming that in Middle-earth, as long as you have the will to live, the god of war will clear your path. When Lee swung the sword, he realized his body was moving on autopilot. He quickly identified this as the combat assist system. Finding it annoying, he disabled it, and swung the sword using his real-life mechanics. To everyone's absolute shock, his blade cleaved a training dummy cleanly in half. A level 1 novice pulling that off earned him another rare talent right off the bat. Suddenly, a red-haired woman Huiyan approached him, saying she was glad to see him again. Lee had deadpan. It's only been a day. Around him, a myriad of weapons appeared for his class selection. A magical staff caught his eye, but before he could touch it, his gaze locked onto a rifle held by a blue-haired demon-kin woman Huajun. It looked like an Mumgaran, but far more primitive. Huajun corrected him, it was an antique musket from the 1700s. Thrilled, Leah asked to test fire it. She handed him gunpowder and musket balls. The reload process was agonizingly realistic. Pour the powder, pack the ball, ram it down, all done manually, taking an eternity. He grumbled about how heavy and sluggish it was, but knew that anyone standing in front of this barrel was going to eat lead. He pulled the trigger. The bullet's trajectory arced wildly amidst a cloud of black smoke. He missed a point-blank shot. Huajun asked if he hadn't read the description. Muskets had notoriously terrible accuracy. He tried again. Reloading took a full minute. He complained about the clunkiness, wondering what kind of psychopath would actually main this weapon. Huajun, however, thought he was doing exceptionally well for a beginner. When Leah asked about other ranged options, she showed him some bows, noting they were statistically better. Leah groaned that his options sucked. One mistake, and he was dead. She explained the weight system was for combat balancing. When he asked how to permanently turn off the combat assist, she gave a standard NPC response. He immediately understood the system, discouraged it. so he'd have to figure it out himself. He decided to shoot without the assist. Maximum accuracy, maximum range, capitalizing on the musket's massive base damage. He tried to log out to adjust his crosshairs, but an error popped up: cannot log out during class selection. Frustrated, he demanded to exit. The NDC repeated that he could only leave after choosing a class. The developers clearly designed it this way to stop players from looking up the meta builds online. With no other choice, he gave up on the musket and reached for the magic staff. But the moment his fingers brushed it, he was launched into the air, screaming. He woke up in the real world to his mother's voice. She had taken off his VR headset, worried he was sick or in pain. Leah reassured her he was fine and told her to use the headset's call button next time. Left alone, he remembered his cousin Kijong's words: you could make real money in this game if you picked a good class. Then a horrifying thought hit him. The NDC said he could only log out after picking a class, but he was forcefully disconnected. What the hell is my class? He checked the forums and found a post from someone in the exact same boat. The game assigns a random class, and if you delete your character, you have to wait 3 to 6 months to make a new one. He tried to stay calm, convincing himself he touched the staff before logging out. He had to be a mage. He logged back in. A system prompt greeted him: Class Musketeer. Great. He was stuck with the trash tier antique gun. But it beat waiting months to play, so he accepted his fate and checked his new skills. One of them was Baywet Charge, which he instantly deemed garbage because using it drained his entire mana pool. Sprawled on the ground, he sighed. Well, at least if I miss, I can stab them. The Legend of the Gun-Bashing Madman. An adventure guide NPC handed him his first quest: hunt rabbits. Dragging his feet, Leha headed to the fields. He watched other players hunting white rabbits, picked a target, and lined up his first shot. Breathe. Aim. Fire. The bullet ricocketed. Gunpowder smoke blinded him, but how could he have missed? As the smoke cleared, the rabbit glared at him with pure murderous intent. He had missed embarrassingly. He frantically tried to reload as the beast charged. Too late. Before he could even pour the powder, he took a dropkick to the chest. With no time to reload, he was actually going to die. Pure survival instinct kicked in, and he did the only thing he could: run. Creating some distance, he turned to shoot. He looked back, and the rabbit was chasing him at supersonic speed. It caught up and delivered a second kick that hit like a cannonball. Other players started mocking him, saying that if he was getting trashed by a rabbit, he should just uninstall the game. Leo was at half health, just from trying to counter. Exhausted and enraged, he dropped his stance, screamed at the rabbit, and swung the musket like a golf club. Smack! The rabbit went flying. Guns aren't just for shooting. Barely standing, he used the gun as a crutch and charged into the mob of monsters. He ate countless kicks but kept fighting, bludgeoning the beasts instead of pulling the trigger. The surrounding players were baffled. Why is a ranged class playing melee? Regardless, he managed to kill the rabbit. Panting heavily, he still couldn't believe he missed that point-blank shot. He knew that if he was struggling this much with rabbits, tankier monsters would be a nightmare. Nearby, a swordsman was slicing through rabbits like butter. Leha felt like the developers had a personal vendetta against his class. Swearing he wouldn't surrender to a stupid system, he logged out to study real-world ballistics, bullet trajectories, and effective ranges. He realized that with the assist system on, he could only fire one shot per minute. Therefore, using the musket as a club was the smartest tactical choice until he leveled up his mastery. His mother walked in, asking if the game was helping his depression, sadly knowing she should have bought it for him sooner. Leha thanked her, promised not to stay up too late, and secretly vowed to monetize his gameplay. He couldn't work a normal job, but maybe he could earn enough to pay for the surgery to fix his legs. Back in the game, players jumped at the sound of a gunshot, shocked that guns even existed in this fantasy world. They watched Leha reload. So slowly it looked like he was casting a ritual spell. He was proud of his progress, but the others just laughed. With a class that's slow, just quit the game. They mocked him for shooting at trees instead of hunting. He ignored them, solely focused on perfecting his accuracy. Checking his ammo count, he headed back to the rabbit battlefield. Hidden in the bushes, he locked onto a target. Calculated distance. Gauged the wind. Pulled the trigger. The bullet grazed the rabbit's foot. It went absolutely ballistic. The encounter devolved into another bloody fistfight. Leha went back to bashing skulls with the gun stock, furious that he couldn't land a clean shot. Eventually, he beat another rabbit to death, earning an achievement, stat points, and a level up, landing him on some low-tier Hall of Fame leaderboard. But the musket snapped in half. It was a disposable starter weapon. Realizing the stock couldn't take another beating, he grew even more irritated. While other players stared in sheer confusion, he beat another rabbit to death, and yelled, "Beating them to death is easier than shooting them." He leveled up again. The legend of a madman who hunted monsters by pistol whipping them began to spread. He finished the quest, and received a backpack. When the NPC offered a repeatable quest, he flat out refused. "I am done with rabbits." Counting his meager coins, the surgery felt light years away, but it was a start. The haggler, and the dark Angus. Wandering through town, he met Madame Rue, a restaurant owner. She offered to buy rabbit meat for 7 copper piece. She needed a massive supply and asked if he wanted the job. Liha received a new quest: hunt black rabbits. He noticed a one in the quest title. This was the start of a chain quest. Madame Rue explained that the meat was rare, handing him a rabbit skin pouch as bait. She warned him, "If you bring me the wrong meat, I'll slice you up." Before leaving, he stopped to buy ammo. The shopkeeper charged an extortionate price for gunpowder. Since there were barely any musketeers in town, the class was considered trash, and the ammo was a rip-off. The merchant suggested an unstable, cheaper powder, but Liha worried he'd blow himself up or ruin the meat. Gritting his teeth, he paid the premium. He tried to ask for a quest, but the shopkeeper scoffed, "I have no jobs for a cheapskate crying over bullets." Liha walked out, grumbling that he should have rolled a mage. Then it clicked: quests had hidden perquisites. The chief only gave him a job after seeing his rabbit meat. He had to figure out the hidden triggers for every inks. His stomach growled. The game that a hunger-thirst system dropped below 30, and you get hit with debuffs. He headed to the tavern to buy bread, but they were closing. The game ran on real time, meaning shops closed at sunset. He sprinted to the only bakery still open. Everything was insanely expensive. The owner, and me, sighed, "The rabbits are eating all the wheat." Smelling a quest, Liha tried to bargain. "I hunted rabbits for the deputy. If I solve this, will you give me some bread?" Annie rolled her eyes, saying he was the 20th adventurer to claim that. But her attitude did a 180 when he mentioned Madame Rue's black rabbit. She asked if it was the Dark Angus, an elite monster, eyeing his ragged gear suspiciously. Why would someone tasked with hunting a boss be begging for bread? Leah showed her the stinking bait pouch Rue had given him. Believing him, Annie gave him a quest: forage herbs deep in rabbit territory. It was essentially a suicide mission, all for a loaf of bread, and some spare change. She explained that the Angus made the other rabbits hyper-aggressive. It was called the Dark Angus, because its fur turned pitch black when enraged. Leah agreed, but pointed out he was starving and might pass out on the way. A loaf of bread would fix that. Annie eyed him, wondering if he was trying to scam her. He swore to complete the quest. She handed over the bread but raised the stakes a time limit. Fail, and his affinity with her, and every NPC in the castle would plummet. He accepted and immediately set off. His smooth talking unlocked the haggling skill, which he completely ignored. He had no idea how to pull this off in under 12 hours. He spotted a party recruiting to hunt the black rabbit. He asked to join, but too embarrassed to admit he was a musketeer, he lied and said he was a long-range sniper. They almost rejected him, because his gear looked like trash, but figuring he was a high-level smurf, they let him in. Another player objected, noting that if they died, they couldn't retrieve the quest. The party leader kicked Lee out. At least he learned one thing: their quest was different from his. Standing alone, he counted his ammo, and steeled his nerves. He ran around to other shops, persuading aunties to accept different rabbit parts, stacking multiple quests to complete in one run. His haggling skill leveled up. With only 12 hours left, he spent 4 hours grinding his aim. Exhausted, he hit level 5. His musket stock was chipped and worn from melee combat, ready to break. With his bag full of quest items, he suddenly heard a scream. Watching from a distance, he saw the party that rejected him getting absolutely massacred. The archer was dead on the ground, and the others were screaming, wondering if this was really a beginner quest. The mage spammed spells, the healer pumped out heals, and the tank desperately tried to hold the line. Their hit bars were melting. Their enemy was a massive black rabbit. Even fire missile just tickled it. Leah watched with envy. The mage could cast in seconds, while he took an eternity to shoot once. The tank dropped dead. The group fled under the moonlight. The massive beast loomed over them. It was the Dark Angus. As Leah's brain scrambled for a tactical plan, he noticed the players scattering in pure panic. Then he realized why there wasn't just one. There were 2 giant rabbits. Panic hit him. From level 5 onward, dying meant losing a level. And one kick from that monstrosity would vaporize him, especially since the normal rabbits were already a nightmare. But with 5 quests on the line, he decided to go all in. If he failed, he'd lose his reputation with the entire town. He stood up. He remembered why the musket was invented to take a life with a single pull of the trigger. As a trained sniper, he trusted his skills, especially in a game this realistic. He dumped all his stat points into dexterity. Once the stat crossed 55, he was ready to gamble. While the others ran, he intentionally drew the rabbits aggro to buy them time. His attack damage was massive. He only needed 1 hit. If he missed, it was game over. He loaded his gun, but 2 players sprinted straight toward him, dragging the boss right to him. He snapped at, "Why are you running this way?" The red-haired mage screamed at him to save them, or they'd all die. They were so loud he genuinely considered shooting them instead. He took a deep breath, relied on his training, waited for the perfect moment. The rabbit caught up to the mages, and they tripped right into his line of fire. Pull the trigger. The bullet tore through the air, grazed the red-haired mage's head, and buried itself right between the rabbit's eyes. It collapsed, dead instantly. The healer, still running from the second rabbit, tripped and fell. Too late. Leah grabbed the mage and yelled, "Run!" Unless they wanted to be the main course. The girl was in shock. 1 shot. Is he a top ranker? Leah cursed internally. He just needed time to reload. He hadn't expected the healer to die so pointlessly. He needed distance, but the second rabbit had already finished the healer and turned its sights on them. He thought it was over, but kept sprinting. A blue-haired girl Hwejin appeared ahead, raising her staff. She told them to duck. Dozens of ice spears shot past them, narrowly missing Li He, and Flash froze the beast in its tracks. In the chaos, she asked for his name, wanting to form a party to repay him for saving her sister. He answered. The party was formed. She conjured a massive fire tornado and hurled it at the frozen rabbit. The monster evaporated. Leah leveled up, but panicked, thinking she'd hog all the loot. She explained she got the drop because she landed the last hit, but the loot from the first rabbit belonged to him. She smiled. Fair trade. The sniper and the sisters. After the fight, the 2 girls started following Leah, which annoyed him. The ice mage introduced herself as Hwejun Ice, and Leah blurted out, "So the other one is Hwejun Fire." The fire mage was baffled that he didn't recognize them. Hwejun was a famous name in Hong Kong, known as Little Snowflake. Leah retorted, "Well, do you know who I am?" When they shook their heads, he deadpanned, "Then I have no obligation to know who you are either." He tried to say goodbye and leave. Hwejun pointed at the grass. The quest herbs he needed were right there. He panicked, worried he had botched the secret quest now that they knew the location. Hwejun noted he could sell this intel to other players, realizing he was afraid they'd steal it. They asked how he managed to one-shot a fully dark Angus. Leah kept it brief. Got lucky. He received a barrage of achievements that permanently buffed his stats, including one for understanding weaknesses and critical hits. The girls dragged him to a restaurant to celebrate. He asked who they really were. An NPC let Hwejun pass without a word. The fire mage introduced herself as Hwejun, and her younger sister as Hwejun. Leah doubted her fire mage title since she had spent the entire fight running for her life. She defensive claimed she didn't get to choose her class name. Back to business. What was the secret behind that shot? "I just pulled the trigger," he replied. They didn't buy it. They asked his level, assuming he was a high-tier smurf. Hwejun insisted it was an insta-kill triggered by his stats. A normal critical hit wouldn't do that kind of damage, only an instant death effect explained it. Leah felt a chill. She knew his stats, skills, and gear like the back of her hand. Hwejun explained that only a level 90 player possessed the raw stats to one-shot that boss. Not 90 strength, level 90. He remembered a sarcastic achievement he got. "Aren't you ashamed of hunting in the novice zone?" Now it made sense. He had just killed a monster meant for level 90s, completely bugging the system. Despite the mysteries, Hwejun bluntly invited him to her guild. Her sister was a global top ranker, and their guild was infamous. Even with low-level gear, he'd skyrocket in power. Surprisingly, Leah rejected it. He joked that his mom told him not to take candy from strangers. Truthfully, the offer sounded too good to be true. Why would a top guild want a nobody like him? Despite Hwejun's persuasion, he said he'd check out other guilds first. She accepted it better than false flattery, and sent a friend request, which he accepted. He stood up, declaring he'd pay for the meal to thank them for saving his life. While the older sister paid. "Wait, what?" Hwejun flirted with him and said they'd meet again. They left. Trying to process the massive info dump, Leah went to turn in his quest to Amy. He swung by the jewelry shop, where the owner was astounded he killed the rabbit in under a day. He turned in a quest to the blacksmith, collected his bounty, leveled up again, gave rabbit pelts to the tailor, and got new armor. His haggling skill and city affinity skyrocketed. Finally, he hit the bakery. And he welcomed him warmly, even giving him free bread. They were no longer strangers. Other players found the Nandusi's 180-degree attitude shift incredibly weird, especially since she had just called him a beggar. She asked for the herbs. He handed them over. She almost fainted with joy. He asked if it was really that good. She said the scent was irresistible. He added the kicker it grows out of rabbit crap. He walked out, grabbing his bonus rewards, wondering if this insane grind was actually worth it. At Madame Rue's restaurant, she had already heard rumors of the battle. He realized befriending Amis completely changed how they treated him. He handed over the meat and got his lunchbox, but she stopped him from leaving. Part 2 of the quest popped up: defeat the bird of the mountain of light, the sword eagle, the final boss of the castle of light. He needed to be level 10 to unlock it. He grimaced. Why is the reward just food? She bluntly replied she wanted to sell the meat in the capital to bribe politicians and make a profit. He was stunned. There's corruption in this game. She even slipped him extra premium food for the rabbit job. Checking the lunchbox, he found it provided permanent buffs and was a unique tier item. He could sell it for a fortune, but the tag read untradable. Massive disappointment. He thanked her anyway. It was rare loot, and he knew it was best to stay humble. Full of confidence, he accepted the Sword Eagle quest. Stepping outside, he checked his stats: level 8. 2 more to go. Time to grind. Before heading out, he ate the lunchbox. It tasted so incredibly real that it drew the attention of other players. He praised the deaths for the texture. Ready to train, he checked his gun. And realized he was completely out of ammo. Cursing the deaths, he trudged to the shop, delusionally hoping his friendship would get him a discount. No. The merchant was still an arrogant prick charging extortionate prices. He gritted his teeth and bought 23 powder packs. Seeing Leah had money, the merchant sniffed the air, catching a strange scent. Leah said, "It's rabbit meat." The merchant panicked. "That's not meat, that's bread." He realized it was Annie's herbret and begged for a bite. Leah refused. It was hard to get. The merchant offered a silver coin. Leah demanded 5 silvers, almost blowing the deal. He activated haggling and stood his ground. The merchant countered with extra ammo and 2 silvers. Leah held firm at 5, but the merchant had his limits. After a fierce negotiation, they struck a deal: 1 bite of bread for 70 ammo packs and the contact info of a black market gunpowder smuggler. In the real world, he threw his hands up in victory. Saving money on ammo was a massive advantage. He needed to get rich quick to help his parents. For now, he relaxed by watching the Middle-earth daily news, checking market prices, and looking for new quests. The anchors discussed the top 10 rankings and Huejung's sweep through the Castle of Light. She was the eldest daughter of the Ramlong Group CEO. They wondered why a VIP like her was slumming it in the novice zone. An interviewee revealed she was headhunting a specific player. No one knew who it was, but he had to be a monster. Leah sighed in relief that no one saw his face. Until the anchor emphasized the player uses a gun. He froze. He was the only musketeer there. He fell out of his chair. Worse, they played a video of him chatting with the sisters, his face clear as day. The comments mocked him, saying he was pretending to be a noob to pick up girls. He actually liked that conspiracy theory, until the internet started roasting him. What kind of idiot plays a musketeer in this meta? The oddball party and the Sword Eagle. He thought joining a guild would help him level faster, but the sisters' offer still felt like a trap. He logged back into grind. He turned in a fox pelt quest for a meager reward, but got a new one: hunt wolves. He also received a free repair ticket, a godsend, since his gun stock was battered to hell. He headed for the plains, right past a danger sign. He sat around waiting for a party so he'd have cover to reload, but no one showed up. He decided to snipe lone wolves and save ammo until level 10. Crawling through the grass, he spotted a party fighting. The tank held aggro, mage dealt hits, healer kept them alive. Envious, he took action. He locked onto a wolf, stabilized his gun using a trick he saw on TV, and fired. Bullseye. The wolf dropped dead. Suddenly, a red-eyed wolf lunged at him from out of nowhere. His gun was about to snap in half, so he had to dodge to survive. He scrambled for his ammo. It took 1 full minute to reload, pure torture, with a wolf bearing its fangs in his face. He frantically packed the powder and raised the gun without aiming. And something weird happened. The wolf didn't attack. It was weaving, dodging his line of fire. Hitting a moving target was incredibly hard. At this rate, he'd miss even at point-blank range. He thought about running, but that meant losing the loot from the first kill. All or nothing. He stepped up. He screamed at the top of his lungs to provoke it. It worked. The wolf charged, enraged. That was the plan. Predicting its linear path, Leha pulled the trigger and grazed it. It was enough. The wolf collapsed, dying without understanding what happened. His scream had masked the gunshot, tricking the AI. He wondered if the wolf was smart for recognizing patterns, or stupid for falling for a trap. After leveling up his musket mastery, he checked his surroundings. It seemed safe. Until a massive shadow loomed over him. How did you do that? A deep voice asked. It was another player, built like a brick house, accompanied by a lizard man and a crow. Leha almost had a heart attack, thinking a boss had spawned. The lizard man clarified they were players. Leha was shocked he'd only seen these races on the wiki. He tried to slip away, but the lizard man stopped him and apologized. They asked if he was hunting alone, and how he one-shot those wolves. They invited him to their party. Their levels were similar. Though hesitant, he realized they were friendly and needed deeps to clear 3 wolf mobs. They smartly noted his agonizing reload time and offered to cover him. He agreed, asking if they discriminated against level 8s. They didn't. The hunt began. Damage over time. Spells. The giant tanked and healed. Leha introduced himself. The lizard man was Bane, a poison mage. The giant was Jing'an. Leah asked about Jing'an's class, and it clicked. Jing'an was the exhausted guy from the selection room who accidentally picked Trude. The giant scratched his head, embarrassed, admitting he even got pity donations. Bane changed the subject, proudly stating he was from Vietnam. Leah liked this party, even though he was hard to carrying the disease. They decided to pull a larger mob, but the fight quickly turned into a circus. Jing'an started screaming attack names at his crow like a kid watching Power Rangers. Leha was trying so hard not to laugh that he lost focus. Bane looked like he was charging an ultimate forbidden poison jutsu, but merely spat a pitiful wad of saliva that only annoyed the wolves. Leha's hands were shaking from laughing at his clown car of a party, but every missed shot cost him a full minute of reloading. He pulled himself together, pinning a wolf dust as it leaped to tear Jing'an's throat out. The second one lunged. Jing'an clasped his hands and delivered a sledgehammer blow, knocking it down. Bane rushed in, sinking his sword to the hilt to finish it off. The third appeared, but Leah had finished reloading, and blew its head off. He was absolutely hyped by the team synergy. His musket skill leveled up, and he hit level 9. Dame congratulated him. Leah thanked them for the support. Dame laughed, saying it was all thanks to Leah's damage and Jing'an's tanking. The giant looked embarrassed again. Leah wanted to turn in his quest, but Bane suggested grinding to 90 of level 9. That way, the quest reward would push him straight to level 10, and they could run the Sword Eagle dungeon together. He agreed. They spent days grinding, while other players stared in awe at their utterly bizarre combat style. Jing'an improved rapidly as a tanker, holding aggro, healing, and screaming his moves. Bane ambushed from behind with poison. Leah stepped out of the bushes, and executed them with a single shot. Weird, but devastatingly effective. The craziest part was that Bane could cast spells while moving. Jing'an compared it to running full speed with a brimful glass of water without spilling a drop. Leah remembered only seeing Huijin, a top 10 global player, pull that off. How is a level 9 doing it? He didn't pry. They rested and checked their XP bars. Bane noted the Eagle quest usually required level 12 or 13, but they could boost Leah to 10. Leah thought they needed 5 level 12s, but Bane wanted to clear it with just 3 level 10s. After a few more fights, night fell. Leah hit the XP cap. Bane and Jing'an hit level 10. They returned to town, turned in the pelts, and Leah officially reached level 10. The moment he leveled up, his screen flashed red. He froze until he realized he had completed a hidden quest 100 Town Affinity. He received the title Honorary Member, accompanied by a blinding visual aura that made everyone stare, plus a mountain of bonus rewards, including a repair ticket. Embarrassed by the attention, he bolted. Outside the village, he caught his breath, cursing the devs for making him a walking disco ball. Bane explained, only noobs stay in this village. No one has ever hit 100 affinity here. Leah squinted. How do you know that? Dame deflected, claiming he saw the aura on a forum. Leah pretended to buy it, but suspicion lingered. Usually, doing all the quests only nets you 60. Leah remembered his insane side hustle errands for the Nanbusis while hunting. Dame and Jing'an were clueless about that. Internally, Dame still couldn't fathom how Leah killed the Dark Angus at level 5. Leah hit the ammo shot. Despite his max affinity, things were still pricey. so he engaged haggling mode. An NEC tried to give a long-winded quest exposition, but Li Ha cut him off. He just wanted the Eagle quest. He accepted it, and saw the reward had upgraded to Kingdom Fame. Super rare. Fully prepped, the trio set off. On the way, they saw players who had wiped and lost their tanker. Li Ha called them campers, even though he was basically doing the same thing. They ignored them, and reached the rally point, bustling with parties and merchants. Bane analyzed the crowd. A trash party relies on overpowered gear to survive. Li Ha remembered a heavily geared group walking to the bear, wondering if his trio stood a chance. He suggested recruiting, but Bane shook his head. Their comp was too weird, and at level 10, no one would join them. Bane patted Li Ha's shoulder. Trust me. I have a plan. The dungeon gate opened. Bane called for backup. Meanwhile, in a different zone, Wei Yun was struggling against a pack of wolves until her sister appeared and told her to fall back. Hua Zhong froze the entire pack with frost mist. Wei Yan complained that none were left alive. Her sister coldly told her to save her mana. Those mobs didn't drop an exp anyway. Wei Yun teased, so you just froze them to show off. Wei Zhong retorted, that skill used less than one of my mana. Wei Yan laughed, grateful to be carried by her overpowered sister. Hua Zhong reminded her to get the last hits for the XT. No time to waste. Wei Yan urged her sister to use stronger magic because the monsters could fly. She doubted the range, but Hua Zhong just told her to trust her. She chanted a Nordic incantation. The flying beasts swooped in, only to be engulfed by freezing air and impaled by a barrage of ice spikes. They fell from the sky, barely alive. Hua Zhong left the party so her sister could monopolize the XP. Wei Yan unleashed enhanced fire missiles, and wiped them out. Back to the Eagle dungeon. Li Ha prepped his musket. Bane asked if Jingnan had activated Nature's Harmony. The giant nodded, noting it wasn't a combat skill, but it worked. Li Ha watched in awe. Dane was a walking encyclopedia. The lizardman told him to follow closely. He'd understand soon enough. The infiltration began. Bane smeared poison all over his body. Li Ha thought he was insane. Dane told Jingnan to activate Nature's Harmony and said to trust him. The wolves wouldn't dare approach. The game's hyper-realistic aim made monsters avoid poisonous prey. Since lizardmen have natural poison resistance, AIM literally bathed in the stuff. Jingnan camouflaged himself as a tree. Li Ha just had to stay close, and use the poison stench to mask his scent. Li Ha was amazed by this exploit. Until a crow swooped down and caught a Jingnan. The camouflage broke. The wolves caught their scent, but it was too late. Nearly 20 wolves surrounded them. Jingnan stammered an apology, offering to act as bait. While they ran. Dying meant he couldn't log in for 2 days. Li Ha utterly refused to abandon his teammate. While the other two calmly bickered about who should sacrifice themselves, Li Ha turned pale and racked his brain for an AE exploit. He asked for 1 second. Jingnan asked what the plan was. If they stalled, the wolves would tear them apart. Li Ha raised his gun, declaring they were a party. If they died together. Dane questioned the logic, since the musket could only shoot one target at a time. Li Ha frantically loaded his gun, but packed 2 bags of gunpowder and no bullet. He told them to cover their ears. He pulled the trigger. Boom! A deafening explosion echoed through the dungeon. The other two almost blew their eardrums out and cursed him. Great, now the wolves were definitely going to eat them. But the pack suddenly turned and bolted in the opposite direction, leaving them completely alone. Li Ha yelled, "Run!" and said he'd explain later. As they escaped, he explained his trick. Wolves track by the smell of gunpowder. When they lost the scent, AIM had an epiphany. It was a combo of auditory and olfactory overload. It worked because the game's simulation was too realistic. Even a human couldn't handle the stench of gunpowder at point-blank range. Bane marveled at Li Ha's knowledge and asked if he had played Middle-earth before. Li Ha thought it was a stupid question. They were literally in the game right now. Bane changed the subject. Jingnan shyly asked them to look away so he could summon his crow. They thought it was some secret forbidden jutsu. Turns out, he was just embarrassed. They forced him to do it. Resigned, he performed an incredibly cringy, anime-style magical girl dance, ending in a flamboyant pose. The other two died laughing. He argued the spell wouldn't work if he didn't dance. A summoned beast comes from the heart. They teased him until the crow finally appeared. They reached the mountain peak to face the boss. From a distance, they saw the eagle. And it was astronomically bigger than they expected. Li Ha joked that next time they'd be fighting a house. The boss was 4 times the size of a normal eagle. Dane laid out the strat at lull open with a dive bomb attack. It can rip your arm off. Then it lands and unleashes a supersonic screech that stuns. We have to burst it down while it's perched below 30. It gets grounded. Jing Gong was the main dudes. Fame on crowd control. Liha claimed the opening shot. Fame wanted to clear the mobs first before focusing the boss, questioning the high-risk strat. Liha could miss from this distance. Liha was confident at 90 meters. He doesn't miss. If he does, Fame starts casting. He told Jingong to lie flat on the ground. The giant reluctantly became a human bipod, looking miserable. Liha took aim. The eagle entered his crosshairs. Factoring in the bullet's travel time, he led the target and pulled the trigger. Bullseye. He yelled for them to charge, as it fell, but his system prompt popped up. New achievement. He had just killed the sword eagle with a single shot. The whole party leveled up like crazy. His must-hit skill hit level 4. He got the sword eagle feather, and won to all stats. Jingam profusely thanked him for the buffs. Fame's jaw was on the floor. They swept the loot. The dungeon was going to eject them in 30 seconds. More achievements rolled in. Another sarcastic one for smurfing in the novice zone. The entomology sniper achievement granted the skill Calm Heart, and massive stats. Then another he was the second player in the world to earn it. He entered the Hall of Fame. Out of time, he rushed them to exit. Outside, they celebrated wildly. They were real players now. Back in town, everyone was buzzing about the bonus rewards. Dame just stared at Lihe, dying to know how he one-shot a boss. That wasn't a random mob. Even with hyper DHs, you have to chip away at its health. Buffs. Ill. Crit. Must be luck. Lihe shrugged. If he knew how to spam that, he'd be level 50 by now. Fame still looked highly suspicious. Honestly, Lihe didn't know what the hell had just happened either. The lizard man apologized for doubting him. Jingnan was ecstatic about their massive haul. Lihe remembered the sniper's golden rule: never let the enemy know who you are. He decided to lay low, play dumb, and go turn in his quest to the deputy. His kingdom fame skyrocketed. He leveled up like a madman, and he received a recommendation letter to the Brown Best Musketeer Academy in the capital, the premier sniper school on the continent. The deputy patted his back, saying he'd learn everything about monster weaknesses there. Lihe felt a chill, wondering how the deputy knew he understood monster weaknesses. Until he remembered that goddamn achievement that just outed him. Suddenly, the deputy pulled him into a passionate bear hug, thanking him profusely, and placing all the kingdom's hopes on his shoulders. Lihe knew this was just the max affinity talking, but the hug was awkward and gross. Even the other players gave the Nandisu weird looks. He turned to his party to ask their next moves. Jane Nam was heading to the Emerald Forest to train as a druid. Bame was marching to the Tampa Forest. Lihe said he was heading to the capital to start his career. Time to go their separate ways. They waved goodbye, promising to reunite. Alone again, he opened his status window. A mountain of achievements, sky-high stats, even though he had dumped everything into agility. He was level 12 with a pile of unused points. He checked his new skill, Calm Heart. It increased accuracy if he kept his mind completely calm for 3 seconds, with a 30-second cooldown. He clicked his tongue at the short duration but figured he could upgrade it later. The Hell's Kitchen cooking quest, the capital. He walked to Mading Ru to turn in the quest. She recognized him instantly, invaded his personal space shamelessly, and he used his new title. She teased him, asking if the eagle meat was fake. He swore it was legit, and handed it over. She nodded in approval, prepped the promised lunchbox, and whispered that her husband was sad he hadn't spoken to Lihe yet. Then the husband appeared, built like a tank, and looking slightly unhinged, staring intensely at Lihe instead of the meat. He thanked the boy with a rib-crushing hug, loudly declaring a true meat lover can never be a bad person. Then he asked if Lihe wanted to learn how to cook. Lihe scratched his head. There was no chef class, but there were crafting skills. Since players could only learn 2 crafting skills, he figured cooking food with permanent buffs was a steal. He nodded. Master Chef Jogar promised to teach him. A prompt popped up: do you wish to apprentice under the Master Chef? He hit accept confidently. He used to cook in the military. Piece of cake. The training began, and the chef screamed right in his face, calling his food absolute garbage. He went full reality show judge. Even a dog wouldn't eat the shit. Yelling that he regretted taking him as an apprentice. He roasted Lihe mercilessly. The only reason Lihe didn't pull out his sniper and blow the guy's brains out was fear of getting banned, so he swallowed his pride. After ruining a mountain of food, it was time for the final test. Out of patience, Lihe threatened the entity pass him, or he'd shoot him for real. By some miracle, Jogar hit pass, even crying tears of joy, praising his great master for the guidance. Traumatized, Lee Ha stumbled out of the kitchen, swearing never to return to avoid catching a murder charge. But hey, he got the cooking skill. Walking out, he realized he had a max CT to buff from that hellish training. Running into Madame Ru, she shoved the promised lunchbox into his hands. She asked for one more favor. He grumbled about another fetch quest and refused to accept until he knew the details. Annoyed, she slammed a second lunchbox on the table. Deliver the food and a letter to my sister in the capital. Fail, and our affinity drops to 0. A bizarre final ultimatum. He asked if he had to fight a boss. She replied much worse than monsters. Humans. Maybe even assassins. Then she burst out laughing, saying she was just joking. With a 1-month time limit, he calculated he could walk there in 15 days, and he had to go to the capital for the academy anyway. He accepted. Ru warned him the lunchbox had a preservation spell, but the flavor wouldn't last forever, so don't screw it up. He packed both boxes and set off. But first, he ate his lunchbox for the stat bus. He marveled at the taste, thinking he'd be rich if he could cook this stuff. Then he glanced at the description of the other lunchbox. The buffs were astronomical. It was a unique tier item, and it was tradable. His inner capitalist awoke. He instantly thought about selling it. Logging out, he checked its real-world market value. It was a literal fortune. About 5 of the total cost of his leg surgery. But if he sold it, his reputation in the capital would be nude. He hesitated. They were just tedious lines of code. Did it really matter? While he was agonizing over it, his mom walked in to check on him. She asked why he was still awake, mentioning she had an important dinner tomorrow, and would be home late, but she'd leave food for him. Deeply moved, Lee Ha shelved the lunchbox dilemma. He'd head to the capital, and figure it out on the way. Logging back in, he sprinted to the ammo shop. The owner was suddenly creepily friendly, asking about the herbs. Lee Ha bluntly told him he failed. He brought up the smuggler deal. The owner eagerly offered tea, saying the guy was on his way. Over tea, Lee Ha casually asked to buy a map. 5 gold coins for a map. It was a literal gacha item. Now he understood why players just took screenshots of the forums. He decided to hold off. The smuggler, Baby, arrived. Baby Hugh and Lee Ha locked eyes. Lee Ha demanded cheap ammo. Baby nodded. The shop owner frantically tried to kick Lee Ha out so he could negotiate a sketchy loan in private. But Baby loudly announced his price as 1 copper for musket balls, 4 copper for powder. Lee Ha instantly realized he had been scammed blind at 15 copper earlier. He pointed right at the owner's face, and tore into him for the extortion. He turned on his heel and walked out, dropping a cold parting shot, "Go pick your own damn herbs." The owner dropped to his knees, begging, and promising to pay any price. Lee had delusionally demanded a musket. No way the guy would agree to that. So he pivoted, demanding the hyper-expensive map instead. The owner hesitated, but the mention of the herbs broke him. He swallowed his tears and handed it over. Leo walked out of the shop, the undisputed victor, his pockets heavy with ammo. Next, he opened a bank account to make shopping easier. He remembered his cousin Kijeon and called him, bragging that he had dragged himself to level 12 and that they could meet up in the capital. Kijeon was floored that the Sword Eagle had been killed so fast, promising to roll out the red carpet for his arrival. He asked if Lee Ha had bumped into Huaijun. When Lee Ha said yes, Kijeon lost his mind. Lee had teased, "Are you a fanboy or something?" "Hell no." Kijeon swore he'd drag her through the mud. He explained that his guild had once tried to ambush her, but she just laughed and wiped the floor with them. They lost tons of levels and money, and Kijeon had spent sleepless nights seething in rage. Now, he just wanted revenge. Lee Ha understood his cousin's pain. But there was more. Kijeon revealed her sister Huiyan was monopolizing the economies of small towns. The two sisters were such a massive thorn in everyone's side that the top 5 guilds in the kingdom had formed an alliance to hunt them down. Leah broke into a cold sweat, realizing that if he had blindly accepted their guild invite, his cousin would have shown up at his house and beat him up in real life. They ended the call, promising to meet soon. He sat in deep thought. Too many people were confusing the game with reality. It was best to stay the hell away from guilds. Shoving the drama aside, he focused on reaching the capital. He opened his extorted map, realizing it worked exactly like a geek's. Military memories flooded back. A sniper with a map holds all the advantages. He checked his gear. Fully stocked. Time to move out. 3 hours later, he had covered massive ground thanks to his pro runner skill. A warning sign read "Ambush Zone." Entering the forest, he heard the clash of steel. A knight was faced a tank with a colossal grizzly bear while his party supported from behind. Venomous snakes slithered everywhere. The knight was dual-wielding shields, playing pure defense. Players flocked to the scene. Some fled, others eyed the potential loot. A raid group formed on the fly, recruiting anyone with high status. Leo watched, calculating it would take at least 20 people to drop a boss that size, and he'd be useless since his ranged damage was garbage against bare hide. The guild fighting it was called Golden Paddle. He muttered about the cheeky name, and backed away, hiding behind a rock. The raid leader started shouting orders. Healers focus the tank. Stick to the tank's ass. It was a textbook formation for a pickup group HUD. An archer fired to hold a grow. The bear roared in pure fury. The sonic wave reached Leah's hiding spot far away. Every player in the vicinity was hit with a 2-minute paralysis debuff. The behemoth charged, crushing them. Even from a distance, Leah was frozen stiff. Terrified by its size, it was bigger than an elephant. He struggled in panic, terrified of being spotted. The sensation of his paralyzed, unmoving legs triggered his real-life trauma. He prayed the party could hold out. The leader screamed for the healers to cleanse the debuff as the bear closed in. Then the captain charged, raising both shields to block a ground-shattering swipe. The captain glanced over and spotted Lee holding his gun. He yelled that if he had known, he would have invited him to the party, and a nearby mage backed him up, recognizing the headshot kid from earlier. The captain planned to pull a grow so Leah could snipe, but quickly gave up. Even if the kid landed a shot, he'd die during that excruciating 1-minute reload. The bear got back up, even more enraged. It roared again, and Leah ate another paralysis debuff. He desperately tried to reload. Impossible in this state. A few survivors scattered, trying to kite the boss for a fraction of a second, but were quickly incinerated in a sea of fire. In sheer desperation, Leah screamed for the captain's help. No answer. The coward had completely bailed. The bear wiped the entire raid. Leah took a deep breath. He finally finished reloading. He locked onto the flaming beast. Pulled the trigger. Another headshot. The gunshot echoed, reaching the ears of the fleeing captain far away. The survivors froze in shock. 2 consecutive shots. They suggested turning back to help, and split the loot. But the captain shut it down immediately. Without his dual shields, he'd be the first to die. The last player dropped dead. Only Leah remained. Still, the captain decided to bring reinforcements back later. Maybe they could steal Leah's loot. Cut to the town. The captain was talking a big game, rallying a massive mob of players. Half an hour later, they stormed the area. The forest was absolutely leveled, but the bear had vanished. The captain made excuses, claiming the boss must have been at low height and fled, urging everyone to fan out and search carefully. 2 hours passed. Nothing. 3 hours passed. The crowd started grumbling, accusing him of making the whole thing up. The captain stubbornly doubled down. The sheer destruction was proof. The bear was heavily wounded and hiding. The crowd reluctantly agreed to search a bit longer but warned him if they returned empty-handed, his reputation was dead. He sweated bullets, muttering to himself, wondering if that sniper kid had actually killed the boss. Alone. But back to 4 hours earlier, Leho was still locked in a bloody deathmatch. The bear took the headshot but was still very much alive, and it went on a rampage, torching everything in sight. The paralysis wore off, and Leha fell back to reposition. He saw the captain's group running for their lives. He cursed, but forced himself into absolute hyper-focus. While dodging attacks, he reloaded on the move, a skill he had grinded to perfection. Locked on. 3 headshots would definitely send it to hell. But the bear closed the gap. A massive swipe launched him into the air. The game only transmitted 20 of real pain, but it was still bone-shattering. He hit rock bottom, his vision blurred. He strained his ears to listen, but the beast moved in absolute silence. He pushed his concentration to the absolute limit. The next strike would decide everything. He remembered his sniper mantra and sensed the enemy's bloodlust. He twisted mid-air to dodge, aimed his barrel right at the bear's jaw, and fired. It staggered back, but holy shit. It was still standing after 3 headshots. Out of options, Leha resorted to Baywin charge, the skill he had previously called trash. He charged like a madman, plunging the hot barrel deep into the bear's chest, twisting the blade to shred the wound as he ripped it out. He took one last hit and collapsed. Scene transition. He woke up, completely bewildered. System messages were spamming his screen. He was leveling up like crazy. His class skill jumped 9 levels, his musket skill hit level 5. He had defeated the bear. He screamed in victory, and started looting. The system noted the boss was 50 levels higher than him. He entered the Hall of Fame, receiving a mountain of stat and damage buffs. He rocketed to level 21 with a pile of unused points. He dumped almost everything into agility, and saved a little for it. He also scooped up all the weapons dropped by the dead players to sell later. Then he looted the boss a full rare tier outfit cloak, hood, and boots with built-in fear resistance and fire damage. No weapon draw, but this was a massive haul. Since it was infinitely better than his rags, he equipped it immediately, receiving the resistance and set bonus. A perfect fit. Armed to the teeth, he continued his journey. Cut back to Captain Kim. The captain was getting absolutely dragged on the forums. The video of him cowardly fleeing was going viral. In real life, he was just as massive and muscular as his in-game avatar. He smashed his keyboard in a fit of rage. Unaware that Liha had killed the bear, he swore to hunt down whoever stole his kill. He suspected the protagonist but dismissed it, believing there was no way a kid could solo a boss. Nevertheless, he decided to track down the kid's info just in case. The Bear Cub and the Holy Knights. Back in the game, Leah strolled casually. With his new fire resistance, he could probably tank Wei Yun's magic. He thought about his cousin and the incoming headache of dealing with those two sisters. He opened his map. Bane and Jaenon were miles away, and the sisters had fled to the Gamsabong kingdom. His stomach growled. Hungry. He grabbed his gun and went bear hunting. Since the boss fight, he had grinded to level 23. He spotted one, gauged the wind, calculated the distance, and fired. Just to scratch. Curiously, the bear didn't even react. It seemed his new outfit prevented bears from aggroing him. Second shot, it dropped dead. He looted the corpse. At this rate, he'd hit level 30 before he even set foot in the capital. Another bear entered his crosshairs. It was grooming a Snow White, and possibly cute bear cub. The cub waddled over and hugged his leg. Liha suddenly realized he might have just killed its mother, and a wave of guilt washed over him. He couldn't bring himself to pull the trigger. Instead, he fed it some bread. The cub danced with joy. Honestly, it had serious potential as a pet. He tried to walk away, but those sad puppy dog eyes anchored him in place. He sighed, picked up the cub, and wondered what to do with this fuzzy liability. He called Kijong, letting him know he'd be late to the capital. Kijong warned him to be careful around the bears, completely ignoring his studies to grind raids. Liha asked if the game allowed pets. Kijong assumed he meant mounts. He explained the concept of taming wild monsters. His cousin was blunt and impossible without the tamer class. Monsters inherently view humans as enemies. Still, the cub clung to him like a leech. He asked if he could raise a baby monster like a child. Kijong said cubs were super rare, and gave the same as adults, so players usually slaughtered them first. Disappointed, Leah said goodbye and promised to meet him in the capital. He looked at the little bear on the ground and sighed. If he left it here, some heartless player would farm it for X. He decided to take it with him. The next day, while hunting bears, he hit level 24. He noticed the cub was soaking up leech and growing visibly larger. He kept picking up loot to sell, until a golden snake slithered out, bit his leg, and vanished. Poisoned. Minus 50'd, every 10 seconds for 3 minutes. He was clinging to Lai, his health bar in the red. The cub spotted the snake and bit it to death. Leah hugged it in gratitude. Then, the bear proceeded to mercilessly rip the snake apart and devour it. After that, it grew like a weed. Before long, it was the size of a mountain. The following day, the bear was massive, and Leah was casually riding on its back. Other players mistook it for a monster and relentlessly attacked, forcing Leah to jump off and intervene. He had a feeling he was going to run into massive trouble at the capital. Reaching a town, the guards blocked the gate, terrified of the beast. Leah tried to explain it was tame. Right on cue, the bear opened its jaws and snapped at a nearby severed head, sending everyone running in terror. Unable to enter the city, he turned back. He overheard locals whispering, wondering why someone would ride a bear instead of a horse. An idea sparked. He asked if it could run fast. The bear shot off like a bullet. Master and pet were galloping toward the capital, avoiding all main roads. 2 days later, they approached Ailta. Seeing the castle skyline, he remembered the lunked box, the Musketeer Academy, and the reunion with his cousin. He dismounted and walked to avoid drawing attention. But walking was useless. Just loitering nearby was enough to make players scream bloody murder at the sight of a giant bear. Leah tried to explain he raised it from a cub, but nobody listened. They backed him against the city wall. A squad of embassy guards rushed out, weapons drawn, ready for war. Annoyed, he warned them anyone who touches the bear eats lead. The mages ignored him, unleashing a barrage of fire and ice spells. Leah fired to intercept, but he noticed a strange phenomenon. A knight stepped forward, raised a holy shield, and activated an anti-magic zone. The bullet and the spells were compressed into an orb of light and vanished without a trace. The flash blinded everyone for a second. When their vision returned, the knight ordered Liha to lower his weapon. Absolutely no disturbances allowed in Ale talk. They were holy knights. The knight declared it a misunderstanding, and said no one would be punished. But if Liha pulled the trigger again, there would be no mercy. Liha argued they attacked first. The knight agreed, but bringing a giant bear to the gates caused a mass panic. Still, he did let it slide. He warned the mages no casting attack magic in the capital, even if they claimed it was to protect civilians. The knight dispersed the crowd. Liha sighed in relief and started to lead the bear away. Until they called him back. They asked him to follow them for a moment. He suspected a trap. The knight introduced himself Sir Senergard. He swore on his honor not to harm Liha or the bear. Liha reluctantly agreed. Senergard told Sir Degram to give Liha a tour of the city. With no other choice, he trailed behind. As they walked, Senergard realized something shocking. The holy shield designed to block any attack had been cracked by Liha's bullet. That oath of honor granted Liha an achievement and 50 continental fame. After walking a bit, Degram stopped and asked about the bear. He revealed he knew Liha was an honorary member of the Castle of Lightguard, so there was no need to treat him like a criminal. Senergard chimed in, adding that someone like him surely wouldn't cause trouble. Liha wondered how they knew about his title. Senergard explained they always monitor those who contribute to the kingdom's welfare. The protagonist realized his quest fame was the reason the knights trusted him. So, he spilled everything. From finding the cub, taming it on the road, to brawling with the bears and killing the bear of agony. Senergard understood the bear was tame but still couldn't let it roam Ale talk. A giant bear would cause mass hysteria. One of the soldiers spoke up bears belong with bears, suggesting they release it into the wild. Liha hesitated. Who could tell a tame bear from a wild one? What if a player tried to hunt it? Still, with no other choice, he agreed to release it immediately. The little bear looked confused. Before leaving, Degram asked his name. He introduced himself as Musketeer Liha. Suddenly, the two knights sprouted angel wings and soared into the sky, echoing that they would never forget that name, even if it sounded a bit funny. They vanished into thin air, leaving the protagonist insanely jealous of their flashy, over-the-top aura. Liha led the bear away from the city. They walked until late at night. The bear hugged him tightly. Liha sadly said it was best they part ways. He remembered their short, but meaningful time together, then firmly turned his back, and walked away, leaving the bear looking heartbroken. Suddenly, the bear nipped his hand. He jumped. What the hell are you doing? The bear licked the wound, and then began to glow brilliantly. An achievement popped up, soul binding established. He would never forget this bear. Liha was the third player in the game to earn this achievement. He received buffs and entered the Hall of Fame. The bear cried. Liha promised he would never forget it. He told it not to get hunted for me, though with its massive size, it was probably the one doing the hunting. They parted ways. Liha felt empty. He wasn't even this sad when he parted with Bane. He absent-mindedly kicked a pebble. It hit a wolf in the head. It howled and lunged. Before it could reach him, a new skill appeared. He could summon the bear's spirit at any time, even if it died. The spirit's level was half of his own, but it could grow stronger. Meanwhile, the actual bear joined a wild pack and quickly became the alpha. Liha headed back to the city, riding the next morning. Ale talk was packed. He tore his hair out trying to find his cousin and finally called him. His cousin explained the capital was where everyone hung out when they were bored, so it was always jammed. Liha asked where he was. Hyejeong said he was at the south gate, and had been waiting forever. Liha was lost, but his cousin told him to stay put since the south gate had no landmarks. Turns out, Hyejeong had been standing right next to him the whole time. Liha angrily asked why he didn't say anything. Hyejeong smirked, saying he just wanted to watch his little brother look like a lost puppy. After chewing his cousin out, Liha noticed something. Hyejeong's gear was way better than he thought. Hyejeong bragged that this gear was nothing for a top player. He stared at his cousin's Bear of Agony outfit, and asked bluntly, did you buy that or loot it off a corpse? Liha took offense. I'm not a scrub, I hunted it myself. His cousin still couldn't believe his useless brother had gotten so strong so fast. Suddenly, another player appeared, introducing himself Wei-on, a red-haired mage. He said he had heard a lot about Liha. According to Hyejeong, Liha was a real-life sniper with massive potential. Hyejeong looked a bit embarrassed. Liha felt a surge of pride. His cousin was a good guy, just had a foul mouth. Another member stepped up, recognizing the gear. He marveled, taking down that bear boss at that level is insane. The kid introduced himself as Sosu. Everyone asked if he was Japanese. He said no, just borrowed the name of a famous anime character. Hijong asked about the boss. Sosuk mentioned the boss went viral thanks to a video of a terrified tanker running for his life. None other than Captain Kim. Sosuk noticed something about Lee's gear, but kept his mouth shut. Next, Hijong introduced someone else's tale. He said he called the whole guild to power level Lee. When asked what level Lee was, level 25, the whole group turned to stone. They whispered to Kijong, I thought he was a noob. Kijong presto, are you serious? Lee nodded. He had been grinding his ass off since they last met. Huiyun did the math, if he killed the Sword Eagle, he had to be around level 12. Jumping more than 10 levels that fast was absolute bullshit. Huiyun asked for Lee's contact info, blurring that they'd be seeing a lot of each other. The whole group asked for his number. Huiyun wrapped it up. They had a ton of work to do, and Kijong basically worshipped him as the guild master. They said their goodbyes, opened a portal, and vanished, leaving the two cousins behind. Kijong was green with envy. Portals are so convenient. Walking is torture. He put his arm around his cousin, told him to spill everything, and offered to buy him snacks. At the tavern, Kijong was in awe of his cousin's skills and the fact that he soloed a world boss. He analyzed it at that level, it's possible. Massive musket damage, weak point crits. He brought up the disastrous bear raid party. That group had zero coordination, so wipe was guaranteed. He recalled Captain Kim fleeing, leaving the bear to tear the others apart. But that was exactly when Lee had the time to aim without being targeted. So yes, with the gun's damage, and the bear already at low, Kijong admitted his little brother actually soloed the boss. He was deeply impressed, recalling an archer in his guild who missed every shot until he turned auto aim back on. They discussed range. Kijong was confused. If a musket's max range is 40 meters, how did you kill the bear from that far away with one shot? Lee corrected him, not one shot, 3. And he finished it with a Baywent charge when he ran out of ammo. Kijong couldn't fathom how the bear was still standing after all that damage. Then Lee had dropped the bomb since day one. He had been hunting without ever turning on the aim assist. To learn how to actually play the game. With assist on, accuracy is hard capped at 50. Turn it off, and it relies 100 on real-life aiming skills. When Lee had declared all 3 shots were headshots, Kijong was furious his cousin hadn't bragged about this sooner. Still in shock, he asked if Lee wanted to join the guild. Lee shook his head no. Kijong pleaded. His guild was one of the strongest on the server, which is why he introduced Lee to the heavy hitters earlier. The guild master was incredibly famous, even appearing on TV. Top 8 in Korea and top 40 globally. One of his spells could wipe an entire enemy formation. Lee remained unfazed. He had already met Huijun, a global top 9. He asked for his cousin's rank. Kijong shyly replied top 100 in Korea, Master Templark. Then he started talking trash. Lee had to restrain himself from pulling out his sniper and putting a hole in his cousin. Top 500 globally wasn't that big of a deal. Well, out of 100 million players, it's something. He was only 2 levels away from hitting 200, and the game's level cap was much higher than it seemed. Lee's jaw dropped. Kijong patted his shoulder, saying that after they ate, he'd take his cousin to party in the capital before he headed to the academy. Back at the guild headquarters, Tail said goodbye and left to quest, leaving Sosuk and Huiyun. Huiyun wanted to talk privately, and asked if anyone was eavesdropping. Sosuk activated his ocular skill, reporting it was clear. Huiyun praised him. Not many can slip past his eyes. They dissected Lee's photo. Different gear, but 100 the same kid. Level 25 confirmed. They concluded he's using hidden stats. This guy is no beginner. Huiyun asked if he could scan the kid's achievements. Sosuk shook his head. Huiyun growled, blaming the Ram Witch sisters for using the musketeer against their guild. He wasn't stupid. Backed into a corner, Sosuk admitted he didn't know if they were aware K and Lee were cousins, or if they were just using him for intel. The red-haired guy called Sosuk an idiot. It was a rhetorical question. What pissed him off was not knowing the witch's next move. Sosuk confessed he managed to vaguely scan one of the kid's titles. What was it? Fearless. Increases attack damage. Only earned by killing a monster 20 levels higher. Huiyun deduced the sisters must have completely trusted the kid to give him the last hit. So the Korean player they recruited was definitely this gunner, the only musketeer at that level in the entire game. He was convinced the sisters were backing the protagonist. Sosuk hesitated. We can't be sure, boss. Huiyun slammed the table. A few days ago he was a beggar in rags. Now he's sitting at level 25 without farming legendary monsters. He's decked out in rare gear. There's no way he grinded that himself without those two intervening. Sosu cautiously asked what if he actually soloed it. Wei Yan exploded. Kicking the table across the room, there is 0% chance a level 12 soloed an Onya bear. He was slapped in the face with a pile of evidence. He was losing his mind. Leah wasn't smart enough to orchestrate this. They definitely set this trap days ago. Throwing a tantrum, Wei Yan ordered a bounty increase on the sisters, and sent Kei to tail his idiot cousin. Before leaving, he warned Sosuke not to trust Kei too much and to stick to Leah like glue. That's why they recruited him. He pointed, use a stealth item, lay low, and don't make a sound. Sosuke just nodded as the redhead drew a magic circle. With a forced smile, Wei Yan asked, do I look friendly? Yes, boss. He looked straight into Sosuke's eyes. You're a terrible liar. Sosuke stayed dead silent. Wei Yan apologized and hugged him before teleporting away. A little later in the city, Kei and Leah were glued to the system screen. Kei cursed because the map was extortionately expensive, while Leah tried to pinpoint what alley they were stuck in. Leah acted smug. Reading a map is a basic sniper skill. Gotta know the terrain. Kei urged him to head straight to the academy. Leah suddenly remembered the quest Kijong Kei had mentioned earlier, the Holy Grail quest. When I hit level 100, I went to Candle Castle to grind it, but it wasn't there. Leah felt a red flag. He went all the way back there at that level. He deflected. No one is gonna buy that lunchbox anyway. Thinking about it, Leah realized there wasn't a restaurant by that name in Ilta. Everyone just ate lunchboxes. He told himself, losing a little affinity won't kill me, and I can farm reputation in Iltalk without dragging my ass back to Candle Castle. Then an idea sparked. If he was the first to complete the quest, maybe a branch would open in the capital, and update the map. Kei nudged him, just eat the damn lunchbox and be done with it. It buffs you by a whole 4 levels. Grinding that would take weeks, maybe months. Leveling up high is brutal, just eat it. Time's money. Then an idea flashed in Kei's brain. Leah flinch. Sell it. Amidst the fluttering clotheslines, they started plotting. Eating it was a waste, hiding it was pointless. Thinking of his mom, Leah wavered. Selling it would easily cover the surgery and household expenses. Kei tempted him, let me talk to the guild master and find a buyer. Leah smirked, deciding to play along. What was there to fear? Kei started acting like a broker. If you've made up your mind, just do it. Leah glared. I said let me think about it. Kei snapped, I thought you were down. I never said that. What's there to think about? Sniper stuff. Just keep the lunchbox a secret for me. Kei scoffed, I went to college. I'm not retarded. Suddenly, a voice chimed in, it's a pleasure to see you again. 2 holy knights appeared out of nowhere. One waved with both hands. The other just nodded. Kei panicked. What the hell did Leah do to get hunted by them? I didn't do anything. They argued loudly about the knight's night shift schedule until Leah told his cousin to shut up and politely say hello. He introduced the guy with the slicked back pompadour as her Cinderella. The big guy looked confused. The other one burst into hysterical laughter. After laughing his ass off, he introduced himself, Sir de Graham. He tried to explain, but cracked up again. His partner corrected him, Sinnergard. Leah realized he messed up and apologized profusely. He asked what they wanted. They replied nothing. Just passing by, and saying Leah didn't buy it. He reported that he had released the bear into the South Forest. Sinnergard smiled, I never doubted you, and thanked him for his cooperation. Then he turned to Kei, a member of the Starlight Guild. Masterk. He praised the guild's exploits in the Northwest, and shook Kei's hand. Kei was trembling. This was the first time he had spoken to the Holy Guard. Drowning in his own ego, Kei wondered if it was his reputation or his guild badge. Then the bitter reality hit him, they didn't give a shit about him. They came for Leah. He was furious. Why did they know this low-level sniper, while a top player like him got ignored? Leah calmly explained they just came to check if he released the bear. Kei demanded the whole story, and Leah spilled everything. Hearing it, Kei nodded, admitting it made sense, but it still rubbed him the wrong way that they favored his brother over him. My reputation is level 150, you know. Leah looked confused, mine is only 80, despite the level gap. They screamed, impossible for a low-level scrub to have reputation that high. I grinded my ass off doing quests. You can't farm fame before level 200. Leah insisted he didn't have a secret formula. Kei was exhausted trying to comprehend it. They kept walking. Kei loudly declared he wanted to see what his brother was planning next. Leah clicked his tongue, saying he was grinding seriously to make a living. He suggested grinding combat skills, but Leah stopped in front of a building. A rundown shack, the Musketeer Academy. They mocked the dilapidated state. He remembered the luxurious academy for tankers earlier. Leah complained about the unfairness of the universe. He explained because many classes share an academy, it's better funded. He tossed Leah 2 gold coins and some supplies, warning him not to sell his armor just yet. Leah thanked him profusely, holding the pile of gear. 2 gold coins was about 200. He told him to go quest, and to hit him up if he needed anything. Leah smiled. Leah decided to hit the training grounds. He pushed open the academy doors, dark and desolate. It looked like a haunted house. He called out to see if anyone was home. Furniture was scattered everywhere. A shadow dropped down behind him. Cold steel pressed against the back of his neck. Don't move. Not a sound. Do exactly as I say, and you'll keep breathing. Leah realized this wasn't some rookie gunman. He couldn't even sense his bloodlust. The heavily bearded man growled, demanding he speak without moving a muscle. Leah raised his hands, stated his name, and reported as a sniper. Who sent you? No one. The man's eyes lit up when he heard about the recommendation letter from Gilead, the captain of the Kindle Castle Guard. 3 steps forward, slowly, or I'm sending you to have tea with Queen Elizabeth I. Leah was impressed. Perfect distancing, out of arm's reach but dead in his sights. This guy was top tier. He obediently placed the letter on the ground. He announced his gun had no powder, and asked permission to pick up his sidearm. Don't even think about it. 3 steps back. The man joked that Leah would be buying the bullet if he didn't listen. He took a knee, picked up the letter, muttering with that arrogant attitude, you must be a heretic and a sniper. The bearded man scanned Leah's achievements. Leah confirmed this was 190, wearing a wide-brimmed hat, his face covered in scars. The man motioned for him to follow. Soon, they entered a room. The bearded man's gun lay casually on the table. Leah wondered why there were only 2 souls in the whole academy. The man barked, shut your trap and sit down. Leah obeyed, instantly. This experience reminded him of his days in boot camp, being tortured by drill sergeants. He decided to treat this like a military academy. The man declared this is a place of pride. He skimmed the letter, which was full of glowing praise. Didn't expect Jed to be so poetic. Leah quietly said thanks. The man crumpled the letter and tossed it. Praise is garbage. He leaned on the table, growling, morals mean nothing to a sniper. Skill is the only truth. Leah nodded. Morals are just a waste of time. You barking like that because of your half-assed achievements. Oh. The man stomped his foot in annoyance. Good, then you'll be easy to work with. He told Leah to stand up, and tossed him a gun to test his aim. Walking out, Leah thought muskets don't have iron sights. Teaching like this is weird. He wondered why there was an entrance exam. You should just get into the academy at level 10. A prompt popped up: entrance exam. Failure means expulsion. He sweated bullets. He didn't know what the test was, or what the reward would be. Thinking of quitting, coward. He shook his head, and hit accept. At the firing range, targets and straw dummies stood silently. He felt a rush of excitement. Strangely, players could train here up to level 200, but could be kicked out right now. But it made sense. A useless gunner is a dead weight to any team. He guessed this test was to own flexibility, not just a stress test. Holding the gun properly, Leah considered canceling the quest to retreat later, but decided against it. He wasn't a quitter. He stared down the range with unyielding focus. The bearded man chuckled. Your pale face is hilarious, threatening that if he failed, he'd never show his face here again. The wind howled. Leah estimated the distance to the target was 40 meters, well within range. The examiner gave him 3 choices: speed, accuracy, or penetration. Fail, and you're out. He could ask for a hint before starting. Leah figured speed and accuracy were obvious, but he had no idea what penetration entailed. He chose accuracy, his specialty. The bearded man smirked. This will be fun. Leah raised his hand. How many people have passed this? The old man looked surprised. Only 2. Leah was shocked. With all the game's aim assist features, only 2 people. How many have tried? The old man adjusted his hat. Can't remember. Mostly cowards and scrubs, but definitely over 1,000. Leah was tense. 10 million players, and only 2 passed. The examiner strolled down the range, walking right past the targets. Leah thought the dummy right next to him was the target. Note. The old man walked way out until he stopped right in front of the stone wall. Leah calculated about 55 meters. Still doable, but there was no target. The old man pointed. Stuck in the wall was a tiny blue feather. It used to be an accessory on his hat. Leah broke into a cold sweat. Now he understood why thousands had failed. In real life, he had shot targets much further away, but they were infinitely bigger. He tried to keep his voice steady. This is insane. Nobody can hit that. The bearded man was already casually sitting on a stone bench behind him. Begin. Leah took a deep breath. No turning back. Only one way through. He activated Senshi. A prompt appeared, ribbons of light wrapping around his body. He commanded the system to max out his vision. Another prompt, accuracy guaranteed at 50. He guessed the rest relied on his own instincts. The final prompt, accuracy boosted to absolute max. The system warned this could affect gameplay. Accept the risk. Yes. Light washed over him. His senses awakened. Everything became unnervingly sharp. He tossed a bullet in the air and placed his gun on the ground. Tap loading. The bearded man nodded correct. The old man muttered, if this was a speed test, this brat would failed ages ago. Leah took his stance. 55 meters for a target the size of a fingernail. He could barely even see the feather. He reassured himself, I can do this. He imagined the target was 250 meters away. The examiner watched. The kid was deeply focused and reckless. Leah locked on. The feather came into sharp focus. His mind emptied. The world faded away. Only the target remained. His finger squeezed the trigger. Boom. The bullet tore through the air. The wind whipped around them. Leah held his breath. Hit. The bullet pinned the feather to the wall, even chipping the stone. He screamed in victory internally. The examiner was stunned. Nice shot. Leah was just as shocked. The old man had eagle eyes to even see that from this distance. He could barely see it himself. Art, you cannot go check. Not my problem. The old man adjusted his hat, smiling even as he muttered that the kid was a pain in the ass. A cascade of prompts popped up. He passed the exam. Top 3 in the world, a pile of bonus rewards, 40 fame, and a ton of agility points. He was hyped, finally understanding why the reward was kept secret. Stop dancing around and get your ass in here. The old man barked. Leah happily ran inside. Later, the old man poured orange juice into a silver cup. Having fun. Too much fun. The old man frowned. That skill explains why you're such an eyesore. Leah deflected. Just got lucky. The bearded man dropped to Yoda-esque quote, luck doesn't smile on the incompetent. Only the exceptional get to walk with it. He sipped his juice, while Leah pondered. The achievement, said Browless, was one of the top 3 snipers in the world. The old man explained, audacity quiets the mind, and a quiet mind produces precise movements. A lightning bolt tore through that feather. He smiled. Maybe you actually have a brain in that skull. He said if Leah had shown up sooner, he would have trained him to be one of the 3 musketeers. Leah found the name a bit cheesy, but whatever. You're still just a brat in Diabers. Then he tossed him a blue pouch. Keep it. What's this? Animal, worth 10 silver. Leah was surprised by the reward. Basic training is child's play. New skills are what matter. Leah thanked him. Browless waved it off. Hold your horses, here comes the awful part. He adjusted his hat. We're going spider hunting. Leah accepted the quest, and immediately got pissed. No welcome party, just slave labor. Hunting spiders wasn't worth the exp at his level. There are bats in there too. Boy. He bargained he wanted to kill the bats too. The old man thought he was being arrogant, but Lee had insisted. He knew the line between confidence and delusion, and he was going to make this quick. Browless thought for a moment, then opened the door. Fine, you can handle a few bats. Leah was ecstatic. Then he negotiated. If he succeeds, he wants to learn a new skill. The old man's eyes narrowed. He declared, kill 30 spiders and 30 bats in 12 hours. Fail, and you lose all your rewards. Leah almost fell over. Not even a full day. He tried to haggle, taking back your word. Leah gave a thumbs up. I'm out. He bolted. He consoled himself that this was like the stock market, high risk, massive returns. The old man muttered to himself, this kid is pretty interesting. Leah ran without stopping. 3 hours to the forest, 3 hours back. And it wasn't just killing. He had to collect 30 loot drops from each monster type. Hunting 60 was already a nightmare, but the old man believed in him, so he was going all out. He passed a crowd forming parties. No time. Straight to the west gate. He heard someone recruiting for the watchtower. He paused. That name sounded familiar. He remembered the Ramp sisters. Opened his map. It was way past the Sentinel Mountains. Far as hell. That area was probably Wayne's turf. With the Ice Sisters' protection, he felt a twinge of jealousy. He promised himself he'd catch up to both of them soon. Night fell. He stopped to catch his breath. It took 3 hours and 45 minutes. He mentally thanked his boots, confident he could keep this pace on the way back. Noise. Players were camping, arguing loudly about the monsters. Spiders loved hide and seek. During the day, they were fast as lightning. Hunting bears was easier. He considered asking for a party, but heard them say it was best to wait for dawn. The bats were sleeping. Two guys warned Lee how that going in alone was suicide. Didn't care. He plunged into the forest. The group started taking bets on how long he'd last. 1 silver he makes it to dawn. 2 hours. 1 hour. Hearing everything, he was pissed, but trudged on. Rude bastards. He aimed his gun into the darkness. In for a penny, in for a pound. Under the silver moonlight, he crept through the trees. Gun loaded. He challenged himself reload in 63 seconds with his eyes closed. He wanted to get stronger. He pulled a long torch from his inventory. With light, the time dropped to 50 seconds. The torch flared. A hideous spider dropped from a tree right in front of him, screeching piercingly while others scurried out, woken by the light. He lowered his barrel. Boom. The red spider dropped instantly. Another one nearby stayed alert. Silence fell. A staring contest to see who moved first. Leah frantically reloaded in a panic as the monster tried to flee. It bolted. Then a bullet slammed right into its back. He exhaled. His reload speed had actually improved. The spiders hissed. His senses cranked to the max. Everything was getting more disgusting. He almost felt sorry for it. He checked the corpse. No loot. Drop rate was under 50. Absolute garbage. He cocked his gun again. Still over 10 hours left. Gotta maximize this. Back at the campsite, the group assumed Leah was dead, the bet null and void. One guy suggested going in to loot his body. The other was terrified of the monsters. The gray-haired mage just wanted to take a quick laugh, confirm the kid was dead, and take all the bet money. He smirked, drooling over the kid's high-tier armor. If he died, he definitely dropped something. He even planned to use his 2 friends as meat shields. The 2 archers with him were jumpy. Being a mage, he cast 3 fireballs to light the way. Nothing. No monsters. Empty. Weird, not a single one around, and no dropped items either. They decided to go deeper. One archer pointed ahead. A glowing green puddle was bubbling and smoking heavily. A swamp. They cursed, wondering what sick joke this was. There was no swamp here before. Why was this thing so gross? The mage realized that was not a swamp. It was a pool of liquid, formed from the remains of all the monsters that had just been massacred. He fell to his knees, puking his guts out. The archers yanked him back. Not the time. Gotta run. A bone-chilling screech ripped through the night. The archers tensed up, telling the mage to snap out of it, because they had company. One turned around after hearing horrifying noises, and went pale. Dozens of blood-red eyes glared at the trio. One guy screamed there's no way monsters respawn all at once. A spider lunged. The mage froze. If monsters swarm all at once, it means something catastrophically bad just happened. In a flash, they were swarmed by giant spiders and bats. And they realized someone had wiped out this entire mob in a single strike. Scene transition. A hand gripped the handle of a silver cup. It was browless, sitting alone in the academy, chugging alcohol, and thinking time was almost up. Suddenly, his instincts flared. Reflexively, he jammed his gun barrel right into the intruder's back. Don't move. From another angle, the grumpy old man was aiming his gun at the protagonist without even realizing it, repeating the same tired line. He told Leah to shut up. Leah turned to look him dead in the face. Hey, am I gonna have to play this game every time I walk through the door? The old man's eyes bulged when he realized who it was. How the hell? How is this even possible? Leah dropped a heavy, stuffed cloth bundle onto the floor. Here, everything you asked for. Spider legs, bat fangs, the works. He smiled, acting completely unfazed, as if he hadn't almost exploded from stress during this nightmare of a quest. And I brought extras, just in case. The old man opened the bundle, inspected it, and was rendered speechless. You're back. Leah frowned, slightly offended that the old man's faith in him was so flimsy. The academy director's brain was doing math like a meme, trying to calculate how the hell one person could hunt 500 monsters in that time frame. He looked at the rookie's clueless face, and thought impossible. If he did, he'd have to fire over 500 shots without even stopping to breathe. Trying to hide his mental breakdown, he just cleared his throat, and mumbled impressive. System prompt quest complete. And he even got bonus rewards for over-delivering. This was getting ridiculous. The old man grumbled that he didn't know how much ammo Leah burned through. but at least it was good practice. Then he tossed Li a silver coin. Another prompt popped up with it. A new skill. Li eagerly read the message. Now he could reduce his reload time by 30 seconds. The effect lasted 5 minutes with a 6-hour cooldown. He closed the window and immediately chirped, "Alright, what's the next quest?" The boss cleared his throat before that. "We need to talk." As if it were no big deal, he asked, "How the hell did you hunt and gather all this gear?" Li blinked, not understanding why that was even a question. The old man broke a sweat. "I did the math. This is impossible for a novice." "Did you steal this? Who did you rob?" Li smiled, an almost demonic grin. "You really want to know?" He interlaced his fingers, rested his elbows on the table, and took a deep breath, preparing his presentation. "I just combined the skills I had, and created something entirely new." Flashback to the forest. A red spider lay dead. A small bat had also logged out. Li leaned against a tree, panting, while the other monsters dissolved. The protagonist admitted this was too slow. He didn't have any decent skills. No supersonic machine guns or ridiculous gimmicks. Shooting them one by one was torture. And worse, the drop rate was a joke. Kill 4, hit 1 drop. He checked his arsenal. Calm heart, they went charge, and artillery. All single target damage. He could line them up, but he didn't even know how many targets a bullet could pierce. What he needed right now was incredibly simple area of effect O damage, and a clever trick to get out of this mess. He realized he was standing in a clearing where 5 paths intersected, perfect terrain for Ab. He remembered his ice mage friend, and felt a twinge of jealousy. Mages definitely had sweep attacks like that. But a musketeer. At this level, nothing. But there was something cool from before. He remembered the eagle quest, the gunpowder smoke. It wasn't a skill, but it worked. It even scared the wolves away. He told himself, when you don't have a skill, make one. Flashing a creepy, villainous smile, he decided to test his theory. He started molding something with his hands, scanning his surroundings. This should work. And he double-checked no players nearby. In his red cloak, he got into position next to a chopped-down stump, resting his gun on it like he was prepping to trigger some ridiculous master plan. He exhaled, kicked off the grass, and sprinted. Target a massive red spider with razor-sharp pincers. Starting with you. A sharp leg raise, ready to strike. Li had tracked the trajectory. Palm. The spider slashed, and he power slid on his knees, dodging the blow at the very last second. He popped up, spun, and activated Baywent Charge. The barrel slammed into the monster's chest. Green blood sprayed everywhere. The Baywent dug deep, lodged in the hard shell. The spider let out a gut-wrenching screech. Internally, he celebrated, screamed louder. And he bolted down the forest paths, dragging the screaming spider like an air raid siren. The forest woke up. Suddenly, red spiders poured up from all sides, and giant bats went feral from the disturbance. Li delivered a brutal strike, snashing his siren and splattering gallons of neon green blood everywhere. That blinding color would pull aggro from everything, and it did. The monsters chased him at breakneck speed, the noise waking up countless others to join the fray. And our gunner was running for his life with half the forest on his ass. It was a bloodbath in the making. The entire forest was hunting the kid, starving and enraged. His only thought, if I trip, I'm dead. Too many monsters were breathing down his neck. A spider lunged, missing his head by inches. Li dodged by hair. They were catching up. Panic set in. He tried to widen his stride, but he knew the truth. He was cornered. He was totally screwed. He gritted his teeth, forcing himself to think. There was still a way out. He activated sprint boots. This quest was too important to fail. And then he saw it. He was nearing the rally point. The stump from earlier. He gripped his gun with both hands. The finish line was right there. In one fluid motion, he pivoted, faced the stump, using it as a barricade between him and the horde. He aimed, finger on the trigger. Activated calm heart. His eyes changed. His accuracy hit an insane peak. The bullet slammed into a tiny spot on the stump. Sparks flew. Looking closer. It was a fuse. And that stump was actually a barrel of gunpowder. The spark traveled inside. 1 second later. Boom. A seismic explosion swallowed the clearing. Spiders and bats were incinerated in a sea of fire. From above, a massive crater had been torn into the earth, smoke and fire billowing. Thick black smoke rose into the night sky. Li stepped back, shielding his face from the ash and the stench of burnt meat. Face covered in soot, he flashed a cocky grin. Knew it. The crater had become an oven for giant spiders and bats. He admitted its destructive power was basically a lemon. The blast radius was terrifying. This is basically an M18 claymore. He rubbed his head, relieved he had planted extra gunpowder in tricky spots, and lucky to escape the blast by the skin of his teeth. He gripped his weapon, taking a deep breath. Totally worth it. He screamed in triumph, I did it. End of flashback. We return to Brelis's room. The bearded man stared at him, absolute disbelief in his eyes. So, you just built a bomb? Leha shrugged. Yeah. He rambled on, explaining the mechanics of a claymore mine. It wasn't perfect, just a jury-rigged version, but the principle was identical. And luckily, he had enough ammo and gear to detonate it. Brelis repeated slowly, a claymore. It's like this kid just invented fire. He brought the cup to his lips, staring pensively at the rippling orange juice. You truly are an anomaly. He put the cup down, grinning ear to ear. What a fascinating rookie standing before a table full of loot. Leha thanked him, a bit embarrassed. Brelis held up a hand. Before you thank me, think about this. Leha was confused when he asked what that action reflected about his abilities. Was that really the combat style of a musketeer? The bearded man reminded him this quest was designed to make you a better marksman. Leha nodded. I know, and I practiced my aim a lot in the beginning. Brelis narrowed his eyes. Maybe so, but don't try to outsmart me. Leha swallowed hard. Understood. I'll be more careful next time. Brelis stood up, straightening his feathered hat. You still haven't answered my question. Leha stayed silent for a moment, and the old man repeated, what is the role of a musketeer? The kid fired back, trying to sound smart. All right, but what do you mean by a role? I'll give you an example. Brelis crossed his arms. Remember the incident 2 decades ago when the city was invaded by monsters? The Second Great War. Leha recognized the event. He dug through the lore he had read on the Middle-earth wiki. An alliance of kingdoms against the Monster Legion. Brilliant generals on both sides. Ultimately, it didn't matter who you were fighting, victory always belonged to the better commander. A musketeer was just a pawn on the chessboard. Leah looked up, eyes resolute. In a war like that, the role of a musketeer is to be a sniper. Brelis raised an eyebrow. Why do you think that? A boring explanation about human military hierarchy followed. Leah summarized on the human side. If a general falls, someone else steps up immediately. The battle continues. But monsters don't have that kind of organization. So, the perfect tactic is obvious: cut off the enemy commander's head. It causes panic, chaos, and a power vacuum. Then we seize the moment and launch an all-out assault. Brelis went silent, his eyes half closed in thought. He muttered, almost to himself, that's why I founded the Musketeer Academy. Leha blinked, confused. What? Brelis turned away, grabbing his coat. Never mind. It doesn't matter. A quest prompt popped up on Leha's system. From what I've seen, Brelis said, I have nothing left to teach you. But he added, but I have one more thing for you, besides the new quest. The quest required him to take down a boss to increase affinity with Brelis and Kingdom fame. But suddenly, the conditions kept changing. Leha froze. But what do you mean? The new conditions appeared, insanely ridiculous. He must not exceed level 30. He must not be defeated. And he must not party up. He panicked. This was complete bullshit. You give a quest and change the rules immediately. Worse, he was level 25. Soloing a level 30 boss is a job for a full party. While Leha was losing his mind, Brelis calmly sipped his juice. Leha thought about his breaking point. Does this old man hate me? Brelis stared as if peering into his soul. When Leha had almost written this quest off as a death sentence, the old man casually said, don't be so tense. Leha paused. Brelis continued, evenly relaxed. Handling this with sniper skills is easy. Just put a bullet right between the boss's eyes, and you're done. That line, meant to be comforting, terrified Leha even more. Easy. That's suicide. But by some spiritual force, something inside urged him to take the bet. He swallowed, trying to keep his voice steady. All right. I accept. Brelis flashed a radiant smile and burst into a ho-ho laugh like Santa Claus. He struck a heroic pose. Then go fulfill your mission. Leha bolted out the door like an arrow. Just like me, and anyone else. Brelis was incredibly eager to see how this would end. As Leha ran, he was at least relieved the quest didn't have a time limit. I'm just wondering how many hours this kid has been glued to her without taking a shower. He stopped, panting. Best to grind to level 29 before I head out. His mind drifted back to Brelis, the Academy founder. The future of Musketeers' achievement. Who the hell was this old man? Leha opened his system panel and decided to consult his foul-mouthed cousin Kijon. He sent a message. No reply. Sent another. Crickets. Weird. The beloved tanker cousin was probably busy fighting monsters. So he opened his friend list. Every single guild member was gathered at Tanya Gorge. Some middle of nowhere spot. Kijun was probably fighting alongside Sosu, Al, and Huiyan. Liha marveled hunting in a party is the best reason to join a guild. And then he realized a shocking truth: the Ram sisters were also there. Are you kidding me? Scene transition: Iraqi wasteland, barren as a desert. A prompt pop-up: the Ram sisters are escaping. An armed wave, giving orders. They're heading deep into Tanya Gorge. Call for reinforcements now. Blockade both of those witches. The red-haired mage Huiyan, guild master of Rising Sun, commanded, declaring allied guilds were on the way and urging Sosu to cut off their escape route. The ninja vanished in a flash. The raid leader ordered the healers to spam buffs on the designated tankers. Understood. A scout was assigned to track the girls on radar. Easy as pie, he said, darting off. Huiyan thought, let's see those brats escape this. Sosuk will lock down every path. You're trapped. On the other flank, Tae Kijom led the tank line, taking orders to hold the formation. The captain paced anxiously. We have dozens of players over level 60. There's no way they're getting away. The redhead stared in the direction they fled, his eyes obsessive. I'll crush those two. I just need one more thing. He raised his hand and began a bizarre ritual. A purple magic circle appeared around him. A pillar of light shot into the sky like a spaceship cannon. Kim Hong yelled, that'll block teleportation. Now they have no way out. But on the other side, a girl's hand reached up. Another incantation was cast. Blue hair, absolutely fearless, attacking. Wejun charged straight into the blinding light. In the next instant, that light transformed into a storm of razor-sharp ice needles, blasting straight into the enemy squad. A bunch of grunts took the hit, screaming in agony because no armor could withstand a mage's attack. Kim Hong raised his massive shield, taking the brunt of a gigantic ice spear, and dropped to his knees behind it in the nick of time. In the freezing mist, Wejung's silhouette appeared, ready for round 2. Kimmy smirked confidently. Long time no see. The Ice Queen had officially arrived, facing down the most respected tanker. The Knight Captain reported the enemy was 70 meters away, and ordered the tanks to hold the line. Wejung activated Ice Spear and rained a barrage down on them. The Knight Captain yelled for his team to turtle up and stall as long as possible. The problem was that magic rain stopped any knight from advancing a single step. But then, suddenly, all the ice blocks boomed and exploded into fire magic. The Knight Captain was still dumbfounded when Huiyan appeared, making it crystal clear who the culprit was. He was furious his side had taken heavy losses. But he ordered them to hold formation and warned everyone to dodge the damage. Cursing aside, he had to admit these two were incredibly strong. After all, the blue-haired girl was global top 9. He charged, knowing full well she was unpredictable. But just as he thought he had her, an ice wall erupted, blocking his path. Seeing this, the knight's blood boiled, screaming he wouldn't let this stop him. He started smashing the wall and rallied his boys to help. He had to admit she was opt for casting spells while sprinting for her lay. Eventually, he shattered the wall because he was just as strong. But the moment the wall crumbled, the blue-haired girl was standing right there, waiting for him to step through. He didn't understand why she hadn't run, but Huijon began chanting, and in an instant, a cut sliced across his cheek. Everyone collapsed with countless lacerations, and he realized his AD was plummeting. Then he saw his team being shredded by microscopic ice shards from the very wall they had just broken. Having to admit her brilliance yet again made him want to vomit blood in frustration. From the protagonist's paw, he was grumbling because Kijong still hadn't replied. But Liha figured he was just worrying over nothing. However, he imagined his friends fighting to the death. Unable to contact anyone, he feared the worst. Meanwhile, at Tanya Gorge, the two girls were finally cornered. A guy spoke up, saying they could finally talk, and demanded to know why they kept running. He recalled the redhead pouring a fortune in donations into Dale Castle, but Liha in his thoughts assumed she had given up. Liha thought there was no reason to care about a tiny castle, but the guy retorted that if he were her, he'd watch his mouth. What's the point of being the second largest investor, when you get nothing in return, like last time? You dumping cash in there makes the broke players suffer. Liha thought, is she planning to monopolize Kanawar Gorge too? Anyway, the guy kept blabbering that it was unfair they used real-world money instead of in-game currency to buy advantages. He accused them of being show-offs, but Wajum thought he was clueless, because she considered it an investment. Getting straight to the point, the redhead demanded a fair price for the castle's ownership, but the girl flatly refused just to see what would happen. The redhead growled a warning in a game this realistic. People can do things far worse than just player killing B. That line made both girls shiver in disgust. The girls were done talking and took combat stances. The redhead's goons immediately formed a shield wall to protect their boss. He was terrified, hiding behind the shields, and felt humiliated, because he thought the blue-haired girl was about to attack. Wei Yun mocked him, pointing out that the 10 guys sent to block their retreat had been wiped out. The redhead didn't believe it because Wei Yun had been standing right there the whole time. Regardless, the blue-haired girl coldly reported only 44 guys left. The redhead sneered that the number was lower than she expected from Koreans, but he didn't buy it. Despite everything, Wei Yun cast fire missile, and launched a rain of fire into the sky. The redhead didn't get what she was showing off for. He had blocked teleportation, so no backup could arrive. So Suk's unit was holding the other route, so he was certain no one could get past to level 200 Black Ninja. He kept preaching for them to accept the deal, but he also wanted them to taste the suffering he was about to unleash. He ordered his subordinates to prep their spells, but suddenly he felt a freezing aura lock him in place and force him to his knees. The shield knight screamed, reporting a debuff. Healers were called, but they were completely useless. Wei Jun shouldn't have been able to pull that off, but turns out there were a lot of people on the cliff, and not just a few. It looked like an entire army. He recognized the flag planted on the peak, the emblem of the Golden Dragon Guild, but he had no idea why they were here. Wei Yun's guild and Golden Dragon had clashed brutally before, but it seemed the 3 Chinese guilds had formed an alliance. In both numbers and sheer power, Golden Dragon was one in Asia, and with 300 players looming above, the redhead knew he was screwed. Then the guild's martial artist stepped forward to greet the Korean team. It was Pei Wu, the rank 4 player in the world. Instantly, the redhead's face lost all its color. His teammates murmured in panic. Turns out that fire missile earlier was in So's signal. And while Wei Yun threw money at her problems, Pei Wu used his fists. But since both sides benefited, calling it an alliance wasn't wrong. The redhead had to think fast to avoid completely blowing it. He asked Pei Wu what the hell he was doing here, trying to play dumb. But the martial artist declared he was here to protect the girls. The redhead asked what their relationship was, but Wei Yun brushed him off, none of your business. She gave him one last chance, get out now and stop fighting over the castle. She declared she'd let it go, but if he tried that cowardly extortion again, he'd catch a beating. And the redhead wasn't stupid. He knew she was backing down just to look good in front of the public. But Pei Wu dropped a lethal threat. Do you really think making an enemy out of me is a smart move? Because if you do, we'll go all out and tear your guild to shreds. The red-haired girl and the martial artist even laughed out loud as if it were a joke. The declaration of war severely demoralized Hein's allies. Pei Wu had backed him into a corner. He swallowed his pride, and was about to accept the compromise. But suddenly, out of nowhere, a deafening explosion rang out as someone was struck down. Everyone looked up at the sky where the noise came from. It was a death notification, but the brilliant red light rising from it was anything but normal. Wei Yun thought it was another one of the redhead's dirty tricks, but seeing his clueless expression, she realized he had no idea what was happening either. Pei Wu urged the girls to focus. He tried to explain the presence of that person to Wei Yun, but since she didn't get it, he blurted out, "Are you talking about the Berserker?" Berserker Agrom Igor, the 3rd strongest player in the world. He had found it weird that there wasn't a soul at the farming spots, but now everything made sense. And in his beastkin form, he unleashed the Great Cross. Down below, Pei Wu broke a sweat because they couldn't stop his transformation. But since this twist inadvertently benefited Hein, he wasted no time, ordering a full assault to wipe out the girls and make a clean getaway. From Hero Liha's perspective, he was grumbling because his messages to Kijom were going unanswered. He thought about asking for the brown best musket, but figured asking Ingsis might be more productive. Liha popped into a tavern, hoping to fish for intel. As he walked in, Ingsis were gossiping excitedly about a massive brawl in Tui. Rumors were flying about a clash between top rankers, 200 players getting wiped, and multiple guilds getting sucked into the vortex just because they got in the way of Igor's grinding. Igor had swept through the Golden Dragons, and the unlucky Koreans were caught in the crossfire as punching bags. Luckily, Liha saw Kijom was still online, but he was worried sick. The problem was, right after, Soseuk logged out, and a bunch of others followed suit. Liha decided to log out to ask him directly. Stepping out of the rig, he called his best friend, asking with concern. Kijom apologized for ignoring the texts. Liha pressed him about what happened in the battle. His friend said the global rankers are absurdly and terrifyingly strong. He advised Leha to focus on leveling up if he didn't want to get dragged into the mess. Leha promised, and hung up. But that evasive attitude only fueled Leha's curiosity. He checked the forums for videos, and right on cue, the death effect appeared as the berserker crashed the battlefield. Crimson light flared right before a player was crushed, and Igor absorbed that light to grow stronger. The sight froze everyone, and he charged with a bloodthirsty frenzy before anyone could react. Still, Feiwu managed to save at least 2 people. And so, the 2 rankers Global 3 and 4 faced off. Aguroi growled, asking who this kid was, and if he planned to get in his way. But then he noticed the battle raging below. He saw the 2 girls, and realized they were the martial artist's actual VIPs, so he immediately redirected his attack at that weak point. Aguroi ignored the redhead, who stood there looking like an idiot with no idea what to do. Feiwu yelled for the girls to run. But the blue-haired girl pushed her friend behind her and cast a spell called Forest of Frost. Massive ice trees erupted from the ground, shooting toward the berserker. But he raged, dodged effortlessly, and accelerated. The spell accidentally blocked the Korean team. They tried to smash it, but the berserker got there first. He scared them half to death, looking like he was about to slaughter the whole group. A shockwave exploded on the mountainside. The dust cleared, and Agromi pointed his massive sword at the Asian players. After a dry joke mocking how you all look the same, the massive werewolf swung his sword horizontally to chop down the ice tree. But the strike only left a tiny crack. Realizing he couldn't break it in one hit, he decided to butcher the Koreans first to clear his view. Hijom yelled, ordering the tankers to protect the guild master and hold the line. But the werewolf crashed into them, leaving the formation like a hot knife through butter. He claimed 2 lives in a single slash. Then his sword blurred with imperceptible speed, sending 2 more straight to the grave. Then he absorbed their blood, exactly like a vampire. But Feiwu flew in, delivering a devastating kick that sent him flying. Everyone was shocked, but Igor trembled with pure fury. The martial artist waved, provoking him to fight. And the werewolf answered with a radiant, bloodthirsty smile. The battle erupted. The top 3 and top 4 global players moved so fast the naked eye couldn't follow. It was a golden opportunity for the Koreans to slip away, but the Forest of Frost still blocked their path. A group of warriors was struggling to deflect ice arrows and taking heavy casualties. But one guy stood his ground because he was too close. Before swinging his sword at the girls, he muttered an apology but advised them it was best to just die and get it over with. Feiwu roared. The sword slashed down. But the guy's jaw dropped when he saw his blade jammed in a tangle of ice vines. It was a magical trap, binding him with razor-thin threads. And now Feiwu was furious at the Koreans, because he had just saved them from the berserker, and they turned around and backstabbed his ally. Tae-hyung didn't panic, knowing his Highlander class had superior range. But range means nothing against a global top 3. Hijong screamed, worried for his friend. The martial artist charged, growling that he would teach this brat a lesson in honor. But at the very last second, Charged Shield was activated. The martial artist couldn't land the full kick because Kijong threw himself in the way to save his teammate. He blocked the kick, but knew his bones would shatter if he took another. He threw Tail over his shoulder and ran. Feiwu prepped a finishing blow from behind. But the berserker surfaced right on time. Tail was still unconscious. Blonde Kijong yelled that he would carry his friend to a healer for emergency aid. He was about to haul his friend away, but the martial artist was swiftly knocked out. Seeing Feiwu on the ground, Hijong glared at the berserker. The guy was pissed because he didn't get to absorb a single drop of blood while they were arguing on the cliff. The werewolf muttered he needed to refill his health bar. Hijong yelled at him to shut up. But the berserker just swatted the shield away like a fly and grabbed Kijong by the throat. The kid Kijong was done for all his defensive cooldowns were blown. Furthermore, the power gap was an absolute abyss. Since Igor was thirsty, he decided to sip on Kijong's blood for now. Berserker Agromi Igor was a level 260 monster with the ability to turn into a werewolf. When transformed, his egg drained, but he could absorb blood from monsters or players. Meanwhile, protagonist Leha was a measly level 26, while Kijong was pushing 200. Kijong refused to go out without leaving a scratch. Kijong was the one who got Leha into the game when he was depressed about losing his legs. They were brothers in arms. Seeing Kijong brutally slaughtered ignited a fire of vengeance in Leha. He told himself he was about to grind levels like an absolute psychopath, because that was the only way he'd stand a chance of settling the score with that maniac. Standing on the Ver platform, he muttered a prayer that Igor better brace himself for the coming wrath. Back to the battle in the ice forest. Terrifying screams echoed. The redhead frantically looked for Peiwu, cursing that everything went to shit because of that berserker. Peiwu had a Wenvone opening, so falling back was the smart play. Huiyan begged to retreat, but her best friend Huajun began chanting Glacial Crystal. Huajun ignored her friend, then muttered an apology, telling her friend she should die too. Though bitter, Huiyan nodded in agreement. As long as her friend promised to wipe out this trash. That promise calmed Huajun enough to finish the forbidden spell. The werewolf heard a rustling behind him, and instantly got hyped for a fight. The problem was, the blue-haired girl had finished charging her spell. Huiyan knew that once this spell was unleashed, everyone was going to the grave, but the redhead gritted his teeth too late. Huadong released her power. Freezing mass swept through the air, gently flash freezing all the players. And since she couldn't control the output, the blizzard caught the redhead too. His last words, "I'll be back in 48 hours. Before he shattered into dust. At the Ale Talk trade district, Leah made 4 gold coins selling the junk he scavenged the other day. A new musket cost 3 gold, so he clicked his tongue, deciding to stick with his trash gun to keep grinding. Suddenly, a voice called out. A guy smiled, asking if Leah recognized him. Leah shook his head, but when the guy brought out dual shields, Leah instantly remembered the cowardly warrior from the bear hunt. Dropping the axe, the guy pointed a finger, accusing Leah. "Looking at your gear, you're definitely the thief who stole the dead player's loot." Leah shrugged, saying he didn't know what the guy was barking about. The guy yelled that he scored the entire server for him, and caught him red-handed. Leah perfectly remembered when the guy asked to party up, but when Leah begged for help, he was totally ignored. While the guy and his remnants tucked their tails and ran, Leah stayed and soloed the bear, and his gear was ironclad proof. Leah snapped back. "If you're making accusations, cough up the evidence." Defeated, the guy tried to salvage it by admitting the kid killed the bear, but shamelessly demanded the player's gear back. Leah sighed. "I don't even know where they are." The guy raged. "When your seniors speak, you shut your mouth and listen." Leah lost his patience, telling him to stop acting like a clown. He got exposed, so stop barking. The guy roared. "You have no idea how powerful my guild is." Leah smirked. "Don't care. If you want a problem, I'll call the Holy Knights to handle it." They weren't exactly his friends, but calling them over wasn't hard. The guy raised his shield to block him, but Leah took off like a rocket. The guy chased him, gasping for air, but couldn't keep up. Finally, he collapsed, panting helplessly. Without speed buffs, catching Leah meant maxing agility starting from level 47. The problem was, the berserker who just slaughtered his friend was 10 times his level, so grinding was the top priority. And to do that, he sprinted toward Mount Chimwar. Nearby, a group was actively recruiting for a grinding party, but they only accepted level 40 and up. Leah was struggling to find the kobold boss, and he cursed Browless for making him hunt the most notorious boss before hitting level 30. He planned to hit 29 first, but overheard someone recruiting a D, advertising that they had a cute kitten healer. Sounded like they were targeting Leah. A big guy approached, inspecting Leah's weapon and concluding he was ranged teats. He asked for his level to clear him for the team. Leah lied without blinking. Level 41. A perfect number. Leah realized the guy was a tanker, but he cut to the chase, and asked about the kitten healer. The guy waved Hana over from the crowd. She stepped up, introducing herself adorably. Leah was impressed. She was a nun, and seemed very polite. The tanker winked. "See, I wasn't bullshitting." Since the girls Leah had met before were either aggressively rude or cold as ice, this girl felt like a breath of fresh air. In short, the tanker introduced himself as Matsuhiji level 42, and the girl was level 40. Leah introduced himself. They formed a party, and headed up the mountain without wasting a second. In the bushes, Matsuhiji suddenly signaled to stop. He reported 2 worker kobolds at 10 o'clock. He suggested taking a detour to play it safe. But Leah wanted more than safety. He retorted, "Do you guys not know how musketeers fight? Shouldn't we practice our synergy before climbing the mountain?" Since explaining would take too long, he went prone and declared he could snipe from 50 meters. Unfortunately, a musket's range is shorter than a bow's, but saying that out loud was awkward, so Matsuhiji just scratched his head and apologized. That was one of the reasons the musketeer class was shunned. The tanker beat his chest, declaring he'd carry the team. Leah wasn't offended by being underestimated. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot made everyone jump. He apologized for the bomb-like noise. But Matsuhiji didn't care, turning to ask the healer if she saw the insane shot. The protagonist just pierced a worker kobold through the head with 1 bullet. Matsuhiji's eyes bulged, asking if Leah was really level 41. He almost exposed Leah's lie. suspecting he was a high-level smurf pro playing a low-level account. The healer also looked at him with superhero adoration. They discussed high-level smurfs masquerading as noobs. Despite Lee's denials, the two were ecstatic, hoping to get hard carried. Exploring deeper into the brush, a mountain worm erupted from the ground. It broke the surface, crushing everything with its hideous jaws, and lunged straight at Lee. The healer cast divine protection, blocking the attack. Lee followed up with a perfect combo, firing a bullet right down the monster's throat. The worm collapsed, but Lee didn't understand why monsters kept targeting him, or how Matsuhide knew it was coming. After the fight, he pulled the knight aside. Matsuji was a tanker, but he didn't use the taunt skill. Usually, taunt fails sometimes, but either the guy didn't know how to pull aggro, or he intentionally let Lee take the hit. Matsuji vehemently denied being that kind of scum. Lee retorted, then why didn't you use the skill? Turns out, this guy had terrible luck with skill drops and didn't have his class skills. Knights aren't pure tankers, so they do not have taunt. He only had one skill called Strike, which had a random chance of grabbing aggro. But Matsuji revealed another skill, Cavalry, allowing him to take damage for an ally. The fatal flaw. It only protects women because of the stupid code of chivalry. So the only viable skill was Strike. Lee sighed, saying he'd take care of himself. At least now he didn't feel guilty about reloading at a snail's pace. Further ahead, the group stumbled upon a massive tribe, at least 100 huts. The knight said the bigger the group, the easier it collapses if you take out the alpha. Deep in the cave was an old mine used as storage and a nursery. It was a grinding paradise, but pure hell for a sniper. Monsters swarmed everywhere. Lee figured the best move was to find an ideal vantage point, and he immediately ran off to find an angle. Atsuji opened by slicing a kobold's face, then engaged a second. Just as he finished the second, two more leaped over his head, aiming straight for his skull. The healer threw a protection buff on the knight's shield. He knocked both monsters away and yelled for Lee to shoot the one on the right. But the protagonist thought that was too much hassle. The moment the two monsters bounced back, and the knight prepped to strike for one of them. Bang! Lee's bullet pierced both of them at the same time. Two birds, one stone. He yelled for the group to push west to clear more. Lee explained to the healer that his bullets had piercing damage, and the monsters grouping up was like serving meat to a cat. Since one didn't die instantly, Lee asked the knight for a rope, explaining these grunts were smart enough to form a tribe. They hockeyed the kobold and began the interrogation. The monster begged for death, but Lee did something far more sinister, tickling. He tickled it until it broke. This torture method was incredibly effective because it couldn't pass out or die. He asked where the boss was, but the monster just repeated the same line. He raised his gun, threatening to grab another one to torture if it didn't cooperate. Honestly, the boss would never show up unless a special condition was met. Lee wanted to know what that was. The condition, a devastating crisis, falls the tribe. But the monster screamed that stupid humans would never understand, because the boss was a noble. Done with it, Lee executed it, vaguely piecing the puzzle together. His teammates confirmed the boss resided deep in the mine, but no one had ever killed it. Everyone assumed it was hopeless. But Lee started deducing the boss is a hidden monster, only appearing when specific triggers are met. For example, slaughter the tribe to cause a crisis, and have a stubborn human who refuses to leave. So on. Combined with the keyword sniper from Old Man Browless, everything became clear. He asked if the other two had ever pushed deep into the tribe's territory and declared he wanted to clear it at least once. The tribe had numbers like ants with 3 people. It was safest to pick them off from the perimeter. The smart play was to recruit more people, but Lee still wanted to grind, while waiting. After a killing spree, he hit level 27. His teammates were in awe. The healer got heated, demanding they go murder the boss right now. And when she hyped up how insanely strong Lee was, he couldn't find a reason to refuse. Suddenly, the knight spotted a group of players marching aggressively toward the tribe. Recognizing the guild insignia on their cloaks, he realized it was members of his own guild. Lee glanced over and felt a chill down his spine when he saw the familiar logo of the shield guy. I'm screwed. The moment the shield guy saw Lee, he screamed like his father had died. He ordered Lee not to move, pointing and calling his boss Hyung Nim over to teach the kid a lesson. His hood, cloak, and boots belonged to the Bear of Agony says. If they killed him, the gear would drop, and the shield guy promised to split it among his bros. Lee couldn't believe they brought an entire mob, just to hunt him down. Hyung Nim looked like the highest level there, and even if Kim the shield guy was garbage, the rest were at least level 40. Kim roared, demanding the other two hand over Lee. framing him as a thief. He threatened that if they died, this kid would strip their gear right in front of them. To avoid trouble, he advised them to be smart and cooperate. Leah's teammates didn't believe he was that kind of person. But Leah didn't want innocent people caught in the crossfire. He thanked them and asked their intentions. Kim demanded he strip off everything he had, or Hyunmin threatened to kill him repeatedly until he dropped to level 5. The Chaos Index is a penalty for attacking other players outside TB zones. When it rises, aim plummets. Leah quickly decided to provoke them into striking first. He insulted them as cowardly bandits, hissing Hyunmin off. The mob surrounded Leah. His teammates didn't think he'd fight to the death, but the knight anticipated the worst, grabbed the girl, and ran. As they fled, Leah called after them, "See you later." Hyunmin was furious. Leah made a joke of them. His dark mage cast nightmare. The player Kusher was flagged as an enemy by the system, and a prompt appeared: Chaos Index will not increase, because they attacked first. Now Leah could unload his gun without worry. They took the bait. The dark mage summoned a monster using necromancy. It was a massive skeletal horse, screeching piercingly and blasting gusts of wind. It was exactly what Leah had experienced: the fear effect. The mage sneered a low-level noob would be completely paralyzed. Hyunmin calculated if he stole this kid's gear and offered it to the bosses, he'd get promoted. Then, he'd get a better squad, and wash away his trash reputation. He ordered the mob to charge, but warned them not to kill him yet, because he wanted to beat the kid to a pulp himself. But suddenly, one of their allies dropped dead from a perfect shot. Hyunmin froze. The skeletal horse evaporated. Leah stood there, mocking the idiots. Thanks to the Bear of Agony set, he was completely immune to fear. He activated the precise hand skill to reduce his cooldown and booked it. The archers drew their bows to retaliate, but Leah had fired first. Hyunmin screamed for the tanker to protect them. He thought the kid was a noob, not expecting him to blow away 2 level 50 players in a flash. Not even Hyunmin could do that. He unleashed his hounds, determined not to let Leah escape. Hyun tried to warn them that muskets take forever to reload, but another body dropped. This time, he was truly terrified, and the boss glared right at him. Hyunmin screamed for absolute extermination. But since 3 people had died just because of Kim, he threatened that if anything went wrong, Kim would take the fall. He dragged Kim along. The problem was, Leah was running straight into the kobold base. But Hyunmin was blinded by rage, and didn't give a shit. From the cliff, Leah's teammates looked down, thinking he was crazy. But in a good way. They wanted to help, but he didn't seem to need it. Plus, they couldn't do much anyway. But seeing his prep, the knight believed he could wipe them all out. He explained he prepared a trump card in case the girl was in danger. For now, they had nothing to do with the kid's mess, but secretly watching the show was a smart move. Hana asked if Leah was a threat. The knight nodded without hesitation. A kobold appeared, and they slaughtered it instantly. A lackey complained the monsters kept getting in the way. He gritted his teeth, swearing he'd put Leah through hell when they caught him. They kept hunting. Then they started excitedly chatting about a rank dagger that just dropped. No one likes following orders from a boss, even when baited with loot. But the boss Hyunmin overheard everything. He roared, "You got a problem with my orders." He complained the younger generation was too soft, and asked if he was right or wrong. But just hearing the sniper kid's voice made his stomach churn. He was sick of this toxic always obey your seniors culture. A gunshot rang out. A bullet buried itself into the old man's leg. He howled in pain, but at least he spotted Leah hanging from a tree. Leah cursed his mistake for not securing a headshot. A Sunrise Guild notification popped up. Leah glanced at the name and muttered one word: trash. Once again, the shield bearers lined up to protect the old man, with Deves standing in front. But they were extremely pissed, because Hyunmin was cowering and barking orders like a coward. Leah yelled a warning: anyone who moves eats a bullet. He stalled for time to find an escape route. Precise Hand was still on cooldown, and there weren't enough kobolds around to use as cover. An insane luck struck. A bell tolled. A gigantic foot stomped down right next to them. It was the tribe bossy Judhan. The boss everyone had been looking for. Leah stared in disbelief. There was no way it was the same species as those runts. All kobolds in the tribe received a 10 strength buff when near the boss. It roared in fury, casting fear on everyone. Leah bypassed it thanks to his gear, only getting the chills. But Hyunmin's soul left his body, especially when the boss roared, asking if they were enemies. The old man dropped to his knees, begging the boss to listen. Unexpectedly, the monster could talk. Hyunmin cried, explaining they were just chasing a human boy and would leave immediately if allowed. But He Jude-han growled, asking who killed its pack over there. It knew it wasn't the sniper, because the wounds weren't from a gun. Humans are nothing but a bunch of liars. It declared it would no longer show mercy, and used its sword to cleave a player in half. The kobolds swarmed, attacking. The players frantically fought back against the grunts. One guy raised his shield to activate taunt, but before he could finish his sentence, his head was chopped off. He Jude-han just one-shot a level 50 tanker. Absolute panic. He Jude-han pointed at Kim, ordering him to do something since he had 2 shields. Kim gritted his teeth, activated high guard, and charged confidently. A second later, the monster turned him into a stump. He screamed in agony, falling to his knees, creating the perfect opening for the boss to finish him off. This scene was beyond Leha's wildest imagination. But at least he had decoded the hidden condition. The crisis occurs when a massive amount of kobolds are slaughtered, and a stubborn human refuses to leave. Leha calculated the enemy mob was around level 60, meaning this boss possessed apocalyptic power. The boss swung its sword, ready to mince the leader Hyung-nim. The old man screamed until his voice cracked, saying there was still a sniper hiding. He promised to help find the sniper if it spared his life. Leha gritted his teeth, and held his breath, not daring to utter a word to avoid giving away his position. He Jude-han continued its rampage, but Leha knew it wasn't time to pinpoint his location. If he couldn't one-shot it, he was dead meat, and there were still grunts everywhere. Firing meant a 100 death sentence. Leha decided the smartest option was sneak away. The monster roared in the leader's face, "Don't you ever step foot in here again." Furious, the guy turned his back, cursing it to hell. He threatened that if he died, things would get very complicated. But threats were useless. His leg flew into the air, and he howled in pain. Hyung-nim was down for the count. Couldn't even crawl. He sobbed, swearing if he survived he'd never return. The monster didn't believe a word, and cleaved him in half. Leha broke a sweat. The Sunrise Guild was entirely wiped out, but they accidentally gathered all the monsters in one spot. Even if there were players in the village, no one could save them. The boss ordered its grunts to hunt down the remaining human. They began to fan out. And that was the protagonist's only ray of hope. He Jude-han was in a completely different league compared to the rest. Just standing near it was enough to give you goosebumps. Suddenly, the monster caught the scent of a human nearby. It scanned the area, and it seemed to have spotted Leha hiding in the tree. It lumbered over. Leha considered firing. He calmed himself in this life or death moment, controlled his breathing, and aimed right for its head. Their eyes locked. The boss roared, falling its guard's eye found the human. Too late to shoot. But something incredibly bizarre happened. The boss ordered its guards to protect the entrance gates. Leha was totally bewildered, but he seized his golden opportunity to reposition. He didn't know who was at the gate. He silently thanked his unknown savior for distracting the monsters, but he was still certain this boss's head belonged to him. The ones running for their lives at the gate were his teammates. Their curiosity got the better of them, and they sneaked over to see the boss. Witnessing He Jude-han massacre the Sunrise Guild, they froze. Matsuhiji muttered, wondering if Leha actually used those clues to summon the boss. But he panicked when Ha screamed that she was out of stamina. Danger was imminent. He pulled out his prepared trump card, Wall of Fire, incinerating a bunch of the boss's lackeys. He grabbed the girl's hand, yelling they only had to run a little further. Unlike the grunts, the boss could easily bulldoze through the Wall of Fire. Matsuhiji screamed, almost there, gripped her hand tightly, and activated his ultimate escape spell, Return. But the very second they were about to vanish, the monster took a critical hit and dropped to its knees. The two escaped, their brains still failing to process what had just happened. Back up a few minutes, Leha had climbed the kobold watchtower. Thanks to the light from the fire magic, he gauged the distance. Light breeze, 150 meters out. The problem was the monster kept moving away, but even at 180 meters, it was well within his range. And so, the protagonist poured everything he had into this fateful shot. He pulled the trigger. The bullet pierced the monster's skull. It collapsed, and all the kobolds swarmed to save their boss. Leha leveled up 4 times instantly from the massive extupate, screaming in triumph, "That's what I'm talking about." Killing the boss inflicted a 50 stat debuff on all kobolds for an hour. Most of them were around level 20, and all the loot was just lying there. Furthermore, he received an achievement for defeating a monster from the Demon War era, and another for finishing it with a single shot. His agility spiked, and he officially entered the Hall of Fame. But the description sounded pretty grim. From this level onward, soloing a boss was brutally difficult, though he figured the top global rankers probably devoured these bosses for breakfast. If not for the just death and P Master achievements. This would have been hopeless. Lee had to dump 20 points from the PG achievements into agility before firing. Now, time to hunt. A little later, he hit level 32. The sweep went smoothly since the kobolds were crippled by the debuff. He stopped hunting and realized he had 35 unallocated stat points. He had no idea where to put them. Things were getting complicated. Musketeers didn't just snipe from afar. Sometimes they had to brawl in melee. However, since he still needed to focus on shooting, he dumped 30 points into agility, figuring he'd keep this build until level 63. He calculated he'd catch up to that berserker in no time. Time to head back to Iltok. He needed to turn in quests or sell his jump. He grumbled because the rewards sounded so lame. One of them was an invitation to the grand opening of the Holy Grill restaurant. But thinking about it, that was pretty normal in a medieval setting. After a while, the red-haired girl Huiyun started complaining because her sister still hadn't come looking for her. She also received the exact same letter as before. She guessed she drew a blank, or the winner was that weird guy from last time. Since he was in town, Lee had decided to check his inventory. Busy grinding, he hadn't even looked. Amidst a pile of junk, he fished out an epic tier ring of protection. It generated a force barrier that blocked all hostile entities, and absorbed damage like a second life. He also looted the boss's bone necklace and its crescent spear. The only thing he could actually use was the necklace, which gave decent stats like a 10 critical hit rate. He craved the set bonus, but accepted reality and moved to the next step, turning in his quest. Standing in front of the door, he grumbled again about how his academy was the most rundown pigsty compared to the others. He complained endlessly, and yelled to announce his return. But bang! A deafening gunshot rang out from inside. Leha instantly raised his gun defensively. It sounded like an intruder was fighting and tearing the place apart. Another shot, and then a guy screamed in agony. He yelled that he was leaving, but swore to return for revenge, because his opponent was no longer a war hero. Turns out, the one who fired those 3 shots was Old Man Browless. His rate of fire completely blew Leah's mind, and the old man casually greeted Leah as if nothing happened. But only one thought looped in Leah's head. He took 20 seconds to fire 3 consecutive shots. That speed was insane for a single barrel musket, and he had just hung the gun back on the wall. Leah did the math. If the first round was chambered, it took 10 seconds. Unloaded, it took 7 seconds. Not even a semi-automatic rifle could shoot that fast. Only a bolt-action rifle could pull that off. If Leah could copy that gun's mechanism, he'd be the strongest player in this medieval world. The weapon rack on the wall held 3 guns, reminding him of the 3 musketeers. Browless clicked his tongue, apologizing for the ugly scene. He mentioned the Holy Knights dropped by a few days ago, reporting Harui Kazuna was missing. Lee had deadpanned that he had handled the guy. The old man praised him, and the hidden potential quest was marked complete. He had vastly exceeded expectations, pushing his affinity with the old man to 100. Now, Browless felt sending the kid to Gut Bears was a waste of time. Although Leah was basically a professional suck-up, the old man strictly said there were more important matters. But first, Leah curiously asked about the gun's rapid-fire capability. Browless smirked. If you think that speed is fast, I'm going back to calling you a brat. Lee had tried to explain the phenomenon with magic. The old man scoffed. Magic? Yes. The secret is in the gun itself. A heavy silence followed. Leah's brain went into overdrive. There was definitely a hidden keyword in this conversation. Remembering the 3 Musketeers achievement, he probed to see if the black musket was connected to the founders. The old man slammed the table, glaring, asking what the kid knew about it. Leah had scratched the itch. He dropped 3 names: Bess, Brone, and Elizabeth. That was the origin of the academy's name. Because of those 3 legends, this place used to be packed with recruits. People lined up for miles just to use the firing range. But those 2 friends were completely different from the rest. Leah asked where they were. The answer: missing in action yet during the war. But Browless declared he was placing his faith in Leah. The 3 of them had fought together in the Battle of the Marching Fields, but only Browless returned alive. He wanted to know what the hell happened to them. Finding the lost legends became the protagonist's new quest. At first glance, this quest seemed easy. If they were Mia, they might still be alive and kicking in some random corner. Even if he did nothing, the quest would automatically fail. So, he accepted the challenge. He asked for permission to find the 2 founders. Taking action was better than giving up. The old man smiled, saying Elizabeth would definitely like Leah, and nodded his approval. During the war years ago, the 2 missing founders split from the group to find the best sniper vantage points, while Browless left with the Fibio Minute Alliance. The problem? Those were the only clues he had. 20 days in Middle-earth equals 4 real-world days. But the catch was that 2 people had actually completed this quest before. Liha went around gathering intel from merchants and conveniently sold off some trash armor. At least his haggling skill leveled up. At the weapon shop, he grilled the clerk about the missing people. The version the clerk heard was that both were pushing up daisies. But the clerk suddenly remembered that wasn't the original story. Liha pressured him to spill the real version. The guy leaned in and whispered in his ear. Liha was startled. It was the most detailed and ridiculous story he had ever heard, so unbelievable he didn't buy a word of it. But the ants insisted humanity winning that battle was basically a miracle. He sounded so serious it felt real. The merchant added a disclaimer, no guarantees, but anyone who reacted like Liha usually got the living daylights beaten out of them by the director Browlists. Liha asked for the source of the story. The guy replied from a surviving witness of the war, but he only dropped the name on the condition that Liha bought something. He had prepped a musket for 18 gold. Liha took a look. Option 1 sucked, but option 2 looked decent for his current level. He chose the needle rifle as his new weapon. Then, he went full haggling mode to lowball the price. In the end, he scored a massive deal, saving 70 silver coins. More importantly, the merchant revealed the witness lived in Nite, near the marching fields. $1 million clue. When buying a teleport ticket, the ticket girl quoted 80 silver. And just like that, the money he just saved vanished. But with no other option, he bit the bullet and teleported. Another girl smiled and welcomed him. Liha was searching for a one-armed veteran. The first thing he saw was a bunch of kids bullying a beggar. The beggar chased them, screaming for them to give back his sword. Liha figured he'd definitely score a quest if he played the hero, so he planned to come back later. He astutely noticed the beggar was hiding one arm. Liha checked the tavern first. Inside, he was the only one smiling. Even the receptionist had a mess with me. And I'll stab you face. The place was full of hardcore, aggressive types, and he couldn't fish a single drop of intel out of them. He wandered town asking about Leon to 0. Nothing useful. Which meant he had to find a needle in a haystack with no data. He only knew Leonto was a swordsman who wielded a rapier, the exact guy who started the rumor that the musketeers betrayed humanity. According to the weapon merchant, the 2 founders had marched straight into the demon camp. If that was true, Browless would never believe it. Running out of time, he had to sweep the rest of the shops today. Some had no idea who Leonto was. Others didn't know where he lived or gave useless answers. Liha was losing his mind because this guy was described as famous. An NPC wielding a rapier was rare. Someone had to know what he looked like. He patiently checked a few more spots. Suddenly, the beggar from earlier jumped out, asking him to play war. Liha waved him off. Maybe next time, pops. But the guy wouldn't quit. Then the sniper realized even with his sync stat at 50, he didn't even sense this random NPC approaching. Liha paused, staring at the man's missing left arm. He didn't need the guy to confirm it. Liha knew he had found Leonto. The beggar yelled, ordering his servant to bring his rapier. He was acting exactly like a lunatic putting on a clown show. Liha wanted to test if the story was true, saying he had a few questions. The beggar instantly bolted, rambling about the war. Liha gave chase, but the guy ran like lightning, proving he was no ordinary beggar. To stop him, Liha screamed a story about musketeers. Leonto froze, his attention captured. He urged Liha to run, saying if he stood still, Lord Browless would shoot his head off. Liha obviously had no idea what he was talking about, but the beggar kept running, muttering about Elizabeth. He 100 knew something. But then, suddenly, he burst into tears, begging Browless not to abandon them. Clearly, Leonto had severe PTSD. From his military days, Liha was well versed in this. It was a daily occurrence. Leonto was trapped in his war memories. Liha changed his approach. At Holy Castle, with level 5 cooking, the hunter used scent as bait. Leonto took the bait like an obedient duck. Liha tried to talk, but the beggar was acting selectively. He popped up, rambling endlessly about how enemies were lurking everywhere, and they needed to wipe them out. He even complimented his servants' cooking and ordered them to march to war. Liha played along the path. It's too dangerous. We need Browless and Elizabeth to support us. Hearing those 2 names, the old man snapped. No way. He claimed they were the ones who declared themselves enemies. When he exposed their betrayal, he was punished because the ruling class didn't want the peasants knowing the dirty secrets of their heroes. It seemed Leonto was the last person to speak to them, but he just kept running. This time, Liha angrily asked where he was going. A new quest popped up: escort the veteran. All he had to do was find the old man's sword. But if he failed, Leonta would die, and Liha would face a massive penalty. Tailing the Begar, they drifted to the border of the Fimial Kingdom. This area was basically a wasteland crawling with monsters. Leonta rambled that the place was infested with cursed ancient trees and dark elves. Liha charged into battle without even checking their levels. The smart play was to take a detour, but the Begar screamed that he would bring divine punishment down upon them. He charged blindly, screaming for his servant to bring his sword. Leonta looked around frantically but couldn't find it. Liha had to draw the monsters aggro, because he couldn't just stand by and watch the Begar die. He activated precise hand, aiming at the biggest one and firing. But the bullet only left a pathetic hole in its stomach. His firepower wasn't enough. The monsters swarmed like ants. He grabbed the old man and ran for his life. Once reloaded, he shifted focus to the grunts. Shot one down, skewered another with Baywent charge. At least these runts died in one hit. The ancient trees moved sluggishly, so he chipped away at their health until the zone was clear. The Begar clapped, praising his servant. Leonta kept rambling endlessly, infuriating Liha, who had just burned a skill with a 6-hour cooldown. He yelled at the Begar to shut his mouth, suggesting it would be much easier to sneak in and destroy the Demon King's fragment. Finally, when they found common ground, the humanoid lizard man stepped out and recognized the protagonist. It was Bane. He explained he was just hanging around here to do some light hunting. Grinding in a zone this dangerous meant the XP drops had to be astronomical. Leo was extremely curious how this lizard man managed it. The Begar stared in shock, because his servant was friends with a lizard. The catch was, Bane's academy wasn't anywhere near here, and he was flying solo. They shook hands, admitting both had leveled up tremendously since they last met. Bane recognized Liha's gear, making the kid wonder how he knew. Liha offered to party up. The lizard man declined, because he was busy, but out of curiosity, he tagged along to watch the show. Leonta yelled that his army was expanding its power. Liha warily explained it's just an NT with mental issues. Up ahead, another massive mob of the same monsters. The lizard man told Liha to prep and focus all his firepower on the stumped ancient tree. The flying elves taunted him for being a lizard. He puffed his cheeks and spewed a massive cloud of toxic gas, sending them straight to hell instantly. Then he signaled Liha to shoot the tree. At the same time, Bane unleashed a torrent of poison, punching holes through the enemy's bar, and they collapsed. Liha was stunned, realizing the lizard man's venomous spit hit harder than his own bullets. Incredibly impressive. After the fight, they sat down to wait for cooldowns, but Bane couldn't sit still. The fact that Liha jumped to level 33 in this zone proved this wasn't an area for anyone under level 40. Liha curiously asked Bane's level. Level 51. Liha's jaw dropped in disbelief. Bane shrugged. Grinding is just a matter of knowing where to farm and how to do it. For now, they had to finish the quest. Leonta yelled that his comrades were buried here, and he had been on the front lines. Then he sprinted off, certain his weapon was somewhere around here. Liha clicked his tongue, thinking the Begar had recovered his memory. The problem was, looming right in front of them was an army of undead monsters. Anyway, he seemed to know what he was doing, so the quest was probably nearing its end. Leonta pointed, saying he saw his sword buried in the very camp the other two had abandoned. Bane hit the nail on the head. Is this a class quest for musketeers? Leonta started panicking, unable to distinguish if this was happening in the present or if it was a memory from the past. The Begar's loud mouth was pushing them to their breaking point. Suddenly, the ground glowed purple, and a zombie rose up. This was exactly why they didn't want him screaming. Leonta fired a shot, taking down the first zombie, then declared he would handle the skeletons, leaving the rest to his good friends. He even dropped a tip for the lizard man aim for their legs and chop him down. A zombie lunged at Liha. Panicking, because he was out of ammo, he was forced to use Baywent charge since he absolutely couldn't miss this close. Finally, he cleanly dispatched the last one, and the lizard man also cleared his side of the field. The bad news. A group of players suddenly appeared, smirking that they finally tracked down this gecko. It was the trash emblem of the Rising Sun Guild again. The lizard man told Liha to escape while he still could, but he had to carry this index, and he still owed this group an unpaid debt. Bane spat there's no peaceful resolution to this. They split roles. The guild didn't give a damn about the chaos index penalty. One guy ate a bullet and dropped dead, causing panic because it was their leader. Bane spewed corrosive poison, melting the arms off a bunch of them. Then a level 60 guy with a sword charged. Liha was sweating, because, hindered by the Begar, he couldn't maintain a safe distance. Another guy took aim at the sniper. Leha fought back with his Baywin, but this guy was tankier than a monster. Another snuck around back, aiming to take the Bedgar's life. It looked like Leha was going to fail this quest. But Leonta stepped out of the dust cloud, coldly asking who they were. Leha screamed a warning. A bald guy lunged to slash the old man. The Bedgar countered with a simple, clean skill called Kujira. The mob was terrified, shifting focus to target the Bedgar first. But Leonta smirked. These garbage attacks are a joke compared to the Demon Legion. And he sent a bunch of them to hell with a flurry of supreme martial arts. He didn't even need his rapier, he wiped them out in a single strike. Even Leha was dumbfounded, not believing he was just a quest and clearing the battlefield. He knelt to thank the protagonist. He said if it weren't for the kid's help, he would have died in a ditch like a shunned madman, without a shred of memory. As for the rapier, he almost lost it forever, because all he had to do was summon it. The quest to escort the veteran was complete. Leha's kingdom fame rose. And what Leha really wanted to know, Leonta now explained in detail. It was memory modification. He was hit with that magic, because of them. The one who cast that forbidden spell was the military advisor, Mage Rozak, now the Archmage of the Fibial Kingdom. However, all records of the battle were locked in the royal archives, and no one except the king was allowed to touch them. The problem was, Leha couldn't just waltz in and pat the king on the shoulder to ask for a peek, nor could he return empty-handed without proof. Leonta bowed in apology. He explained that the forbidden spell was basically a way to borrow a knife to kill someone, eliminating a thorn in the side without getting their hands dirty. He couldn't set foot in the capital or linger in the kingdom, because if Rozak caught his scent, the knights would be dragged into it. But at least he handed over a coin, proving he was still alive. He said he'd go look for the other two, and once again thanked Leha for saving his life. Dame also expressed his gratitude. Knowing Leha was heading to the capital, the lizardman patted his shoulder, telling him to get stronger fast. Leha was confused as to why he was getting VIP intel for free. Dame smiled mysteriously. He saw potential in him. And there would come a time when he'd need him. It was basically a venture capital investment in a player, exactly how Kijom, already level 23, had done. Anyway, they said their goodbyes, but before leaving, Leha winked, telling Bame he didn't need to hide the dagger he just looted from Rising Sun. Leha completed the defeat evil player's quest and another one, survive against stronger foes. He grabbed all 22 points. But the real challenge was just beginning. Leha reassured himself, planning to test the waters first. But the moment he pushed the door open, he almost ate a bullet. Old Man Brown didn't believe a word and roared that the kid better have proof to back up such a massive treason accusation. The first thing Leha did was present the coin. The old man was stunned to realize Leonta was still alive. They explained it was a tracking coin identifying its owner by mana, preventing friendly fire, and aiding in missions. And this coin belonged to a knight of the Third Company. But Brown pulled Leha's story back to the main point. Was Ratzak the mastermind behind all of this? He started piecing the facts together, and turned to ask if the kid was free for a walk tonight. The Lost Legends quest shifted to a new phase. Leha helps the old man break into the royal archives. But if he fails or dies there, he will be stripped of 50 of his kingdom affinity. Leha threw the ball back. You go do it yourself. I don't have an entry pass. But if they intentionally hid everything from Brown, he didn't have access either. The only option was to send someone he trusted absolutely to steal the record. So, our hero gritted his teeth and took the job. Brown strutted into the castle, greeted with a warm welcome. He used the excuse of wanting to discuss business with the magic conglomerate alongside his assistant Leha. Leha was heavily brief, only approached the west wing after passing through the east wing. One wrong step, and he was dead. They had to finish an extract before the 9th Mirandazves. The master and apprentice approached a glowing stone. The old man emphasized they only had one shot. The stone glowed brightly. The signal was given, and Leha immediately fell back, hiding behind a large vase. Instantly, Chief Secretary Clark appeared, warmly greeting his former colleague. Skipping the bulky pleasantries, Clark cut to the chase. What the hell is Brown doing here? If it were anyone else, Clark wouldn't even entertain them. The old man calmly replied he was just visiting. Clark smiled like an angel, but shot a warning glare at the sniper Leha, telling him do not touch anything. Clark muttered, this visit reeks of bullshit, because Brown wasn't of it. Clark's eyes were sharp as knives, extremely paranoid, as if he sensed the old man was hiding someone behind the vase. But he gave up when he found nothing, quickly changing the subject. Being chief secretary is a sweet gig. While the two old men verbally sparred, Leha sneaked to the stairs as planned. The problem was, these stairs felt like an endless loop. winding forever until Li He wandered into a surreal magical space. He felt the floor beneath his feet, but muttered curses at the old man for not warning him. How the hell was he supposed to find those documents in a measly 2 hours? On the bookshelves, only one section glowed, containing continental maps and settlement reports. Li He grabbed this obvious lifeline, flipping through the books. The first book was a map of explored regions. It meticulously categorized monsters and levels, exactly like a strategy guide. The author was Fern and likely the Explorer King. But then he found the draft titled Plan for the Exploration of the New Continent. It automatically triggered a quest bring him back to the kingdom. Glancing at the rewards, this was definitely a hidden chain quest only accessible by breaking into this archive. The quest would trigger when he set foot on that new continent. According to the lore, the king didn't invest a dime in Fernand, and only started panicking when he vanished. Only 30 minutes left. Li He finally dug out the war files. Leonta had mentioned the Crushing the Fragment campaign, with the primary objective being to assassinate the enemy commander. But since he was running out of time, he used the director's mirror to photograph all the documents, planning to study them at home. Suddenly, a teleportation portal ripped through the library space. Leah vaguely heard them receiving orders to inspect the Second Great War Zone, because Archmage Rodzak randomly demanded a sweep. Ratzak suspected a rat had infiltrated the palace and wanted to see if anything was stolen. The subordinate grumbled about the absurd order, but obediently checked the First Great War section. Just taking a pee, he squealed like a stuck pig. He reported some documents were out of order, and they were the records of the Battle of the Marching Fields. Furthermore, the creak of an opening door echoed clearly. By some spiritual miracle, Leah reached the stairs and escaped the archives safely. But he already heard the shouts of guards swarming from all directions to hunt down the thief. The guards had orders to arrest anyone suspicious. The protagonist decided to make a beeline out of there. Unluckily, just as he pressed against a corner, he bumped hard into a knight. Sir Sunnergard frowned in annoyance, but then they recognized each other. They nodded in greeting. Suddenly, a loud shout congratulations, Holy Knight. A mage pointed right at Li He, screaming he was definitely the intruder. He actually was, so he had to turn on his actor mode, and play dumb. Meanwhile, the knight stepped up to defend him. Don't falsely accuse innocent people without proof. He reminded the crowd this is the kid who took down the kobold chief. Clark stubbornly argued Li He was the prime suspect. Sir Sunnergard narrowed his eyes, stating that falsely accusing his friend was an insult. Our hero almost shed a tear. He was so moved. The secretary realized he had zero evidence, and tried to pry into whether he knew Old Man Brown. Li He puffed his chest. What musketeer doesn't know him? Unable to do anything, they left in a huff. Finally, Li He thanked him profusely for the help, and Sir Sunnergard smiled, thanking him for always being useful. With the situation resolved, Old Man Brown casually appeared, covering for them by saying he came to visit his friend with his student. Brown politely thanked the royal guard. Li He asked to be excused. The group said their goodbyes. Even though the old man didn't cross paths with Ratzak, at least Li He played his part perfectly. Back home, before the protagonist could even study the reports, he had to scramble to brief his master. At 9 p.m., a witness saw the two Bess Elizabeth heading toward the Demon King's army. When he called out, he took a bullet. At 8 a.m. the next day, a pursuit team got their limbs shot off. At 10 a.m., they attacked an entire battalion. Not a single person returned intact. According to the report, those two had colluded with the demon race. And from this point on, Leonto's story started clicking into place. At 11 p.m., the two infiltrated the 67th Regiment, stole all supplies, and defected with a dark elf. But before vanishing, they left a warning: beware of Ratzak. At first, Li He thought the Archmage hid the intel to cover up a mistake. Now he was certain the old man was plotting a massive conspiracy. Another witness claimed that Lady Elizabeth was pregnant. Hearing this, the old man slammed the table. He cursed, calling it absolutely ridiculous. No one ever breathed a word about this. He was so furious he bit his lip until it bled. The three were hailed as the Three Musketeers, but obviously, they weren't as close as rumors claimed. Despite everything, the director breathed a sigh of relief. At least they're still alive. Brown chuckled, finding it ironic they still called him director after all this. Li He added there has to be more to the story, then bowed his head in thanks. Quest complete. The old man exhaled, admitting Leah was the only person he could trust right now. A new quest popped up: the sorrow of the abandoned musketeers. Li He had never seen the director so broken. He told himself this wasn't the time to be nosy. The only problem was he didn't receive a single copper coin for it. But then, A crisp voice announced because an auction is happening. People gathered to buy and trade items. The transaction fee was 5 for both buyer and seller. Lee's eyes lit up. He still had the kobold boss's spear. He had previously complained that waiting for a trade was a waste of time because the 5 fee stung. But he screamed like a madman when he saw the starting bid for the spear, 60 gold coins. And that was just for a rare tier item. He howled in pure joy. In the real world, a boss was rushing Kim Lee, his mom, to pick up the pace. Rush hour. Her phone rang, and she sighed in despair, expecting to get yelled at again. But it was a text from Lee He. He happily asked for her bank account number because he just hit the jackpot. She hit send, not understanding what was happening. But when she opened her banking app, her heart stopped. 10 million won was just transferred in. Lee had sold the spear for 110 gold, an insane amount for a rookie. He silently thanked the game for changing his life. Memories of the journey rushed back. Still 3 days left until his meeting with the old man. Since it wasn't lunchtime yet, he decided to wander around the medieval world a bit longer. That night, Hee-jong had a nightmare. The scene of being crushed like an ant by the berserker played on an endless loop. He woke up screaming in terror. Just glancing at his VR headset made him shudder. He was absolutely furious. Suddenly, the protagonist called, tempting him, "You free, bro. Come over, Steak is on me." They locked it in for 8 Hearing the word meat, Hee-jong knew instantly his little brother had hit the jackpot. He wasn't too surprised since his brother had been grinding like a maniac lately, and just thinking about it gave him the motivation to log back in. Lee didn't want to waste a single second. He was holding onto a lunchbox worth 100 million won, and wanted to verify if it was really worth that much. The only person who could appraise it was Madame Ru's sister Justice. Lee stood at her door, knocked, and was welcomed. A stunning woman with long legs answered, scowling because she was woken up in the middle of the night. Lee nervously introduced himself, his heart pounding. When asked for his reason, he realized he didn't even have a script. His brain scrambled, and he pulled out the smoked rabbit meat. "Your sister asked me to bring this for you to taste." He successfully slipped through the door, but she was getting curious. Leah analyzed the NPCs in this game are pretty chill, but to trigger a real reaction, he had to use a keyword. He had to guess what Madame Ru's keyword was. Leah improvised. "Ru told me I had to mention the lunchbox." Her eyes lit up. Dinhu. Hit the mark. The girl mentioned she received a letter about it, but waited forever with no sign of it. Casually, Leah probed, "Is it hard to open a restaurant in the capital?" Ru's explanation was vague. He also pried into why the lunchbox was so important. She explained her sister's food is made from monster meat from Candle Castle. Powerful, rich elites are always craving it. It will definitely fall into the hands of the most influential person around. The image of the king immediately popped into Leah's head. But the girl clarified she was just following her sister's orders. Deflecting, Jess added, "This is a hub for the kingdom's most powerful figures. Gathering all the elites into one restaurant will push its value through the roof." Lee had an epiphany, sensing a scheme. He used a fake emergency to make a quick exit. Jess shrugged, not caring. She found this guy pretty interesting, exactly as her sister had described. Logging out of her, Lee tore his hair out. He couldn't believe that NPCs in a rundown beginner village had such deep, complex backstories. Just then, his mom and Kijun walked in. She hugged him, sobbing, terrified the money was dirt. The two boys had to talk her down. After a huge meal, Lee brought up the lunchbox dilemma. Instead of selling it as promised, he stated bluntly, "I'm gonna finish this quest." Kijun's jaw dropped. The friend cried tears of regret until Lee explained Madame Ru is actually trying to build an intelligence syndicate disguised as a restaurant. Lee asked his veteran cousin for advice. Kijun nodded. The game's storyline can definitely branch in that direction, and he had experienced it before. The price is astronomically steep, but the payoff, the intel you get, is lethal. And since the informant is an NPC, it's basically a pay-to-win feature. There's no organization like that in the capital because of royal security. That's why the lunchbox will be presented to the king. The reward is a VIP ticket to the grand opening. Kijun warned, "Smells like a trap. Nobody has the time to do these bullshit side quests. An item of that tier, you either use it or sell it and move on." Leah agreed it was bizarre. But the risk was that the reward wasn't just an invitation, it would trigger a massive butterfly effect. So, he went back to the sisters' Jess house. She recognized the weird delivery guy from a few days ago. Leah put his cards on the table. "I'm actually the one who brought the lunchbox." The twist she knew all along. And now she found him even more interesting. Jess poured some wine, but what Leah thirsted for was information. Naturally, She had anticipated this. Handing over the lunchbox unlocked the reward. Lee had tried to play it cool, but Jess didn't care. Her sister had warned her most people would never hand over the lunchbox. If someone did, they were either an idiot, or someone who already knew the plan, and wanted to skim the profits. No normal person makes it this far. This quest was designed for those whose ambitions stretch far beyond money. The problem was, regardless of who brought the lunchbox, her sister's orders were kill him. Before he could process it, Lee had dodged a steel spear by inches. He screamed, asking why. She casually praised his reflexes. Before he could draw his gun, a swarm of ninja assassins flooded the room, out for his blood. Luckily, his gun was loaded, and he put a bullet straight through one's head. A spear thrust toward him, and Lee had delivered a devastating kick right to the assassin's gut. He yelled for everyone to freeze, or he'd blow the girl's brains out and steal the lunchbox. Even with a gun to her head, Jess laughed hysterically, calling him ungentlemanly. Lee had threatened that the Holy Knights would swarm the place, because of the noise. Jess smirked. They've been paid off. Anyone planning to cause chaos in the capital has a script ready. Her sister gave him a 10 out of 10, but she only gave him an 8. In reality, Jess explained, it was just a test. She dropped his score to a 5 and declared the game over. Lee briefly considered making peace, but decided to flip the script and seize control. He kept the gun aimed at her, because he felt cheated. For this bullshit test, he demanded the future guildmaster compensate him for emotional damages. She laughed uncontrollably at the sheer audacity of someone demanding to be the boss. That was exactly the answer needed to complete the quest. And so, Jess agreed to feed Lee some highly sensitive intel. 2 days later at Lars Gorge, Lee stripped the area clean of the herbs Jess had pointed out. He snagged the titled Goblin Nose Collector for massacring 1-0 goblins, simply because he found the perfect camping spot. Oh, time to head back to the old man. Standing at the door, he cursed again that his academy was the shittiest slum in the solar system. He yelled out, announcing his return. The old man squinted, noting you look different. He asked if Leha had been secretly grinding. Leha was surprised he noticed. Of course he did. The kid jumped 12 levels. He spilled everything. The old man nodded. Then your progression will be faster. Time to upgrade you to inherit the legacy of the Three Musketeers. Turns out, the quest chain he'd been doing wasn't a normal quest line. It was all a training regimen to mold the next generation. The stuff about the missing duo and the old man felt a bit sketchy, but Leha clicked his tongue, deciding to deal with it later. Next hunting quest: carve up a golem. He admitted he had never killed the golem before, and he heard they were 10,000 times tankier than a kobold. Leha panicked so hard he almost cancelled, but ultimately gritted his teeth and hit accept. On the mountain, players were crowded together, forming raid parties to hunt golems. They were actively headhunting fire or ice mages. That's what Leah found on the wiki. This area was crawling with golems and carnivorous trees. Ranged DEs avoided golems like the plague, and melee tanks absolutely despised the trees. The monsters here countered each other, so no one had an absolute advantage. If you played any other class, you'd never set foot here. It seemed this quest only appeared for the first 3 people to pass the old man's test. He silently thanked his mom, stared in panic at the crowd punching a golem, and booked it out of there. Golems only used brutish moves like smash and slam. Very predictable. But a pebble he accidentally kicked suddenly fused with other rocks, and morphed into a massive stone golem. He frantically reloaded, figuring with this terrain, he could land a god-tier shot. Southeast wind. Adjusted for windage. Pulled the trigger, aiming for the head. Didn't die. Leha realized he underestimated its durability. He reloaded, aimed for a second shot. Still hit. But the monster raised its fist, ready to crush him to past. He forced himself to stay calm. Instead of running, he loaded his final bullet. Boom. The bullet blew the golem into pieces. Lee exhaled, thinking it took 3 shots. But no. The rubble started gathering, and regenerating from below. It almost slapped him to death. With no time to think, he activated Precise Hand, spamming bullets, until he saw the golem's core heart. Leha smirked smugly. That's definitely the weak point. But the monster covered the core with rocks, directly slapping his pride in the face. He ran for his life, losing 50 of his kick. Thank God the game didn't have a stamina bar. He reread the quest description: seek out what the naked eye cannot see from afar, the core heart. But the problem was he couldn't kill it just by shooting it. While wandering around looking for more intel, he heard a commotion. That party from earlier was still wrestling with a golem. Unlike him, they smashed the shell and shattered the core with pure melee punches. Curious, he casually asked what that little orb did. A guy explained you just need to land one solid hit on it to win. Someone called it the nut, prude but true, because punching it knocked the golem out instantly. Long story short, wait for the core to be exposed, then spam skills. But the guy shooed Lee away unless he wanted to be a punching bag. Lee took the opportunity to ask about the bronze golem boss. The guy answered when the boss spawns, everyone just unloads on it without using their brains. The conversation was cut short, because the stone golem respawned. They said their goodbyes. Lee dragged himself away, while the guy muttered that Sniper is definitely gonna leave his corpse here. Lee realized the crux, he had to hit the core before it could close its stone shell. Lost in thought, he almost slipped off a cliff. How is a ranged attacker supposed to smash rocks? While he was racking his brain. Gosh. Someone fell from the sky right next to him. It was the handiwork of the bronze golem boss, who had just spawned and was tossing people like garbage. The boss's name was Tyrant Rouge. Every player in the vicinity was hit with a debuff. Word spread fast, and the crowd swarmed the boss. It took 5 minutes to gather 10 people. If Lee wanted to solo it, he had to finish it before the mob arrived. One guy screamed, forbidding mages from using lightning magic, but some kid didn't listen. Lightning struck the golem. It roared. But the ones taking the damage were everyone around it. The boss reflected the attack and electrocuted the entire party to a crisp. A few days later, a guy was wandering town looking for a party. He ran up to Leha, but was disappointed to see a rookie. Still, he was certain Leha would get chewed up by a carnivorous tree, so he secretly followed to watch the show. He couldn't figure out why Leha ventured into the golem zone. Before he could get a clear look, a flash of lightning illuminated the area, followed by a deafening gunshot. Leha smiled, his insane plan had worked. 9 days later, at Tanaro Peak, Leha stood waiting for the golem to respawn, surrounded by the corpses of players eaten by carnivorous trees. With his arsenal of skills, he easily bypassed every trap. On the 10th day, he finally came face to face with the boss. Leha ate the full debuff combo. While the crowd panicked, he chugged a clear potion, and activated Steady Hand. Pulled the trigger. Damage 0. But at least the bullet attached something to its body. Leha threw a homemade bomb, detonating it instantly. The shell cracked open, exposing the core. The kid had made fools of everyone. Lately, he had taught himself how to craft bombs by packing gunpowder, which cost a pretty penny. The enraged monster charged. Leha noticed there was a phase where bombs were useless. Worse, the minion golems swarmed him. He gritted his teeth, holding his ground, swearing he would win. The gunfight ended. Leha felt incredibly humiliated. He couldn't give up or cancel the quest. He decided to go all in for one final strike. He knew the boss had taken enough damage, just one more hit. But a sledgehammer blow was coming down to crush him. He dodged by inches, falling back as far as he could. He tried to escape the O radius, but it was hopeless. He was smashed into the cliff face. He hit rock bottom. The monster closed in. But its core was open. He activated the force barrier from his ring. It knocked back every entity within a 3-meter radius. Seizing this golden opening, Leha fired his last shot into the gem. And that was the first time a shotgun was fired in this medieval world. The one most impressed by this performance was the vulture flying down, waiting to eat his corpse. Seeing it, he laughed, because that bird was a money maker. Back at the watchtower, Leha dropped right into the middle of a crowd of players, not caring who was watching, screaming in celebration of his success. He soloed the golem. Because his gun barrel survived a point-blank shotgun blast buckshot, he needed to log out at the blacksmith to repair his gun immediately. But first, he checked his mountain of achievements. Stellar Craftsman, because his jury-rigged musket hack actually worked. He also snagged the Master of Solo Players title, though it seemed a few others had it too, probably by inventing something like his bomb. Opening his stat panel, Leha had 82 unspent points. Old Man Brown's quest chain was hardcore, and he only survived thanks to his agility. He decided to split points into intelligence, figuring it would buff his crafting skills. Speaking of crafting, he earned the right to name his creation, basically to summon and enhance it. Excitedly, he tried to give his bomb a badass name to build a brand and make bang. But the system trolled him hard, auto-assigning the name Fusewire. After a moment of crying inside, he logged out and went to sleep. While he slept, a storm of cash was rolling in thanks to a video replay of him stealing the boss kill. Waking up after a 12-hour sleep coma, he dragged himself to the fridge, starving. Inside were just a few herbs his mom bought. He had to grind for more cash to change his life. He sat at his computer, fired up for research before logging in. He checked the leaderboards. And glaring right at him was a video of him soloing the bronze golem. Someone had secretly recorded it and uploaded it. He wanted to report and strike the video, but doing so would expose his identity. Terrifyingly, people were putting up bounties to buy his info. Kejong texted him, saying people they knew had recognized him. The protagonist decided to throw the shield dropped from the golem onto the auction house. Some guy was browsing, and Lee had dropped some trash talk, saying the shield was good for TV but still garbage compared to his own gear. Horrifyingly, the current bid for that shield was 180 gold coins. He screamed his thanks, and logged in. He thought of his best friend and his hard-working mother, determined to repay them. The bid spiked to 188. He had burned a ton of money on materials and repairing his gun, failing miserably multiple times. To top it off, his badass cloak had been shredded by a random tree branch while he was rolling on the ground dodging the golem. Right now, he looked exactly like a badgar until he could afford new gear. Finally, his plan to treat his cousin vanished, and he had to swallow his pride and call for a favor. Thanks to his haggling skills, he scored a sick new outfit, at an absolute steal of full 3 gold coins off. He went to see Old Man Brown to turn in the quest. The moment they met, the old man smirked, complimenting him on looking different, just as he expected. He declared Lee had real talent, and unlocked the hotkey skill for him. It completely hyped him up. The last quest was designed because he had no long-range vision. A sniper with terrible eyesight is useless. The next hunting quest shifted to a sniper quest: collect 5 Roadrunner feathers. Just hearing the name gave Lee goosebumps. He desperately asked if it was like the golden eagle at the Castle of Light. The old man replied bluntly, much worse. At least failing didn't mean getting wiped out. Thus, another quest popped up: Elizabeth's Legacy. Completed by taking down a target from 44 meters away. She once declared that whoever accomplished that would become her heir. Lee's eyes sparkled, asking if he had to do it right now. The old man shook his head. Not yet, but if you become the heir, you'll be worthy of the gun hanging on the wall. That was the musket of Lady Musket herself. The other 2 already had owners. The power of the 3 musketeers had been passed down. Lee had decided to prioritize accuracy. He debated for a moment, then agreed, but said he'd go pluck the Roadrunners first. Midday in the desert, where the monsters roamed, Lee locked onto his target from afar. He activated hotkey. His accuracy skyrocketed, feeling exactly like looking through a sniper scope. It didn't have a zoom, but the effect was terrifyingly effective. He pulled the trigger. The monster got spooked and bolted like the Flash, leaving him dumbfounded, unable to even track it with his eyes. Whenever this monster spawned, players stopped hunting, because it was completely untouchable. And so, after 3 grueling days of relentless grinding, our main character, Lee was completely exhausted. He hadn't collected a single feather, and once again, the birds refused to let him get anywhere near them. Lee was on the verge of giving up. But then, in the absolute silence of the desert, he picked up on a strange, rhythmic sound: the footsteps of the Roadrunners. They were actually moving in a predictable pattern. Grasping their timing, he aimed and pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed across the barren wasteland, prompting a nearby knight to rush over and investigate. At that exact moment, Lee unlocked an achievement for successfully landing a shot from 200 meters away. His theory had worked perfectly. With this newfound understanding, the hunt went flawlessly. RMC finally grasped the true essence of being a sniper: you just need to put the bullet exactly where it belongs. While a normal hunter finds joy in the chase, a sniper's true thrill lies in the waiting. That was exactly why the system gave him 20 whole days to complete the quest, and luckily, he had cracked the code just in time. Suddenly, a man appeared out of nowhere, getting right in Lee's face, hurling every vulgar insult in the book, and demanding his ring back. It was none other than Hyun Nim. He was back to crash the party, dragging along a few thugs from the Rising Sun Guild. Lee thought they'd be too humiliated to ever show their faces again after their last defeat. But he wasn't scared in the slightest. Among the 10 people standing there, he was probably the strongest. Hyun Nim arrogantly demanded all of Lee's gear and his golem shield as compensation. Right on cue, an enemy mage ripped a magic scroll, blocking the use of all return scrolls in the area. With his escape route cut off, Lee quickly messaged Kejun for backup. His best friend agreed instantly, but noted it would take some time to get there. To survive, the MC had to stall. He faked a surrender, claiming he'd settle things peacefully by handing over the ring. Naturally, Hyun didn't buy it, but the moment he dropped his guard, Lee pulled the trigger. Unfortunately, the shot was blocked by a shielded tank who stepped in just in time. Hyun stammered a thank you to his subordinate, realizing he had just been an inch away from death. Curious, he swore to spawn Camp Leha every single day. Forced into a corner with no time to reload, Leha had to improvise. Luckily, he still had his homemade bombs. He chucked one right at the assassins and detonated it. While the enemies scrambled to find a healer, the MC used the chaos to reload. But from a blind spot, a samurai unleashed a wind-slicing strike. Leah barely blocked the lethal attack using his ring's chakra barrier. He hadn't expected the Rising Sun Guild to have a high-tier player like this. The samurai, Zako, was clearly Hyun Nim's superior, given how hard Hyun Nim was kissing up to him. But seconds later, another of Leha's bombs went off, blowing both of them away like literal trash. Unfortunately, Leah's plan to finish off Zako failed, and his ring's force barrier would only last about 5 minutes. He wasn't sure if he'd make it out alive. But before Kejong could arrive, the knight from earlier rushed to Ofer, demanding to know what was going on. Recognizing the Rising Sun emblem, the knight immediately knew they were trying to pick a player kill. The knight also noticed Leha was a musketeer and asked if he knew anything about the sleeping boy. However, Leha just screamed at the stranger to run for their life. Hyun Nim ordered his archers to fire at the knight, and without hesitation, Leha threw his body in the way, taking an arrow to the shoulder to save the stranger. He collapsed, heavily wounded, and yelled once more for the knight to flee. As Leha stepped out of his protective barrier, Zako lunged forward, activating his explosive fragmentation sword slash. But the knight calmly told Leha to step back. Instead of falling, the stranger completely nullified the enemy's attack. It turned out the knight was actually a woman, and she declared that she absolutely despised bullies. Noticing Leha had a health potion, she seemed intrigued. The enemy tank stepped up to the front line, but she gently pushed Leha behind her and executed a stunning, long-range thrust that tore straight through the enemy's defense. The tank collapsed, screaming in agony as his AD bar was instantly vaporized. Zeko was paralyzed with shock. He hadn't even processed how his subordinate had died. Since Leha had taken a hit for her, the female knight handed him a high-grade potion, restoring him to full health. Though she hated getting dragged into messes, the sheer arrogance of the Rising Sun thugs made her step in. Zeko grumbled, desperate to retreat, but his pride wouldn't let him. He ordered the remaining men to finish them both off. Seeing that a fight was unavoidable, the girl charged straight into the enemy formation. The MC didn't even have to lift a finger. The enemies weren't weak, but this girl was just on a whole other level. Once the dust settled, Leha was dying to know who his savior was. He tried to return the potion, but she told him to keep it as thanks for trying to protect her. There was a brief, awkward moment between them, but they quickly changed the subject. As she turned to leave, Leha called out, thanking her and asking for her name. Right at that moment, Kejong finally arrived, sprinting in completely out of breath. Leha tried to message him that the fight was over, but Kejong didn't see it. Seeing the girl, Kejong charged at her like she was the enemy, activating his Holy Spirit Turtle advanced skill. At the very last second, she raised her weapon, blocked the heavy strike with ease, and calmly asked if they could just talk. Kejong immediately turned to his friend, dumbfounded, asking why Leha was hanging out with the rank 6 player in the world. Only then did Leha realize she was the famous swordswoman, Shinera. In the real world, Shinera was a national gold medalist fencer, which explained her flawless rapier techniques. Kejong asked if they knew each other, and Nara gave a quick recap. The MC had saved her, and she returned the favor by taking out the trash. After introductions, Nara explained that she was using a different weapon because she was on an epic quest to find a magic sword. When Leha asked if it looked like a hairpin, she practically screamed, waiting for clues. Sadly, Leha only knew a vague rumor about a quest near the border, but even that was a huge help. Thanking them, Nara said her goodbyes, and sent Leha a private message, adding him as a friend and telling him to keep it a secret. As they walked back, Kejong teased his blushing friend, reminding him that he'd never even had a girlfriend. Moving on to business, the blonde warrior explained that Shinera was a holy knight, the first player ever to unlock the class, making her an absolute legend. When Leha recounted the whole Rising Sun ordeal, Kejong was furious. He advised Leha to lay low until he hit level 100, but Leha refused. He wanted revenge. Still, he knew the guild had endless manpower, and going to war alone would be a brutal, uphill battle. Back at the wooden cabin, Old Man Brown praised his student for learning his lesson and completing the quest quickly. The MC received the mark skill, but Brown noted he still needed to learn how to identify human targets. The third quest was a tracking test: assassinate Angel, a bandit boss. The bandits were camped in the southeast, and the old man handed Leha a wanted poster. Leha was skeptical, arguing that if he killed the boss, another would just take his place. Brown calmly replied that the bandits might disband, or they might not. He didn't care. You only know the outcome after flipping the coin. His doubts cleared. Leah set off, his mind locked onto his target. Angel was hiding in a desert, the perfect hunting ground for a sniper. Days later, deep in the desert, Angel was loudly demanding more beer. The bandits were busy drinking and partying with women, leaving only the guards on duty. Leah knew the risk of detection was low today. He had used his mark skill the very first time he saw the boss, a skill that tracks up to 3 targets simultaneously. Thanks to that, he had tracked them down after a grueling 10-hour trek. Can observe their patrol patterns for 17 straight days. However, the fortress was surrounded by magic circles that nullified return scrolls. The only way out was to strike during the feast when Angel was exposed. After sobering up and puking, Angel started running his mouth. With everything lined up, the MC pulled the trigger. The man dropped dead. But in a bizarre twist, the guards screamed, "The shadow is dead." Which made zero sense. They frantically began searching for the assassin. A tracker activated a skill, and the real boss ordered his men to boost the magical defenses. It was insane. After 17 days of surveillance, Leah hadn't realized that the real Angel was actually a scrawny little kid. The bandits mounted their horses and chased after him. Running for his life, Leah threw a bomb into the crowd, miraculously shaking off his pursuers. But Angel was obsessed with getting revenge on the sniper. When Leah finally reached the city, he was still in shock. The wanted poster had been a fake all along. Since he had marked the boss during their brief encounter, it was only a matter of time before they found him. Even inside the city walls, the bandits suddenly attacked, setting everything ablaze. Angel threatened the city lord, demanding he hand over the newcomer. When the lord pleaded ignorance, Angel ruthlessly ordered a massacre. This bandit crew had survived countless assassinations, so they were always one step ahead. Hearing an explosion from an alley, the boss assumed the MC was there, but then a chain of explosions erupted across different districts. The bandits were completely disoriented. Finally, Angel accepted that Leah had slipped away. They retreated, but Leah was horrified that they were willing to burn an entire city to the ground just to find him. Filled with pure rage, he decided this boss had to pay. No one could find the kid, even after tearing through 3 villages. But Angel didn't believe the sniper had truly escaped. He ordered a crew to relocate their fortress. It would be a massive hassle, but staying was suicide now that their base was compromised. With the camp mostly empty, 2 grunts were busy moving supplies and dumping garbage. Mid-conversation, the bandit boss was blasted off his horse by a flawless sniper round. Someone was hiding in the woods, but it didn't matter anymore. The remaining stragglers were next. Having completed the quest, the MC gained immense fame within the kingdom. Even though it was only a D-rank quest, returning to the fortress proved to be the right call. Angel was one terrifying NPC. However, Leah was fixated on the quest description. He hadn't been able to save the villagers. He swore to do better next time. Back at the cabin, Old Man Brown already knew everything. Seeing his student burdened by the burned villages, he explained that the real Angel was never the man in the picture. Leah had killed a decoy, and the price was 3 burning villages. Leah felt sick to his stomach, but the old man assured him the person who sent the poster wanted to apologize. Brown didn't blame him. The core mission was just the assassination. Saving the villagers would have been a bonus. At the very least, Leah earned the sniper skill and a gold coin. The skill was specialized for extreme long-range combat. Leah still refused Elizabeth's quest. It was time for some solo grinding. But before leaving, he asked Brown if he knew anything about the sleeping boy. Brown seemed to know something, hesitated, and then stayed quiet. The MC dumped all his stat points into dexterity, and tested his new skill. Apprentice Sniper improved gunpowder quality, protected the gun barrel, and boosted weapon range by 30 for 1 minute. Thanks to that, he nailed a target 455 meters away during a test fire. Insane luck. Switching gears, the grand opening of the Holy Grail restaurant was approaching. Just as Leah predicted, no one realized it was a high-end intelligence hub. Even veteran players had no clue what it was for. Leah decided to stay one step ahead. But trouble was brewing. A creepy stalker was tailing him. On Mount Cheney near the orc village, the MC miscalculated the wind, and his bullet grazed a mining monster's pickaxe. He was trying to hit the orcs, and things spiraled out of control. Despite his enhanced range, his reload speed was still agonizingly slow. The sound of the gunshot traveled faster than the musket ball, allowing the monsters to react. The quest was practically designed to screw him over. To make matters worse, Solent's bandit gang had found him again. Realizing the danger, he instantly ripped a return scroll to Verpor, with the bandits hot on his heels. In Verpor, the MC wondered how they kept tracking him, until he realized he'd been tagged with a tracking spell. Not knowing who cast it, he fled to the capital, ignoring the costs. Dynam ordered his mages to capture Lihei, but the teleportation circle activated just before the spell could hit. Lihei was disgusted. They dared to cast magic in the middle of a safe zone. He couldn't keep bleeding money just to run away. Left with no choice, he messaged Kejong to explain the situation. Lihei didn't know the enemy's numbers or levels, but at least the capital was a safe zone. No, he either had to hide in the capital forever, or step out and be hunted. He didn't ask Kejong for backup. Instead, like an absolute madman, he declared he was going to wipe out the entire Rising Sun Guild by himself. Kejong sent a massive wall of text warning him it was suicide. But Lihei remembered Browen's words, just try it, and see what happens. Kejong realized nothing could stop his friend. He did, however, advise Lihei to officially register a guild. If he just went on a killing spree, he'd be branded a criminal. But if he declared an official guild war, he'd at least be protected in the capital. Kejong begged him to think of the consequences. Lihei just thanked his friend, and told him not to worry. After all, in the real world, he used to be a bona fide sniper. At the Rising Sun's banquet hall, the host was announcing the award for Best Battlefield Manager. Team Errol won, strutting onto the stage soaking up the applause. But just as they were about to announce the Best Combat Agent, a system notification shattered the mood. An unknown guild had just declared war on them. The guild's name was Sunset Bandits, and its master was a player named Li. One member scoffed at the edgy name, until it clicked. Li was the exact guy they were desperately hunting. On the grand opening day of the Holy Grill, players realized it was an outrageously expensive restaurant, and left in droves. The receptionist turned everyone away except Lihei. The crowd was baffled by this vet treatment, some even assuming he was an anti. The MC wore a mask to avoid enemy eyes. He wanted to see what this place had to offer. When Jess greeted him, Lihei congratulated her on the opening, but cut straight to the chase. He wanted to buy intel. Despite his bluntness, she smiled and led him upstairs. Lihei expected a shitty backroom, but it was incredibly luxurious. Since it was a legitimate business front, flaunting their wealth was part of the charm. They sat in a private room on the top floor, though Lihei could sense elite assassins hiding in the shadows. Getting down to business, Madame just told the kid not to ask vague questions. Thinking for a moment, Lihei asked highly specific questions about the Rising Sun Guild. Jess praised his sharpness and laid out a flawless master plan, practically feeding him the cheat sheet for the upcoming war. She even offered to introduce him to the VIPs at the opening party, which Lihei instantly accepted. Meanwhile, at NME, a fat branch manager was screaming at Hyungnim, calling him trash for losing to a single musketeer. But Hyungnim pointed out that the main headquarters didn't know yet, meaning they still had time to fix this, and claim the glory. The fat boss nodded, deciding to delay his report, and launch a manhunt once reinforcements arrive. Suddenly, a grunt burst into the room. The reinforcements had been ambushed en route. The grunt didn't know who did it, but the manager instantly put two and two together. If it was that sniper, this was their chance to end him. He ordered Hyungnam to lead a search party. The Rising Sun members couldn't stick together, because they were getting picked off one by one. Hyungnam had no idea where the MC was hiding. One hyperactive grunt decided to sprint 50 meters into the open only to catch a bullet straight in the back. They only heard the gunshot, realizing it wasn't magic. Hyungnam assumed the enemy was invisible, otherwise he'd have seen the muzzle flash. He couldn't fathom a player pulling this off. From a massive distance, a bullet nearly blew off the branch manager Donoku's head the second he stepped out of his cabin. Hyungnam realized the MC was out there somewhere. He screamed at his men to scatter and hide since muskets take time to reload, and everyone scrambled into the cabin. Hyungnam noticed smoke rising from the distant forest, but he refused to believe a musket could shoot that far. For Lihei, they were reacting faster than expected. He didn't know their names, but he had already dropped 10 of them. Forcing these rats into their holes was all part of the plan. Adam Jess's intel included the coordinates of every branch, and the absolute best sniping vantage points. With the terrain advantage fully in his hands, he was guaranteed victory, even as a solo player. Inside the cabin, Hyungnam updated the manager, sending him into a full-blown panic. The grunts wanted to call Manic for backup, but Donoku ordered them to stay calm. Greed clouded his judgment. He assumed the MC was some rich kid out for revenge. If they captured him, they could extort a fortune. Hyungnam tried to point out that the kid only had 50 gold to his name, but Donoku silenced him with the promise of a promotion. In reality, the fat boss was planning to use all his men as meat shields, saving only himself and Hyung-nim. Out in the wild, Lee was relishing how easily he could traverse the mountains completely undetected. In a single day, his one-man guild had wiped out the southern branch, the Riverside branch, the eastern branch, and the Mount Manhwa branch. His final target was the Emerald Jungle branch. So far, he had assassinated 3 managers, 2 vice managers, and at least 4 reinforcement commanders. Out of the idiots who ran out to bait him, one got his head blown off instantly. The rest managed to spot his position, but could do nothing but wait for death because he was way out of their range. Back at the Rising Sun's emergency meeting, the guildmaster was so furious he nearly smashed the table. He summoned the fat manager because this whole mess started at his branch. Thanks to this kid, the guild's monthly revenue had tanked by 43. Tanoki was sweating bullets. He had waited all day for the MC to show up, but he never did. The guildmaster issued an ultimatum. Tanoki had exactly 1 week to force the kid to delete his account, declaring that he would personally interrogate the kid once captured. Meanwhile, the MC was actively hunting down Rising Sun scum. They should have been enraged and swarming him, but oddly, it was dead quiet. Leah finally spotted a guy and gifted him a fatal headshot. He was about to swap targets when he realized the guy was just bait to expose his position. A fully geared combat formation was marching right toward him. An archer loosed a wind-piercing arrow. These guys were definitely not amateurs. They marched past a group of curious adventurers, making everyone wonder what massive operation they were pulling. Deep in the pitch-black forest, Sato confidently stepped forward. He ripped a light scroll, while Hyung-nim proudly declared he could call in backup. Saiko handed him the reins. Immediately, Hyung-nim messaged Donok, who summoned 531 branch agents. They all converged at the edge of the forest. Every manic unit sent a squad, forming 20 platoons of 25 men each. The ultimate manhunt had begun, and Hyung-nim was vibrating with excitement at the thought of finally killing Lee. While they bickered over the plan, Lee, perched high in a tree, heard their exact numbers. He began prepping his gear. This was going to be an earth-shattering battle. The forest was massive. Even though it was a low-level zone, getting lost was incredibly easy. Saiko screamed at his men to stay alert, and they fanned out. The samurai wanted the glory of taking Liha's head, but suddenly, one of his subordinates dropped dead beside him. Terrifying, Saiko bolted into the crowd to avoid being the next corpse. In the thick fog, it was impossible to tell where the shots were coming from. Assuming it was magic, Saiko started to panic. He snapped, screaming and executing one of his own men just for telling everyone to stay quiet. Saiko was desperate, and he made a fatal error the moment he stepped into the light. A homemade bomb fell right onto his face like a gift from the heavens. The MC remained patiently hidden in the dark canopy above. The golden rule of guerrilla warfare: never stand in the open. There was a reason he strictly moved along the western edge. Step 1 of war is choosing a battlefield that favors you. A massive forest that he knew like the back of his hand was the perfect stage. The enemy needed light to find him, but the second they lit a torch, they caught a bullet. The only minor issue was that leveling up from the kills triggered a bright flash of light. Every enemy immediately saw exactly which tree Liha was hiding in. The assassins threw grappling hooks to scale the trunk, but they paid the ultimate price when they realized he had rigged the tree with explosives. The slaughter was so catastrophic that outside the forest, Hyung-nim was screaming, begging to know what the hell was happening. Following the explosions, an eerie silence fell over the woods, broken only by the sound of approaching footsteps. Ironically, the person walking out was the MC, completely unharmed and grinning. Liha mocked Hyung-nim, asking if he was too scared to step inside because of the level gap. Seeing the massacre of their comrades, the surviving grunts roared for blood, and Liha dared them all to rush him. But right then, a voice commanded everyone to stop. A figure stepped out to intervene, accompanied by the female knight, Shinera. Rising Sun had survived this long entirely due to overwhelming numbers, but that advantage was gone. Witnessing this, the other adventurers found their courage and stepped up, demanding justice. Liha coldly asked if they really wanted to keep fighting, warning Hyung-nim that if he lost here, the price would be absolute ruin. Meanwhile, the guildmaster of Rising Sun was buying intel on the MC from a top-tier broker. A subordinate warned him the price would be astronomical, but he didn't care. When he received the file, his face went pale. It proved Liha knew the exact coordinates of every single branch. Furthermore, the broker revealed that another intelligence guild whose name he didn't know had leaked this to Liha. The broker concluded by offering to assassinate the MC for 1,000 gold. Back at the forest edge, Hyung-nim swallowed his pride and ordered a retreat. He knew his boss was going to skin him alive. The MC shouted after them that he wouldn't show an ounce of mercy. Tails talk. The Rising Sun gang logged out of the game. Instantly, the players who had been terrorized by the guild erupted into cheers, lifting Lee Ha into the air and tossing him in celebration. A girl even ran up asking to add him as a friend. But before the MC could enjoy his newfound celebrity status, his friends grabbed him and pulled him out of the massive crowd. The tank ripped a teleport scroll, transporting them to a secluded cabin. First, the MC thanked them for their help. Matsuhiji excitedly mentioned that players were now calling him the Cloud Mage because every time he ambushed Rising Sun, thick smoke billowed from miles away. Casually, Leah asked if Matsuhiji and Hana were dating, which they awkwardly denied. Anna was curious to see his weapon, amazed that it could shoot from such an impossible distance. Just as the MC was about to head back to the capital, his two good friends suddenly snapped his brand new musket right in half. It didn't break entirely, but the barrel was completely ruined. Leah freaked out, screaming, asking what the hell they were doing. Seriously, he snapped it. If this is a joke, it isn't funny. But the knight's friendly face vanished, replaced with a cold stare. He told Leah that whether they were from Rising Sun or not was none of his business. They revealed their boss was on his way. Apparently, they had cut a deal with a guy named Oka to hand the MC over. Leah had no idea who Oka was. Their first meeting had been pure coincidence. This was just astronomically bad luck. They were enemies, and this Oka guy was clearly pulling the strings. The MC tried to run, but Matsuhiji threatened to draw his sword, smirking as his guild master arrived. The knight and the boss clearly knew each other, and in Leah's eyes, they were all the same trash. 1,000 escape plans raced through Leah's mind. Surprisingly, the boss offered him a spot in their guild. Nobody understood the logic, but the boss figured they could use Leah as an attack dog. Leah told him to go to hell, infuriating the boss, especially since they were offering a salary of 10,000 gold a year. If that wasn't a lie, it was enough to cover Leah's real-life leg surgery for the next 2 years. But it went against everything the MC stood for. He boldly declared that Rising Sun was the scum of the earth, while secretly priming a bomb. Catching them off guard, he detonated the explosive, lighting up the sky. Blown backward by the blast, the MC scrambled to his feet and ran like hell, clutching his bent musket. He hated Matsuhiji to his core for ruining his weapon. Sadly, he couldn't shake his pursuers. The enemy's chief strategist cast a slow spell, locking Leah in place. Since he had rejected the offer, the boss decided to end him personally. And there was no one around to save him. Thinking fast, the MC activated his soul link skill, summoning the spirit of Koma, the pet bear boss. The massive beast materialized and instantly slapped the enemy boss into the stratosphere. Now it was a 2-on-4 fight. Matsuhiji turned pale as a giant fire bear boss loomed out of nowhere. Despite its terrifying appearance, the bear was incredibly docile toward Leah. He affectionately pet Koma, noting that its level was quite high, but saved the cuddling for later and focused on slaughtering his enemies. The traitorous couple and the guild members were hit with a fear debuff. The boss crawled back to his feet, muttering that only the tamer class could summon monsters. Leah played dumb. Koma's base level was 66, but thanks to a special buff, it had temporarily spiked to 112. The MC was currently level 92, making this a very fair fight. As chaos erupted, Anna tried to slip away, but Leah coldly ordered Koma to incinerate the two traitorous scumbags first. They screamed and begged, but their tears couldn't save them from being burned alive. Next, Leah walked over for a violent heart-to-heart with the Rising Sun boss. At first, the guy refused to reveal his intel source, but after a brutal beatdown, he confessed it was the Shana Bahumi Guild. They specialized in gathering intel on players like the MC, by a guild master named Okashima. Satisfied, Leah wondered what the enemy boss Kyokujitsu would do now that his empire had crumbled. He'd have to disband the guild. Leah knew his reputation had skyrocketed, but he was still pissed about his ruined rifle. Kyokujitsu promised to pay for it, but that wasn't enough. The MC suggested he leave the guild entirely. Furthermore, he forced them to sign a magical contract returning all the money they had extorted from players. When the enemies hesitated, Leah served them a few more bone-crushing punches. Violence really was the universal language. The system announced the end of the guild war, declaring the Sunset Bandits the victors. Though beaten to a pulp, Kyokujitsu muttered threats of revenge. Seeing this, the MC advised the strategist to go make his own guild, implying his future didn't need to be tied to a loser like Kyokujitsu. The strategist's eyes lit up. He instantly ripped a teleport scroll and vanished. Furious, the boss chased after him, leaving the MC alone with his giant teddy bear. He hugged Koma tightly, celebrating his hard-won victory. Over in Tigsa, Yusa, a guy working at a gun shop was telling an older customer about an insane video game he was watching. He was mind-blown by a clip of a player wiping out enemies with a musket, landing impossibly accurate shots despite the slow reload time. Anyway, at 9:30, the guy clocked out, firmly refusing to work unpaid overtime, grabbed his concealed carry, and headed out. Simultaneously, at the luxurious mansion of the Ice and Fire Mage sisters, the blue-haired younger sister, Wayne, dragged her sister over to watch a video. The MC had just single-handedly dismantled the Rising Sun Guild. Wei-on, the red-haired older sister, shoved people aside, unable to believe that Li Ha was the infamous Cloud Mage. Even crazier, he was the guild master of the Sunset Bandits, which was clear as day in the footage. Wayne's jaw dropped when she saw his kill count. She freaked out seeing the number hit 500. His power was growing at a terrifying pace. It wasn't that she didn't want him in their guild, it was that he was quickly becoming a powerhouse in his own right. Wei-on told her sister she wasn't against recruiting him, but the tone of her voice made it sound like she was already head over heels for the guy. Either way, their next move was figuring out how to reel him in. When the MC logged back into the game, he was bombarded by an avalanche of notifications, mostly a flood of guild applications. 873 messages, all hyping up his recent rampage. His original plan was to use a cheap Mac lock until he got the reward from Elizabeth's quest, but now he was looking at a massive financial loss. On the bright side, Li Ha unlocked a series of ultra-rare achievements: Righteous Judge, Hate the Sin, Not the Sinner, and Guild War Victor. Those alone granted him 35 bonus stat points. He also earned the incarnation of the Battlefield title, giving him another 16 points. Most importantly, securing 500 kills earned him his first A-rank achievement. He dumped 20 points into intelligence and pumped the rest straight into dexterity. Feeling practically invincible, he started to think he was a gaming genius. Eager to hit the academy, he couldn't wait to show off to Old Man Brown. Leo walked up to the wooden cabin with a massive grin, but froze when he saw someone else there. The stranger was talking to Brown like an old ally, but the MC had no clue who he was. They were discussing a third party, likely the MC, and the stranger flatly stated he wouldn't help a competitor. He added that figuring it out wasn't hard, intentionally speaking loudly so Leah would hear. The moment they locked eyes, the MC yelled and rushed over, politely greeting the academy director, and apologizing for interrupting. But when the stranger stared at Leah's busted weapon, it only confirmed his belief that this kid wasn't worth his time. He promised to return later, and Brown nodded. Cutting to the chase, Brown mentioned he'd heard the breaking news. The MC admitted he still hadn't passed Elizabeth's test, then curiously asked who the guy was. Brown calmly replied that he was the sleeping boy. Hearing that, Leah sprinted after the guy. He needed to talk to him right now. He didn't have to look far. The guy was lounging on a tree branch, waiting. At first glance, his outfit screamed Wild West cowboy. Leah secretly wondered if this was the boyfriend Shin Nara was looking for, but brushed the thought aside. He apologized for eavesdropping and asked if the guy was a musketeer. The cowboy smirked, noting Leah still hadn't passed the test and was way too low level. If they fought now, it would be a massacre. But the MC had no intention of fighting. As the gunslinger moved to leave, Leah desperately tried to keep his attention. The guy casually hopped down, kicked the tree trunk, and said that was how he passed the test. Naturally, Leah was completely lost. But when he focused on the word test, a light bulb went off. The stranger introduced himself as Kid the Swift, the inheritor of Brown's legacy. The two actually shared a resemblance. Kid's test was to shoot falling leaves, but the distance was only 2 meters. This baffled Leah. At the very least, he'd have to shoot a whole cluster at once. Basically, a solid kick would knock down 13 leaves, and Brown required Kid to shoot all 13 before they hit the ground. Leaves take about 3 seconds to fall, so firing 13 shots in that window sounded physically impossible. Noticeably, Kid wasn't holding a gun, which made no sense to Leah since everyone knew muskets couldn't be stored in the inventory. Kid just smiled, telling Leah he should already know the answer since he knew how to craft bombs. Seeing the MC's blank stare, Kid sighed and told him to follow. Before leaving, Leah asked why Kid was helping him. Kid admitted he needed the power of the driller. His explanation was cryptic, but Leah quickly realized Kid was a massive sunder. He was helping because he needed an ally, but was too embarrassed to just teach him directly. The MC confidently declared he'd pass the test soon and become the driller. Kid gave a weird reaction, but they struck a deal before parting ways. Back at the cabin, Brown explained that it only took Kid 3 days to pass the test, so he was forced to hand over the muskets. Leah scratched his head, completely failing to understand how it was possible. Before he left, the old man warned him not to be restricted by rigid thinking, a piece of advice Lee had took to heart. He was hung up on Brown using the plural muskets, feeling like the old man was trolling him. The most illogical part was Kid not carrying a weapon, an impossible feat for a musketeer. But then, it hit him. Kid had figured out a way to store the gun and his inventory. Shortly after, the blacksmith Zig welcomed Lee Han, asking if he wanted to tank her with the gun's drum mechanism again. The MC handed him the musket that had been snapped in half. Zig suggested it was better to just buy a new one. But Lee had pitched a crazy idea, convincing Zig to trust him. They got to work, and the result was a masterpiece. They successfully forged a collapsible musket that could fold and fit into an inventory. It was absolutely worth the money. Next, the MC asked him to drill holes in the drum so it could rotate like a revolver. Zig humbly declined, admitting his skills weren't high enough, and advised Lee had to find a dwarven blacksmith. Dwarves were master artisans specializing in magical weapons, residing in the massive adamantium mountains beyond the borders of the Fibial Kingdom. Standing alone in a quiet forest, the MC practiced reloading, getting it down to 10 seconds. Everything seemed perfect. He aimed at a leaf to test fire, but the bullet missed by a mile. It made no sense. The target was right in front of him. He stepped closer and fired again, but no matter how much he closed the gap, the shot veered off, until it finally hit from a pathetic distance of 25 meters. Lee couldn't believe his custom weapon was this garbage. Still, as a sniper, he decided to keep it as a trump card for anyone stupid enough to get into close quarters combat. He must have passed the test with at least 4 lightning-fast reloads. Imagining a combat style relying on tiny pistols made Lee intensely curious about how Kid actually fought. Suddenly, Shen Nara appeared out of thin air, yelling his name. She scolded him for not messaging her when he came to the capital. Her sharp eyes quickly noticed his new gear. Lee obediently recounted everything that had happened, but Nara was too busy fangirling over his viral Rising Sun video. She excitedly drew her new weapon to show off. She had successfully broken the seal on her magic sword, and her stats now rivaled elite ninjas. Since Lee mentioned he wasn't joining a guild, she invited him to the Order of the Holy Knights, offering to personally sponsor him. The Order was one of the most powerful factions in the kingdom, but Lee humbly declined, saying he wasn't skilled enough yet. She then pointed at the weapon holstered at his hip. Lee was about to eagerly explain, but when Nara realized it was similar to Kid's weapon, her face went dark. All her friendliness vanished, replaced by pure killing intent. The MC frantically clarified that he made it himself. He had only briefly crossed paths with Kid at the academy. Hearing that, Nara finally calmed down. The reason she snapped was that she and Kid had once dueled, and Nara had lost horribly. A total, humiliating defeat. Lee spouted a million excuses to comfort her, but Nara had been a top ranker for a long time, and the duel was recently had genuinely couldn't comprehend how monstrous Kid's power must be. She explained the origin of the sleeping boy nickname. Rumor had it he could play the game while asleep. A while back, Kid looted a high-tier item, and the Rising Sun Guild got greedy. They sent 30 assassins to jump him. But there wasn't even a video of the fight, because it ended in a flash. In the blink of an eye, 30 thugs were dead on the floor, while Kid remained slumped over a table, snoring loudly. The only thing that moved was the gun hidden under the table. When he finally woke up, he groggily asked what had happened. That's how he got the name, a monster who could drop targets at the speed of light, even in his sleep. Nara explained that levels aren't everything. The game system naturally balances the rest. The system regularly throws rankers into the meat grinder against outsiders, players who are terrifyingly strong despite their low levels. True power comes from stat points, which you can grind without leveling up, like by hunting rare achievements. The MC knew this better than anyone since he was living proof. Nara dropped a bombshell: killing a ranker grants a massive amount of achievement points. That's why Middle-earth's leaderboards display everyone's level. It fuels brutal competition. It's also why top players rarely sell overpowered gear they find. If they get hunted and lose their weapon, they lose their throne forever. The game always balances the economy between the real and virtual worlds. Before leaving, Nara warned him that he'd soon be branded an outsider, and powerful factions like her Holy Knights would be watching him. She told him to watch his back. Elsewhere, the red-haired mage sneered, warning the group across from him not to threaten him. Wayne, the blue-haired sister, yelled at him to lower his hand, as he was ruining the meeting. The tense atmosphere felt nothing like a peaceful negotiation for control of Dale Castle. The red-haired guy declared he wasn't there to negotiate. He arrogantly asked Wayne, the red-haired sister, if she could even survive until the deadline. He was openly instigating a guild war. He admitted he didn't have the funds to hire a ranker yet, but dangled the castle's massive profits as bait. Wei Yan shook with rage, but held her head high, and accepted the challenge. The red-haired guy left, leaving the two sisters boiling mad, ready to beat him to a pulp. While the enemy planned to hire rankers, Wei Yan decided to bet everything on outsiders. Walking down the street, the MC received a small gift from a fan, getting a taste of the celebrity lie. He also made 100 gold by selling his guild name, so he no longer had to worry about buying temporary guns until Broen gave him his reward. At the Bulko Guild War Council, their red-haired leader roared that Wei Yan had rejected their proposals. They were incredibly bitter toward the wealthy sisters. They had invested 850 gold into the castle project, all gone under the guise of donations. The players who had emptied their pockets were furious, and the founding members realized they couldn't control the mob. Slamming the table, the leader finalized that war is the only option. He had contacted the Dragon Knights and the Spark Guild leader, promising to win their money back. Everyone feared the Huohong Guild commanded by the two sisters, but if they won, they'd claim a literal gold mine. Their strategy was to use a massive vanguard army as a meat shield mimicking Shen Nara's tactics while recruiting Korea's top players, specifically the rank 2 player known as Too Easy. The plan had everyone fired up. Hyun Nim kept whining about unresolved issues, making the recruitment of Too Easy look difficult. The Bulko leader realized his mistake and called Sasu, ordering him to bring in the blonde guy Kijong. He wanted to recruit the MC into the Bulko Guild to secure extreme long-range fire support. Kijong had already invited Lee, but the MC declined, thinking he was too weak. Still, Sasu insisted they needed him. Kijong promised to try again, but couldn't make any guarantees. Ultimately, the leader ordered Sasuk to proceed with the plan, ruthlessly stating that if things went south, Kijong would be their sacrificial lamb. Back in the real world, Liha's mother went to work. Thanks to his new income, he was finally eating proper meals. His gun situation was sorted. Liha planned to grind trolls until he saw internet rumors about the upcoming war between Huan and Bulko. The declaration of war was public, and the prize was exclusive rights to Dale Castle, which meant controlling access to the local dungeons. The entrance fees alone would generate astronomical wealth. Liha got a call from Kijong, who was already prepping to log in. Meeting up in game, Liha noticed his friend's new gear, while Kijong spotted the new musket. Kijong cut to the chase. Did Liha want to join the guild? He apologized for bringing it up during such a sensitive time, and explained the whole situation. But going to war against the two sisters was a risk Liha didn't want to take. Kijong assured him that this time, the guild master himself was extending the invite, so Liha shouldn't feel pressured. Before the MC could answer, a shadow rustled in the bushes. They chased after it, and Kijong's sharp eyes caught the Huang Guild emblem. A spy was eavesdropping, and unfortunately, they lost him. Liha thought the whole thing was ridiculous, but used it as an excuse to buy time to think. Kijong believed this war was their ticket to the big leagues, but Liha was pragmatic. The cost of failure was too high. If he joined the war, it would solely be for his brother in arms. Kijong nodded, promising to relay the message. The MC swallowed the words he truly wanted to say, that he would, at the very least, protect his friend from that bloodthirsty berserker. At the troll farming spot, the MC was casually grinding by sniping from afar. Few bullets per troll. His new rifle was lighter, but required complex handling skills. He was startled when a figure suddenly appeared. Luckily, it was Wei Yan, along with her sister. Wei Yan smiled, complimenting his new CD arm. Liha knew they'd come looking for him after the Rising Sun video. Wei Yan didn't beat around the bush. He invited him straight into the Huohong Guild. The MC doubted their chances of winning, but she confidently replied, "To kill a lion, you use the parasite born from within it." She slyly revealed she had discovered the enemy's weakness thanks to a traitor in their ranks. Cut to Kijong. He apologized for being late, and the Bulko leader sharply told him not to drag his feet next time, ordering him to sit down. Confused by everyone's murderous glares, Kijong obeyed. Instantly, the fake leader muttered an apology and locked Kijong in prison chains, silencing his teleportation skills for 30 minutes. Kijong thought it was a prank until the leader slammed a photo on the table showing Kijong smiling and chatting with an enemy member. Kijong yelled that he was just tailing the guy, but Sasuk mocked him. Nobody tails a target while grinning ear to ear. In reality, the photo's angle was manipulated, but proving it was almost impossible. Kijong swore he would answer any question to clear his name. I chimed in, "Maybe the sniper kid is behind all this." Kijong furiously defended Liha, insisting the photo was fake. But the rune was convinced Liha was backed by the wealthy sisters. Kijong pleaded that it was a misunderstanding, but the leader coldly reminded him they were in the middle of a life or death war. They played the video of Leah fighting 500 players at Candle Castle to force a confession. No one believed a random sniper could unleash that much destruction, considering the class was considered garbage. Luckily, Taeyeon stepped up to defend them, asking to give the MC a chance to explain. He didn't believe Leah was a spy, and the council agreed to let them prove his innocence. The two used a scroll to leave. However, if they failed to bring proof, Wei-yun's faction would hold them entirely responsible for the damages. Back to Leah's conversation. Wei-yun kept pressing, throwing out sweet offers. But Leah sensed something was horribly wrong the second Kejong and Taeyeon teleported right into the middle of their meeting. The Huang sisters screamed in shock. The MC frantically tried to explain, but Wei-yun ignored him, and immediately launched an attack. Taeyeon drew his flaming sword to parry, leaving Kejong stunned. Leah screamed for everyone to stop and calm down. But the second the clash paused, Taeyeon grabbed Kejong and teleported away before the MC could utter a single word. Leah deeply regretted not telling them he knew the sisters. He turned to Wei-yun, demanding to know where her intel on the traitor came from. Parasite meant a mole, but she firmly refused to reveal her source. Annoyed, the MC aimed his gun right at her. He didn't want this misunderstanding to get any worse. But Wei-yun didn't flinch. Seeing the MC stubbornly believe Kejong was the informant, she sighed, admitting she genuinely didn't know the spy's face because he was covered head to toe. Even if she was sure, he could be a double agent. She swore she wasn't trying to destroy their friendship. To smooth things over, she offered to recruit them both into Huahong. Leah would be her main deeds and personal bodyguard, with a starting salary of 3,000 gold a year plus bonuses enough to pay for 4 years of his real-life surgeries. It was a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get rich and clear up the mess with Kejong later. But the MC saw things differently. He refused and apologized. Kejong wasn't his blood brother, but he was the one who pulled Leah out of his crippling depression and saved his life. He'd rather make Wei-yun an enemy than turn his back on his best friend. Hearing this, Wei-yun smiled in admiration. The offer had been a test of his character, though the money was entirely real. She told him the door was always open if he changed his mind. The sisters left, leaving the MC lost in thought. Meanwhile, at Bulko, the leader forced Kejong to take the fall. In the real world, Lee had tried desperately to contact him, but Kejong and Taeyeon had blocked his messages. At home, Kejong held his head, crushed by the feeling of betrayal. Unable to prove his friend's innocence, the Bulko leader forced Kejong to sign a death warrant if they lost the war. Kejong would have to shoulder a massive 2.6 billion won debt. At the Holy Grill, players were enthusiastically debating who would win the upcoming war. When the waitress approached, Leah dropped the secret passcode. He and Madame just reunited. Aside from buying intel on the Bulko Guild, the MC specifically requested the file on Agar the psychotic Russian berserker, because his gut told him the maniac was definitely going to get involved. A few days later, at Huahong's war room, the general manager was summoned. Wei-yun explained that she was only the leader on paper, her younger sister was the true mastermind. The briefing began. In the first skirmish, the enemy had attacked with overwhelming numbers and brute force. Huahong's defenses crumbled in less than an hour. Their outposts were supposed to be top secret, but somehow, Bulko knew exactly where their forces were, and annihilated 9 bases simultaneously. To turn the tide, Wei-yun played her trump card, the Mad Commander Crowley, an infamous outsider alchemist. Crowley only joined because he heard the enemy was summoning Faust, and he wanted to duel him. The irony was that Wei-yun had rejected his application countless times before. On the battlefield, Crowley smashed a potion onto the ground, summoning in a horde of vicious blood golems to tear through the enemy lines. The battle at Tionis was an absolute bloodbath, but Huang was still losing ground. They couldn't afford another defeat. The meeting adjourned. Watching from afar, the MC silently praised the sisters' decision to hire the alchemist and the Yellow Dragon squad. But he suddenly noticed a few shadowy figures lurking around wearing Huahong cloaks but missing the guild crest. These were likely the same spies who had caused trouble in the capital. They were the ones who fabricated the evidence to frame Kejong. Without hesitation, the MC used his mark skill on the rats. That night, at a rigged outpost, Huahong walked into an ambush and lost 4 members. Casualties piled up for a whole week after Tionis. Even though Bulko hadn't shown their faces, they countered Huahong's every move. If they sent 10 men on patrol, Bulko would instantly flank them. The red-haired sister tore her hair out, trying to find the leak. In reality, Bulko's strategy was terrifyingly effective, and their leader was smug as hell. It was expensive, but Huahong was bleeding out much faster, and Bulko would recoup everything once they took the castle. Sasuke promised to prepare the tactical formations, and the leader thanked him, ending the meeting. Gamblers started placing heavy bets on Bulko since they were dominating. Bulko continuously provoked Hwahan, declaring they would make their final stand at the Amoth Cliffs. Days later at Amoth, the two armies finally clashed. Hwahan had fewer troops, but Pu the Chinese ranker brought 888 elite veterans, and the alchemist anchored the flank. On the other side, a Bulko mage worried they'd miss their attack window. But their plan was defensive, and Sasuke's job was to protect the guild master. Wei Yan screamed the order to charge, targeting the enemy mages to break through to the castle. Bulko surged forward with 600 men. However, their formation screamed trap. Still, Wei Yan growled, "This isn't a game of chess," and signaled her sister. Wine unleashed devastation Arctic tornado. A massive cyclone ripped across the battlefield. Bulko's mage, Yin Shin, panicked and begged his leader for trap support. He threw up a storm barrier to block the tornado. But even with 4 totems boosting him, Yenshin was barely holding on. Buying time, every enemy mage began channeling spells. Huiyun smartly avoided clashing her magic against their shield. Instead, she opened a wormhole, redirecting all the enemy's magic right back into their faces. The shockwave blasted everyone away except Kejon, who stood completely unfazed. But seeing him rapidly summon blood golems in a frenzy showed just how pissed off he was. The enemy alchemist looked ready to cry. Victory seemed within Huiyun's grasp. Until Pu's reinforcements crested the mountain. Huiyun smirked, taunting the enemy leader, causing panic in the Bulko ranks. She ordered her allies to tighten the net, and troops poured down the slopes. The Bulko founders turned pale, as their numerical advantage vanished. No one could even count how many enemies were swarming them. Huiyun continued to mock the red-haired leader, but he stubbornly barked back that she didn't deserve the castle. He pointed out that he hadn't sealed their escape routes. Huiyun instantly smelled a rat. But it was too late, for Pu the Chinese ranker was suddenly hit with a forced teleportation spell. The sister's strongest trump card was removed from the board in a millisecond. The escape routes locked down, and no one knew where the Chinese player had been sent. Even if he was close, it would take far too long to run back. Huiyun had to personally command the Yellow Dragon squad, as 88 elite troops remained. Bulko only had 400 men left. But absolutely no one, not even the sisters, expected Agor, the bloodthirsty berserker, to suddenly crash into the battlefield like a feral beast. Anyone who knew his name was terrified. He tore through the enemy lines, his massive greatsword obliterating everything in his path. Huiyun swallowed hard, bitterly accepting defeat. But a certain hero hiding in the nearby bushes strongly disagreed. In the first few seconds, players were slaughtered left and right by the berserker, including the 2 sisters. The Bulko leader gleefully patted himself on the back for hiring Agor. The real MVP of the battle was Sasuke, who orchestrated the deals and strategy. He ordered Agor to finish the job, but for some insane reason, the berserker nearly chopped the Bulko leader's head off. Sasuke frantically screamed at the Russian. The situation made zero sense, but the balance of power had shifted. Whoever controlled Agor controlled the battlefield, and Sasuke seemed to be at the center of this betrayal. He pulled out the castle's ownership transfer contract. From the very beginning, Sasuke never respected the red-haired guy as a leader, and the leader's blind trust was his fatal flaw. Before executing his former boss, Sasuke revealed he had been embezzling guild funds, and planned to pin it all on the red-haired guy. He screamed at him to sign the contract. It turned out the parasites were actually Japanese players from the Dino Guild Dainyunyana who had infiltrated long ago. Sasuke instantly cast a control spell on the red-haired leader. Kejon tried to intervene but was swatted away like a fly. Huiyun recognized Kejon, and tried to warn him it was a trap, but Sasuke controlled her too. Kejon connected the dots and realized this ninja was the one who faked the photo, and caused all the bad blood. He roared in fury. Even though there was no hard proof, and Huiyun really had used Kejon, Sasuke was the puppet master. Greed had blinded them all, but the only thing Kejon cared about right now was protecting his guild's honor. Sasuke ordered Agor to deal with the tank Kejon. The berserker chuckled, recognizing the coward from their last encounter. Kejon gritted his teeth, ready to hold his ground. Igor activated his blood burst skill. Taiyan tried to rush in and save his friend, but before the berserker could swing his sword, a bullet tore through the wind and buried itself right in the center of Agor's forehead. Recognizing the bullet's design, Kejon burst into tears. Liha had come to save him. Igor stood there, completely baffled. Assuming the sisters were pulling a trick, he turned to execute them, only to take another bullet straight to the leg. Sasuke panicked. He had no idea there was a third party sniping them. To heal, the berserker needed blood. He started swinging wildly, slaughtering anyone in reach. Taeyeon stepped up to fight his former ally. Though he usually stayed neutral, he intervened because he trusted Kejong over Aegor. A brutal fight broke out. The players who hadn't realized Sasuke's betrayal were completely lost. Meanwhile, Igor figured he just needed to kill the guildmaster to force the signature. Seeing Kejong step up to defend him, Igor laughed maniacally, hyped for round 2. He popped his frenzy skill. Kejong started counting under his breath. The enemy mocked him, but Kejong laughed harder, because he wasn't just counting for fun. It took exactly 25 seconds for Lee to reload. The second the countdown hit 0, the MC fired a round straight into Igor's shoulder. Taking advantage of the stagger, Kejong channeled Holy Spirit into his sword and sliced the berserker's stomach wide open. Finally, the giant fell. But Kejong's sword was wedged deep in the massive body, forcing Aegor to play his final trump card, werewolf transformation. Huiyan screamed for Kejong to run. To buy him time, she used the very last of her mana to freeze the beast's jaws shut with ice. She was completely drained, but still tried to save the blonde warrior. Even though Huiyan didn't trust them, Kejong placed all his faith in his brother in arms. Just as the wolf lunged at Kejong, a deafening explosion ripped through the air. A bullet shattered the beast's skull. Lea's level skyrocketed. Leveling up this fast without being in a party was practically unheard of. Remembering the close calls that forced him to shoot early, the MC thanked his lucky stars he had waited for the perfect moment to execute Aegor. Still, he couldn't celebrate until he shook off the angry Russians. Lee sprinted for his life and decisively hurled himself off the cliff. Kejong and Huiyan pang, but luckily, Huiyan had just enough mana left to cast spatial teleportation, landing the MC safely on the ground. The Russians howled in rage, demanding blood. Huiyan was intensely curious who was this kid that could shift the entire balance of power. The moment Igor died, he was forcefully logged out of the game. Lee fed them all lie, claiming he was just passing through, and used the chance to apologize for hiding his connection to the sisters. He never intended to deceive his friend, and Kejong felt terrible for blocking Lee's messages without hearing him out. They made peace. Instead of letting the Bolko leader explain, the MC took control of the situation, loudly demanding everyone's attention. He laid out the ugly truth that Dano Guild was just a front created by Shinabagumi to siphon money. The guild master position had been rigged from the start, and today's puppet master was Sasuke, the same ninja who faked Kejong's photo. After bleeding both Bolko and Huang dry through constant skirmishes, he called in the Tsar Guild to sweep up the scraps. When Huiyan asked why Lee intervened to stop the war, the Dragon Knight furiously yelled that they were on the verge of winning. However, the red-haired sister coldly reminded him that the rancor, he, was already on his way back if they wanted to keep fighting. Lee suggested it was best to end this pointless war. Huiyan was irritated, noting she had offered to negotiate 5 times but was rejected. Ironically, the red-haired leader was completely clueless about this, because he had given Sasuke full negotiating power, and that bastard had lied, claiming Huang refused to compromise. Realizing he had been played, the red-haired guy stepped down and left the guild to atone for his mistakes. But before he did, the MC stepped up with a lucrative offer. He had done his homework, and since both sides had suffered heavy losses, Huang would keep the castle, but the profits would be split with Bolko instead of the Yellow Dragon mercs. Thanks to the MC's diplomacy, the Dragon Knights and the Spark Guild agreed to a ceasefire with Huang. The red-haired guy voluntarily resigned and handed the guild master position over to Kejong. Though Kejong knew the burden would be immense, he was the only one everyone truly trusted. He ripped up the debt contract, declaring he would personally pay off the war reparations and relentlessly hunt down Sasuke. Finally, Huiyan praised the MC for showing up exactly when they needed him. Amidst the flurry, she pressed him on where he got his intel. Though Leah played coy, she guessed it was an anti-Semitism jest. Huiyan admitted he was incredible, even if he only did it to protect his friends. But the MC dropped a critical hit. "I did it for you too, Huiyan." That line made her face flush crimson, and she shyly looked away, unable to meet his eyes. And so, the guild war ended in a victory for Huang. Only 2 players managed to record the entire event. One of them wanted to give the MC a cooler title, since Cloud Mage sounded lame. His broadcasting buddy remembered a musical featuring a character called the Arcane Sniper, and just like that, the legendary name was officially born. A few days later, the MC walked the streets in a state of constant paranoia, because ever since the war, he had a massive target on his back. But before stressing over that, he checked his achievement rewards. The most interesting one was tied to Aegor. It detailed exactly how he leveled up so fast, but the catch was terrifying. If Lee had died at Aegor's hands, he would lose everything. Regardless, he focused on the 213 stat points he had just earned. He pushed his dexterity to the 1-0 mark, saved the rest, and equipped the necklace he looted from Agor. It was a heroic tier item that granted 100 affinity with dark elves, and resistance to dark magic. Leah then tossed the Cobalt Boss necklace, and unlocked a new skill, Forbidden Fury. Meanwhile, Sasuke was bowing, begging Oka for forgiveness, but she couldn't care less. The bigger issue was that the guilds had now formed an alliance. Sasuke desperately wanted a chance to redeem himself, but the boss had already called in Minith and Shizarazian to handle the mess, proving that enemy factions didn't necessarily come from the same country. In another horrifyingly grim location, a man realized he wasn't in a laboratory. He ran into demonic monsters, but had zero interest in dealing with them. When a pack of hellhounds charged him, he drew his gun, and with a single shot, both the hounds and their master were blown into a ditch. Unable to find what he was looking for, he set out to hunt down the player known as the Arcane Sniper, who was last seen near Dale Castle. Parties were recruiting left and right. The MC was confident he'd make a fortune there. Ruining a bit after Liha declined her offer, Huiyan proposed a new deal: he would take the Vice Guild Master position, earning a salary matching the top executives, both because of his talent and because she wanted to keep him close. Still, the charming sniper prioritized helping Kijong. Leah suggested she give Kijong a cut of the castle's profits to give him a reason to stick around. Surprisingly, Huiyan generously agreed to hand over 10 of the revenue. Walking down the street, the MC accidentally bumped into someone. He apologized, but his gear gave him away. When the person gasped in shock, everyone around instantly recognized him. The infamous Arcane Sniper was here. A chaotic mob swarmed him, fighting for his attention. Liha was incredibly annoyed, but thankfully, someone shouted and cleared the crowd. It was a guard looking for the MC for urgent business. The guard immediately cast a spell, teleporting Liha away. The MC was transported to a meeting with Huiyan and Old Man Brown. The tension in the room felt like an interrogation, which Brown openly admitted. The rapid-fire questions tested Liha's patience. They needed to verify information, because, somehow, he had accidentally tangled himself with the Remlong Corporation. To Liha, taking down one of the two major powers didn't sound like a bad thing, but saying that out loud visibly irritated the old man. Things got heated, and the MC decided to bail before he got roasted alive. Huiyan stepped in to break the ice. She ignored the old man and asked if the kid wanted to explore the sealed sewer dungeon. He stocked up on ammo, potions, and made it clear he didn't want anyone getting in his way. Before he left, Huiyan shoved several incredibly expensive items into his hands without a single word of explanation. They entered the dungeon. The red-haired girl was visibly anxious when the MC confidently declared he was going to solo clear the dungeon at his current level, but Lee had just strolled right in. At least Old Man Brown wasn't worried. He had absolute faith in the kid. Days passed, and the MC was still grinding away in the dungeon. Huiyan muttered about how hopelessly stubborn the kid was. Seeing her pace around worried sick, the old man teased her, taking her off. In truth, Huiyan knew the MC had monstrous stats because her sister Huang had secretly checked them. The donation drives for the cities of Armios and Reyes were complete. Huang reported that 3 suspicious individuals were prowling around Dale Castle. All 3 belonged to the Tsar Guild, meaning Igor was likely nearby. The red-haired sister asked who led that guild. Manager Chadish explained that they had deep ties to the Russian military. The fact that Russia backed Igor was no secret when Q intervened during the war. The situation had escalated into a massive international mess. As for the other 2 targets, one was Kid the Swift, the sleeping boy the MC had met earlier, who seemed to be looking for Lee. The last guy was the real nightmare looter. Yes, the battle-crazed mercenary, a master bounty hunter. Chadish had never met him, but his infamy echoed everywhere. Rumor had it his nickname was the Draconic Soldier, because he didn't bother fighting small fry. He had once gone toe-to-toe with the one Dragon Knight, Alexander. Inside the dungeon, the MC picked up loot from a dead toad monster. He sharply noticed another toad playing dead, and pumped another bullet into it. He had effortlessly ground out 26 levels in just a few days. He had completely stopped sleeping in the real world to play 24/7, and was now sitting at level 144. To get his current dexterity stat, a normal player would need to hit level 180, and sacrifice every other stat point. Moreover, his Forbidden Fury skill traded 40 of his 80 for a 20 damage boost, making any points invested in Vitality completely useless right now. Instead, Lee had dumped everything into Strength and Dexterity until he received an emergency SOS from Kid. Leah replied, but Kid's explanation was frantic and confusing. The MC had no choice but to sprint over her and see what was happening himself. Outside the southern walls of the castle, Leah shouted Kid's name, but Kid fiercely hissed at him to shut up. He sent his coordinates, and when the MC arrived, he was horrified to find Kid lying in a pool of blood, half dead. He rushed over with a potion, but Kid shook his head, saying he needed a temple because he was cursed. The wound on his body looked like a literal black hole, and to the MC, it was clearly the work of the piercer. The current piercer was Luger, and he was closing in fast. The MC frantically sent a party invite, but they were out of time. Luger dropped out of a spatial portal in the sky, radiating pure killing intent with zero intention of talking. Kid screamed at the MC to shoot, warning him not to even think about negotiating. Leah was pissed that no one had bothered to explain what was going on. Still, Luger kept his guard up, knowing that anyone capable of pushing Kid this far was no joke. From 250 meters away, the MC locked onto his target, but a sudden chill ran down his spine. His instinct screamed that if he pulled the trigger, he'd die first. Kid knew his friend wasn't at that level yet, so he forced himself up to stall Luger as long as possible. The two powerhouses clashed again. Luger smirked, praising Kid's guts, then fired a shot that triggered a massive explosion. Kid survived and desperately tried to explain that Leah's arcane sniper title was just a coincidence, but Luger didn't care. The MC decided to aim for Luger's legs to provide support. Kid roared at him to shoot, but suddenly, Leah vanished from sight. Luger confirmed he was indeed the arcane sniper. The problem was, Luger aimed his gun lower than the MC's trajectory, prompting Kid to scream at his friend to stay perfectly still. Luckily, Leah listened and dodged a fatal blow. Luger had learned this technique at a military academy, and somehow, he had applied the mechanics of an anti-tank shell to Middle-earth. The bullet didn't explode on impact because it was a delayed fuse round. Realizing this, the MC grabbed Kid and activated his ring's chakra barrier. They survived by the skin of their teeth, but even the legendary shield was cracking. For context, a bronze golem's attack couldn't even leave a scratch on that barrier. Though they survived, Kid's vision was completely gone. The MC had to throw him over his shoulder and run for their lives. He set Kid down, focusing entirely on the enemy, aiming at them. Once they were at a safe distance, the MC activated Soul Link, summoning Koma the bear. Luger smirked. He knew a bear wasn't an arcane bullet, so he ruthlessly gunned the beast down. He assumed Leah only summoned it as a smokescreen, and was hiding behind the dust. But he was dead wrong. Ignoring the thick smoke, the MC pulled the trigger and buried a bullet straight into Luger's leg. To fire his massive hand cannon, Luger had to brace himself with both feet, and now that stance was broken. Seizing the opening, Leah hoisted Kid up and made a run for it. The fact that the MC could land a perfect shot through a smokescreen made Luger grin with genuine excitement. At the temple inside Dale Castle, the MC grumbled about how many sleepless nights he'd have to spend grinding his levels back up, regretting not trying to finish Luger off. But he accepted that keeping them both alive was the top priority. Kid sincerely thanked him with a firm handshake. Outside the temple, they finally had time to talk properly. Kid explained that Luger was hunting down clues to find the real arcane sniper. He assumed Leah's name was a coincidence, but it actually was connected. Kid wasn't sure if it was an achievement or a title, but whoever held it could fire arcane bullets. Apparently, this achievement could be stolen if the owner was killed, which was exactly why Luger came to pry it from Leah's dead hands. Regardless, Kid told the MC to keep walking the path of his legacy, but warned him to be careful as he became a true musketeer, since players of the same class could track each other on the map. Changing the subject, the MC thanked Kid, noting he had picked up some vital combat data from the fight with Luger. He also curiously asked to see Kid's musket, but only after he had frantically apologized to Koma the bear for using him as a meat shield. The video ends here. If you don't want to miss the next part, make sure to hit the notification bell, and I'll see you guys in the next video on Cipher.